Class B Hunter Kang Do-chul flashed a smirk to his Any Raid subscribers. We're clearing every dungeon in sight. Today's target, a lethal C+ rank beast, known as the Arachnid. The hunt was officially live. Do-chul schooled his viewers on these arthropods pack hunters, just like ants. But don't mistake these for typical spiders. Standard lore says they don't just lunge, they immobilize prey first by spitting thick, sticky webbing. Suddenly, a piercing screech shattered the air as the monsters lunged. The cameraman's voice cracked with a warning. These arachnids weren't spitting, they were sniping webs at high velocity. Kang Do-chul's face twisted in shock. He barked that the script was trashed, and they'd need a heavy edit. But right then, disaster struck. A razor-sharp limb slashed toward him. Mun Shi-woo, the man behind the camera, watched in total disbelief. This was impossible. True arachnids are calculated hunters, not reckless brawlers. Their instinct should be subtle, not this. They're supposed to entangle victims in silk before injecting a lethal, paralyzing toxin. It's a slow, methodical execution. They never just charge in head first. Furious at the deviation, Kang Do-chul felt his temper flare. He parried a hairy leg and roared at Shi-woo to save the lecture for after the slaughter. Shi-woo opened his mouth to protest, but Do-chul had already vanished into a blur of violence. He tore through the swarming arthropods like a whirlwind, painting the ground in ichor until silence finally returned. Wiping neon blood from his brow, Do-chul glared at the operator. Explain that mess right now. The intel said they lead with webs. Charging blindly like that should have been a desperate last-ditch effort. But what if these beasts were already backed into a corner? What if they had nothing left to lose? Do-chul's harsh voice snapped Shi-woo back to reality, shattering his frantic, terrifying train of thought. He seized Shi-woo's collar, dragging him close with a snarl. Stop playing dumb. This screw-up is on you. Shi-woo stammered out a pathetic apology, but a heavy fist silenced him before he could even finish. You think sorry fixes a near-death experience, Do-chul spat, blaming Shi-woo's sheer incompetence for the chaos. As Shi-woo wheezed on the ground, Do-chul loomed over him like a judge delivering a death sentence. Get better intel next time, loser. Walking away, Do-chul reminded him of his harsh, pathetic reality. Traitless losers like Shi-woo were just dead weight. Sure, he was awakened, but that meant nothing here. His awakening was a joke, no special traits, no power. In the brutal world of hunters, he was invisible. Powerless, he'd turned to monster analysis just to stay alive. Knowledge was his only weapon among giants. Teaching elites how to kill was his niche. But to Do-chul, he was just a liability. Do-chul flexed, reminding the squad that his raw power was the only reason they weren't spider food. He expected cheers, but his team looked paralyzed with dread. Something behind him was draining their blood. They pointed trembling fingers at the shadows. Suddenly, a cold, deathly chill raced down Do-chul's spine. Panic erupted as a massive elite monster emerged. The hunters scrambled for their lives, their bravado completely shattered. The elite arachnid was a blur of speed, closing the gap instantly. Do-chul fumbled for his blade. His sword slipped from his sweaty grip, clattering away. Terror gripped him. Was this his final curtain call? Desperation sparked a dark idea. He needed a distraction, a human shield to buy himself some time. Shi-woo was the perfect sacrifice. With a cruel sneer, Do-chul delivered a brutal kick to his face. This is your fault, Do-chul barked. Your bad intel means you pay the price. Shi-woo spat blood, cursing the betrayal. But rage turned to ice as the elite loomed over him. A deafening shriek echoed. Shi-woo's muscles locked up in pure terror, grounding him as death finally approached. Staring into that gaping maw, he saw the end. But then his mother's voice echoed through his hope. Protect Soa, she whispered. That promise ignited a fire. He couldn't go down like this. He lunged for the fallen sword. For Soa, his little sister, he would crawl through hell to survive. Rising with newfound defiance, Shi-woo leveled the blade. The prey was finally biting back. With a guttural roar, he charged headlong into the beast, but a sudden shockwave stopped him mid-swing. The monster's limb was severed in a flash. Before Shi-woo could blink, the battlefield shifted completely. A mysterious stranger stood before him, radiating an overwhelming aura. Just who the hell was this guy? A violet blast rocked the cavern. Then a second intruder stormed in, dripping with pure shadow energy. Where is that scumbag? He roared. Locking onto his prey, he lunged forward, cursing the ego-driven brat. No more running. The mysterious duo suddenly clashed, dragging Meng Shi-woo into their chaotic crossfire. Nothing made sense anymore. Why were they at each other's throats? As their powers slammed together, a massive mana shockwave erupted. Meng Shi-woo stared, paralyzed by the sheer terrifying scale of their strength. What is this? These beings radiated a pressure that would make elite monsters crawl in absolute terror. Moving like blurred streaks of lightning, their brutal exchange sent tremors vibrating through the very bedrock. The shadow-shrouded warrior delivered a crushing kick, cratering his rival into the stone. Suddenly, the victim vanished. Quit the hide-and-seek, the dark-cloaked man barked clearly, losing patience with his opponent's slippery games. His rival scoffed, claiming the party was just starting and the endgame was still miles away. The blonde condensed his mana into a glowing orb. Seeing this, the silver-haired man grinned, matching his intensity. Ready to bet it all, he challenged. In a heartbeat, they unleashed twin beams of devastating raw power. The silver-haired fighter warned that at this rate, neither of them would walk away in one piece. I don't give a damn, the blonde fired back, glancing at Meng Shiwu with a cryptic look. Sorry for getting you caught in the middle, the blonde muttered. Sensing a sacrificial plan brewing, the silver-haired man grew tense. Suddenly, their clashing forces hit the boiling point, reaching critical mass. A blinding detonation engulfed the strangers. In a panic, Meng Shiwu shielded his face from the blast. He braced for impact, but the blonde intervened, casting a protective shield. I've got you, he whispered. The duel vanished, leaving a trail of ruin. Trembling Meng Shiwu's mind reeled from the impossible spectacle. What the hell was that? Staggering back, his foot crunched down on a stray smartphone. He grabbed the strange device, baffled. Out of nowhere, a notification popped up. Confirm new manager appointment. A sync bar flashed across the glass. Connection successful. Manager transfer complete. This day was getting insane. Explosions now cursed tech. Visions of celestial, godlike figures suddenly seared through his consciousness. Access granted. GodTube booted up, greeting its new overseer. Meanwhile, outside the rank C+ dungeon gates, the failed shoot concluded as Kang Do-chul and his squad scrambled out, barely dodging death's door. Gasping for air, a furious Kang Do-chul cursed his rotten luck, fuming over the mission's total failure. An elite mob in a rank C dungeon insane. His bootlicking crew immediately started showering him with praise. We're only alive because of you, boss. They gushed about his brilliant plan to survive the encounter, sacrificing that useless loser as monster bait. Only a veteran hunter like Kang Do-chul had that guts. Do-chul smirked, quoting their mantra, "We rate it all." He was proud of his ruthless strategy. He'd calculated for losses. Suddenly, a guttural roar of pure rage sliced through the air. Meng Shiwu charged out, screaming that bastard's name. Do-chul's jaw dropped. How was that weakling still breathing? After that monster encounter, a stunned Do-chul turned, demanding to know how he'd cheated death. Before he could blink, a fist loomed large. Pure reflex kicked in as Do-chul parried the strike. He redirected the blow with his elbow, countering instantly with a heavy bone-crunching hook to the jaw. Forgot you're just rank F trash, he sneered, still baffled by how this roach escaped the cave. You've got devil's luck, Do-chul mocked. Towering over the fallen man, he spit out a cold explanation. Finding a new editor is a hassle, he scoffed. Shiwu stared up, disbelief written across his face. Continue serving the man who used him as bait. Do-chul casually leaned on his lackey's shoulder. Didn't you beg for cash for your sister's meds? He prodded. I'm the only one generous enough here. Time to pay up for that kindness. Do-chul's tone carried a heavy, threatening underlying message. Shiwu was meant to submit, but he'd reached his limit. He violently slapped the hunter's hand away. Clutching the camera, Shiwu hissed, "If you want a show, don't blink. Old habits die hard." This was payback for the disrespect. Raising the lens, he wondered if this gamble would actually work. The evidence was all there, the raw footage of Do-chul abandoning him to be slaughtered. He dared him to imagine the viral explosion if that footage hit the web. Kang Do-chul just smirked, dismissing the warning as a pathetic bluff. He leaned in, asking Meng Shu if he realized that elite monsters weren't the only lethal threats in this dungeon. Meng Shu cut him off, stating he accepted his fate, but Do-chul would be trading his freedom for a prison cell. His precious channel would vanish instantly. Meng Shu then dared him to pull the trigger, since he seemed so thirsty for blood. Wearing a twisted grin, Do-chul warned Meng Shu that his sister wouldn't be shielded from the fallout. If that clip ever leaked, Do-chul coldly remarked that replacing a dead editor would be easy. He spun around, barking at the crew to quit stalling and pack up their gear immediately. Massaging his bruised jaw, Meng Shu growled that if anyone touched his sister, Do-chul would witness true hell. Once home, Meng Shu inspected the mysterious phone, desperate to crack the secrets behind this GodTube app. Channels for literal gods. As the interface loaded, a familiar video platform flashed through his mind. YouTube was the ultimate free stage for creators. But among the endless sea of content on that platform, Hunter channels reigned supreme. Yet here was a saint wielding a divine blade forged by Hephaestus himself. He intended to test its edge on Lucifer. Even Thor looked rattled as the world serpent suddenly emerged. The god of thunder challenged himself to crush the beast in under 12 minutes flat. Pro players, speedrunning bosses, mythological deities, and legendary icons, they were all here broadcasting live. Was this real divine governance? If so, who was that cave dweller? And why pick Meng Shu for this? His head was spinning. But if these gods truly managed channels like influencers on YouTube, he figured they probably started with millions of followers. Suddenly, the situation didn't feel so cursed. Taking the plunge, Meng Shu clicked on a video featuring the legendary strategist Zhuge Liang. After witnessing his tragic sacrifice, Meng Shu hit subscribe. Instantly, a system alert flared to life. Membership granted him exclusive access to lectures on the legendary S+ rank insight traits. Before he could blink, a subscription slot vanished and he unlocked the godly S+ rank Insight. He froze. S+ was a theoretical ceiling, a rank that wasn't supposed to exist in reality. Only the 13 legendary heroes who battled the Demon Lord were rumored to possess such power. Yet here he was, gaining mythic tier abilities from a simple follow. It defied all logic. He stared at his hand, expecting a surge of energy, but nothing felt different physically. Perhaps Insight buffed his perception and wit instead. If that were the secret case, changes wouldn't be obvious immediately. Swiping further, a video from Arch Hercules caught his eye. It was a 10,000 sub special, a tutorial on how to bench press the entire House of Zeus. If this didn't trigger a change, nothing would. He smashed the subscribe button on Hercules' channel. With 2 slots gone, a notification exploded. He had just acquired superhuman SS rank strength. The rank left him reeling. In a fit of shock, he accidentally slammed his fist onto the table. His laptop was now scrap metal. But the carnage proved one thing: the features were terrifyingly real. GodTube was the real deal. The system confirmed he had just tapped into his newfound superhuman might. Proficiency rose to 0.1%. Mungshu's brain struggled to process the sheer absurdity of it. SS rank power from a subscription. The logic of it all was completely breaking his mind. He clutched his head, shouting in confusion. What kind of insane world-breaking app was GodTube? His frantic brainstorming actually leveled up his insight to 0.1%. He stared, completely baffled. He figured hitting 100% meant total mastery. With a deep breath, he finally hit play. As Hercules began his workout, the citizens of Greece watched in absolute jaw-dropping terror. Before their very eyes, the massive temple of Zeus was ripped from its foundation like a toy. Hercules roared in triumph. Feeling the pump in his legs, he rose from his knees, hoisting the temple. He thrust the divine structure skyward, shouting about the incredible gains. The Greeks weren't the only ones stunned. Mungshu sat there paralyzed. How was he even witnessing such raw, godly destruction on a screen? Hovering over the unsubscribe button, he finally realized why Hercules' channel was such a ghost town. Trapped by fate, the system ruthlessly rejected his attempt to quit, locking the exit for good. He could practically hear Hercules' mocking laughter, imagining the hero pointing a finger and claiming total dominance. Escape was a pipe dream. Every frantic click of the unsubscribe button met the same cold digital wall. Locked in, 2 out of 3 slots were already burnt. Hercules signed off, leaving the chat in a daze. Promising a tomorrow, he didn't want the hero vanished. Then Mungshu's phone buzzed. It was that absolute jerk. A sour face formed as he wondered why this snake was calling now. Answering, Shu demanded his business. Shocked that Shu actually picked up Kang, Dochul confessed he expected to be blocked instantly. Get lost, Shu spat. He asked if the guy was bored, or just calling to clown on him again. Dochul claimed it was strictly business, but Shu wasn't vibing with anything involving this shady individual. This dude was a headache. Dochul begged for some respect, bringing up their past partnership like it mattered. Cut the cap, Shu snapped. He had zero patience for small talk and wanted the bottom line immediately. Dochul's temper flared, but he took a breath. He revealed a massive offer from the legendary SH Group. They wanted a joint stream collab. Shu froze. The SH Group was the ultimate titan of the financial world. Korea's #1 powerhouse, word was the chairman's granddaughter, had just awakened 2 insane hunter abilities. Lee Jun figured they were diving into the monster game. Dochul agreed, saying SH was expanding fast. They were scouting the scene. Dochul smirked through the phone, waiting for Shu to jump at the chance. Hard pass, Shu deadpanned. Dochul lost it. He was offering $50,000 for a single video. 50 grand. Shu blinked, but Dochul thought the bag had finally convinced him to play nice. Shu just mirrored his smirk. Still no. That response sent Dochul's blood pressure straight through the roof. Dochul reminded him this was 10 times his usual pay. It was a win-win, so he asked for Shu's price. Without a second's delay, Shu demanded 50 million. Dochul nearly choked on his own spit at the amount. Are you tripping? Dochul screamed. He wondered if Shu had figured out the SH Group's secret desperation. He knew the payout would be astronomical. Suddenly, his insight skill ticked up to 0.2%. Shu laid it out. Why would a giant like SH pick a bottom-tier hunter like Dochul over others? Gripping his phone until his knuckles turned white, Dochul waited. Shu dropped the truth bomb. It was all about the granddaughter. She just hit the jackpot with 2 S-rank traits. Chairman Han Tai-san wasn't playing games. He needed his precious granddaughter to survive the real world. She needed the basics of the hunt. And who better to teach her than the monster experts? Their channel hit 210,000 subs thanks to Shu's genius tactics and unique monster knowledge. Chairman Han didn't want Dochul's face. He wanted the tactical brain behind the screen. Monster intel was the real prize. Dochul grumbled that 50 million was still straight-up robbery. Shu cut him off, asking if he wanted the deal or not. Dochul was backed into a corner. Gritting his teeth in pure frustration, Dochul folded. Shu tossed his phone aside, totally unfazed. Go find a loan or find a new partner, Shu shrugged. The next day the mission finally began. They met at the entrance of a B-rank dungeon. Shu immediately asked when the rest of his bag would arrive. Grumbling under his breath, Du-chul checked his phone. He promised the funds would drop once they finished. I already told you, he muttered, insisting the cash would hit the account after the raid ended. He scanned the area for Han Che-rin. Suddenly, footsteps echoed and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was her, the legendary Han Che-rin. She introduced herself briefly and signaled the group to move out. Shu was stunned. She was a literal goddess. But a girl like that was way out of his league. He brushed it off. Secure the bag, do the job. That was his only focus for today. Deep inside the B-rank abyss, they faced a massive humanoid beast, radiating pure, unadulterated malice. Che-rin's eyes narrowed. A black troll. Du-chul nodded, his voice dropping an octave in caution. Spot on, he confirmed. This beast was a B-plus nightmare, far deadlier than anything they'd faced before. Its healing factor was insane. It was like fighting a monster that simply refused to stay dead. Any hunter walking into a troll's nest without knowing their fatal flaw is basically asking for a death sentence. Du-chul quickly spilled everything he just learned from Meng Shu-woo to the young S-rank. The play is simple. Shred the black troll's body to pieces before going straight for the kill shot on its heart. Decapitate it to kill the healing factor, or it'll just keep coming. But before Du-chul could even finish, Han Che-rin went full main character mode. She lunged forward, her blade becoming a silver blur as she plunged it, directly into the troll's obsidian heart. In one fluid lethal motion, she took its head clean off. Monster down. Both Shu-woo and Do-chul stood there with their jaws on the floor, absolutely stunned. That was light work, Che-rin shrugged. Du-chul just laughed, realizing he'd totally underestimated her raw talent. Taking down a black troll with zero experience and just a few tips? Yeah, that's peak S-rank energy. Wiping the monster's gore from her steel, she told Do-chul to stop with the obvious flattery. But her weapon had Shu-woo completely hypnotized. Wait, is that the legendary blade Aureliana? He asked. He was dying to know the price tag on that thing. Che-rin just glanced at the glowing edge. Roughly 20 billion, she casually dropped. Du-chul nearly had a heart attack, while Shu-woo's eyes turned into literal diamonds. Che-rin wasn't satisfied yet, and pushed them deeper into the dungeon. Fast forward 1 hour later, after a massive kill streak, she was finally starting to get a feel for the rhythm of the hunt. With the trolls cleared out, she decided to call it a day. Du-chul grabbed her hand with a fake-ass bow. He tried to hide his greedy smirk while praising her, and Che-rin just nodded, ready to head home. He'd hoped to secure a sweet deal with the Hunters Guild, but he'd spent the whole raid doing absolutely nothing. Now, he was about to lose 50 million bucks, all because of that annoying brat Meng Shu-woo. Shu-woo could practically read his salty thoughts, and was low-key loving every second of it. Suddenly, Shu-woo's danger sense started screaming. The ground groaned as massive, heavy footsteps echoed through the cavern. Che-rin tensed up, but Do-chul saw this as his golden ticket to finally prove his worth. He played it cool, guessing it was just another elite monster they could easily farm. But then his knees started shaking. This wasn't an elite, it was something far more terrifying. A boss monster. It lunged with a fist the size of a boulder, but Che-rin's blade was out in a heartbeat. She blocked the hit, but the sheer force was overwhelming. Du-chul's bravado vanished instantly. Run for your lives, he screamed, being the very first person to bolt like a total coward. The boss shattered Che-rin's guard, sending the S-rank novice crashing into the dirt. It followed up with a tectonic slam, shattering the nearby rock into a hail of jagged stones. His own team was getting pelted by debris, but Du-chul didn't even slow down to look back. He didn't care about the guild or his reputation anymore, he just wanted to escape this nightmare alive. Move or die, he screamed internally. He wasn't about to let his story end in some dark hole, but a massive shadow loomed over him. The decaying boss had somehow cut off his only exit. He froze his whole body, trembling as he looked up into the eyes of his inevitable end. I'm cooked, he whispered. The fist came down, but Che-rin appeared out of nowhere to tank the hit. This time, the impact was too much. She was sent flying, smashing right through a solid stone wall. The monster wasn't done yet. It charged across the cave to deliver the final soul-crushing blow. Che-rin watched the massive fist close in. I have to move now, or I'm history. She vaulted off the wall, sprinting up the monster's arm with insane agility to reach its head. Taking a low stance, she unleashed a lightning-fast barrage of strikes against its neck. It did 0 damage. The boss just caught her off guard and swatted her out of the air like a fly. She was slammed into the ground, the monster's massive palm pinning her down with crushing force. She held on with her last ounce of strength, but Shu-woo could see the writing on the wall. Even with 2 S-rank traits, she was still just a rookie, without any real combat experience. They were out of time. Shu-woo knew he had to make a choice, and he had to make it now. Abandoning Han Sharon meant survival, but staying meant death. His only hope, betting everything on that legendary SS rank power. This God-tube ability was his trump card, though he hadn't realized just how much he'd already mastered its true potential. Out of nowhere, Kang Do-chol bolted past, nearly trampling Meng Shu before Han Sharon pulled him back from the brink. Snapping back to reality, Do-chol sprinted for the exit. That coward chose his own life, leaving Sharon as boss bait. Witnessing the betrayal, Meng Shu fumed. This disaster was on Do-chol's trash intel, and now someone had to pay the price. Meng Shu realized they were outmatched. His survival instincts were screaming, telling him this beast was on a whole different level. He needed to bolt while he still could. Panic surged as Meng Shu began to flee. He had to get out now. Staying meant a gruesome death. Suddenly, he roared at the top of his lungs, desperately drawing the monster's focus toward him. Fame and fortune mean nothing in the face of death. But could he really just abandon Sharon to save his skin? Channeling every ounce of power into his fist, he bellowed, "If I run now, I'm no better than that coward Do-chol. The snake who left us to die." His fist slammed into the troll's massive skeletal hand, shocking everyone in the room. The impact actually parried the monster's strike. Sharon watched in disbelief, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Had he actually stopped that titan? Who was this man standing his ground beside her? Meng Shu stepped forward, eyes locked on target. Having stifled the boss's assault, the divine strength of Hercules finally surged through Meng Shu's entire body like molten fire. The beast's fist remained wedged in the stone ceiling. With a violent wrench, the creature finally ripped its hand free from the debris. It immediately lashed out at Meng Shu, but with split-second reflexes, he threw up a guard and absorbed the crushing impact. He didn't budge an inch. Gritting his teeth against the monster's weight, Meng Shu roared, "Now, do it!" Sharon lunged at the pinned beast, driving her steel deep into its heart. But the battle was far from over. She kicked off the troll's chest, repositioning mid-air to deliver a follow-up slash right across its massive leathery shoulder. In a flash of silver, she severed the troll's head completely. Sharon landed gracefully, standing back-to-back with Meng Shu. They watched the behemoth collapse, but Meng Shu's S+ rank intuition hummed with a warning. This wasn't over yet. His insight skill flared something was off. High-tier bosses were notorious for triggering a lethal second-phase transformation. A gruesome evolution was unfolding. Before their eyes, the troll's severed head began knitting itself back onto its stump. Meng Shu screamed a warning, but he was too late. The atmosphere shifted as the beast surged with new life. The boss snatched Sharon, crushing her in its massive grip. Her agonizing screams echoed, and Meng Shu knew he had to act. If Sharon fell here, their quest was finished. He couldn't afford to lose his only ally in this hellhole. If those GodTube perks were legit, he had to tap into them. They might be unrefined, but they were his only edge. The monster glared at him, baffled. Meng Shu seized the creature's digit, bracing himself to pry its grip open by force. He fought to liberate Sharon from the troll's clutches, desperate to buy them even a few more precious seconds of life. Trembling in agony, Sharon begged him to flee and save himself. But Meng Shu refused to retreat. He wasn't leaving anyone behind. He finally pried the massive finger back, yelling at the top of his lungs, "Sharon, strike the heart now." Sharon tapped into her final reserves, twisting violently until she finally slipped through the monster's failing grasp. Gasping for air, Sharon scrambled up and nodded. She knew what had to be done. She charged the beast once more. Meng Shu roared over the chaos, "Don't hesitate, just trust me and strike." Meng Shu seized the troll's fingers, wrenching them back with all his might. This was the opening they needed. Sharon vaulted onto the behemoth's arm, carving a path upward, as she scaled the monster like a mountain of flesh. Leaping from the shoulder, she drove her blade home, aiming once again for the creature's core. He could only hold the beast for 0.5 more seconds. There was no time for a detailed plan. He screamed the vital secret. "It has two hearts." Sharon froze in shock, but he prayed her instincts would kick in. He banked on her warrior's intuition. As soon as she impaled the first heart, the monster went into a frenzy. The troll swung a devastating blow to crush her, but Sharon nimbly rolled beneath the strike, narrowly escaping certain death. She blitzed forward again, blade whirling. Meng Shu trusted her to find the second kill spot as she closed the distance. Sharon drove her steel through the second heart, hidden deep within the right side of its massive heaving chest. Meng Shu roared, "Just die already." He vaulted into the air, feeling his combat proficiency level up in real time. The beast saw a blur of motion, and before it could react, Meng Shu's final blow shattered its skull completely. With the final strike delivered, Han Sharon felt the rush of victory. She glanced back at Meng Shu, but after a few shaky steps, Shuwu's body gave out, and he hit the dirt hard. Sharon stared, questioning his true identity. Shuwu eventually drifted back to consciousness in a sterile hospital ward. Noticing his eyes flutter open, Sharon immediately offered an apology. Startled, Shuwu yelped in confusion, demanding to know why she was even there. Sharon gestured to his intravenous drip, explaining she'd rushed him to the emergency room after his near-fatal injuries. His muscles were shredded and bones shattered. Sharon checked on his condition, but Shuwu felt a wave of awkwardness wash over him. Sharon was practically invading his personal space. Suddenly, she leaned in closer and pressed her palm against his forehead. Shuwu turned bright red at the contact, while Sharon merely worried about a fever. Then a thought suddenly struck her. They hadn't actually exchanged names yet, so she asked for his. Still flustered, Meng Shuwu managed to respond. He gave his name quickly, though he secretly wondered if she already knew it. Surely she'd seen his files when she checked him into this high-end private room. Sharon confessed she wanted to hear it from his own lips, leaving Shuwu baffled. Was this girl actually reading his mind? Rumors said her S-rank trait was a mysterious sixth sense. If this was its power, then its legendary reputation was well earned. Sharon teased that he was probably just groggy from his long slumber. However, she got straight to the point with a massive proposal. She asked him to join her elite squad, shocking him. He questioned if this was due to his clash with the Titan. Sensing his skepticism, Sharon pushed further. How does a 1 billion won annual salary sound? The sheer scale of the offer left him speechless. She added that they'd split all monster loot 50-50 on top of that. Shuwu's heart raced with pure adrenaline. He couldn't suppress a wild grin. 1 billion won plus half the drops. This was absolutely mental. Sharon then mentioned she knew about his little sister's battle with a chronic blood condition. She offered to transfer her to their facility and cover every single medical bill. Shuwu wouldn't owe a dime. Shuwu's expression turned stone-cold serious. He asked what justified such an insane price tag. Sharon's answer: she needed his strategic genius. She wanted him to mastermind all her future monster hunts. Later that night, alone in his ward, Shuwu agonized over his choice. Despite the life-changing offer Sharon had laid out on the table, he still turned her down. Sharon respected his boundaries, but left the door open for a future change of heart. She emphasized her debt for him saving her life, swearing to settle the score regardless. She would bankroll his sister's recovery. Shuwu hoped his refusal wouldn't come back to haunt him. Instead, he bet everything on GodTube and the S+ rank insight he'd just unlocked. Paired with his new SS rank strength, GodTube felt like a divine cheat code that made S rankers look like background characters. Shuwu knew he couldn't let this golden ticket slip away and dove headfirst into the opportunity. But Soi's terminal illness still loomed over him. He had to find a miracle cure no matter the cost. Ever since she was caught in a tragic dungeon break years ago, a mysterious blood rot had plagued her. Modern science was useless against this curse. Doctors could only dampen the pain, not stop the decay. But with GodTube's divine traits, Shuwu was certain he could finally save Soi from her nightmare. However, the rare ingredients required were obscenely expensive due to the extreme rarity of her condition. Shuwu realized he needed a massive mountain of cash to pull this off. He cracked open his laptop, focused on finishing a video edit that was worth a cool 50 million won. Scrolling through the footage, a specific detail grabbed him: Sharon's casual mention of her gear's value. Her blade alone was worth 20 billion won. Shuwu's mind raced. What if he crafted and sold his own gear? He'd be swimming in billions, but with only one sub-slot left, he needed a way to expand his reach. A premium membership cost a staggering 1 million, but for Shuwu, there was only one logical choice. He had to master metallurgy. He shot a sub-request to Hephaestus featuring a video titled 99 Mjolnirs. He showcased a stolen Mjolnir attempting the impossible task of boosting it to plus 99. He hit that subscribe button instantly. When the confirmation popped up, Shuwu's jaw hit the floor in pure disbelief. The sub granted him the SS rank, God's Metallurgy. As Hephaestus struck the anvil, he revealed the secrets of divine forging. Never fear failure. Cowards lack the guts to act, and the brave must brace for their steel to shatter. Hephaestus's cryptic warning left Mengshu unsettled. Why the talk of destruction? What were the gods truly plotting? Just as he questioned it, a system alert pinged. His flawed metallurgy knowledge was being forcefully overwritten. Divine metallurgy mastery ticked up to 0.1%. Later, at the hospital's outdoor training yard, Mengshu crushed one-handed pull-ups with cold focus. Nearby nurses watched his physique in utter awe. They wondered if his body had truly evolved. One nurse admitted she couldn't explain his sudden transformation. Even for a hunter, his recovery was legendary. The staff confirmed he was a total medical anomaly. "You're being discharged tomorrow," they announced. Mengshu was stunned by the sudden, unexpected news. He was leaving way sooner than he'd imagined. He would have to push his limits immediately. The system pinged superhuman strength increased to 1.01%, a powerful but dangerous gain. Overusing this power would shred his muscles like before. He couldn't afford to slack off anymore. Suddenly, his sister's voice broke his concentration. Had already heard the discharge news. She confirmed he'd be out tomorrow. Caught off guard, Mengshu could only give a vague nod. Took a shaky breath, admitting her terror when he first arrived in critical condition. Doctors predicted a month-long stay. "How are you leaving after only 7 days?" she asked. Mengshu misread her worry as disappointment. He gently stroked her hair, trying to reassure her. He urged her not to skip treatment just because he was gone. And don't worry about cash. Revealed the treatment was free, thanks to Karen Uni. Mengshu was totally floored. "Uni," he repeated, confused. Explained that Han Charon had insisted on being called family. The top hunter treated her like a sister. Mengshu was shocked they'd become so close. "You've actually met her?" he asked. Replied that Charon visited her all the time. Meng Shu was stunned. How had they never crossed paths during her frequent visits? Sharon only visited while he was busy training quietly, checking in before slipping away. Why would a busy hunter do that? Was she still trying to recruit him? So Ah giggled, teasing that the beautiful hunter might actually have a crush on him. Meng Shu shot that down, but So Ah insisted he was popular with all the staff. He told her to drop it and head back inside. He had business to attend to. Where to, she asked. Meng Shu smirked, a sharp glint appearing in his eyes. Time to go make some serious bank, he replied, heading for the dungeon gates. Entering the lair felt heavy. Solo hunting for the first time was a whole different beast. He steadied his breathing. Suddenly, the rhythmic thud of approaching footsteps echoed through the dark. An F-rank dungeon, the stinking lair of a goblin horde. They lunged the moment they spotted him. Meng Shu pivoted, dodging their clumsy strikes. There were way more than he anticipated. A mace whistled toward his head. He ducked his counterattack, already fully charged. With one explosive strike, he literally detonated the goblin. Blood painted the dungeon walls crimson. He stared at his hands, shocked. His raw power had reached a terrifying new level. Could he really be this cracked? The sight of their slaughtered comrade sent the goblins panicking. Their bloodlust turned to terror as they retreated. Meng Shu didn't let them escape. Seeing their comrade detonated, the goblins trembled and began a desperate, frantic retreat. Meng Shu closed in on his terrified targets, a predatory smile on his face. He invited them to attack. Later at the So family smithy, Meng Shu slammed his gruesome haul down, asking for a price. The blacksmith roared. "Make what? I asked for materials, not monster scraps. Now, I'll teach you how to properly smelt." The master So Pal Guang gestured for him to follow, hammering the glowing steel. So Pal Guang shouted to watch closely. True smithing was about way more than raw strength. Pal Guang had spent his entire youth chasing the secrets of alchemy. Now, over 40, after 2 decades of grinding, he knew premium materials weren't everything. High-tier A or S-rank gear didn't just appear out of thin air. Enter Man Thu, a gifted, awakened, fueled by pure passion. Since he held an A-rank skill, Pal Guan gave him a shot at the forge. Passing the hammer over the master, watched closely to see the kid's form. But before that, the youth introduced himself as Mon Thursday. Strangely enough, he wasn't there to commission some epic gear. He wanted to become a disciple. He didn't even ask for a guild spot or a place to crash. Instead, he just asked to use the forge. Intrigued by this weird request, Pal Guan let him in to see his true colors. The master simply sat back to observe. These days, everyone thinks alchemy is a joke, like some easy minigame. But it took him 20 years to reach the top. Meanwhile, this kid was just staring at his phone the whole time. Pal Guan figured the boy was just mimicking some random YouTube tutorials. He thought the kid was delusional, but boy was he wrong. Suddenly, Pal Guan's eyes nearly popped out. The kid's work was breathtaking. Just then, Kim So-yeon, the CEO of So-yeon Corporation, stormed into the Seo family forge. She announced her arrival with total confidence. Pal Guan, however, didn't even bat an eye. As she approached, So-yeon smirked. Who else but her would step into such a sweaty, grimy forge? Pal Guan grunted that she could have sent a lackey to handle this business. Yet she showed up in person every single time. So-yeon reminded him of her standard. When working with Korea's legendary blacksmith, personal visits were a must. Pal Guan chuckled, noting she'd mastered the silver-tongued flattery of a true CEO. Flattery, she scoffed. After all, she was the head of the elite, So-yeon Corporation, a place that only dealt in top-tier goods. She pulled some items from her bag, moving straight to business. She'd brought the rare materials they'd discussed with the payment, neatly wrapped in cloth. Warning him of the razor-sharp edge, she asked for a thorough inspection. But mid-talk, a deafening rhythmic hammering echoed through the forge, getting on her last nerve. She tried to discuss their next move. They were prepping a massive gear drop for the SH group. Suddenly, the thunderous noise pushed her over the edge. Snapping, she screamed at the interloper to shut up, though she quickly apologized for the outburst. She was trying to talk business. Manthu just gave a lazy nod, which only fueled her burning rage. After losing her cool, her anger turned into pure curiosity about what this guy was actually crafting. Picking up one of his blades, she scoffed. "What is this junk? You seriously call this a weapon?" Pal Guan simply asked for her honest take on the youth's creation. She slammed it, calling the edge dull and the shape absolutely hideous. Who could possibly use this trash? But Pal Guan just smirked, asking her a game-changing question. What if she knew it was forged from mere goblin and imp bones? So Yun's jaw hit the floor. Stunned, she demanded an explanation. The materials were bottom-tier garbage, yet this masterpiece was birthed from them. Even crazier, it was the kid's first time ever using a hammer. She asked if he'd finally taken a disciple. Pal Guan admitted he'd entertained that very thought. But his technique was too insane for a beginner. It defied all logic. His grip, his rhythm, it was otherworldly. No one had ever turned such trash into a functioning blade before. And yet the brat actually rejected the master's offer, so Yun was absolutely floored. Her eyes drifted back to the working youth as he polished off his next piece. His divine alchemy skill ticked up from 0.4 to 0.7%. Manhua just sighed. This gear looked like absolute dumpster fire. Even if it was finished, who would pay for this? Suddenly, a voice asked if the blade was for sale. It was Kim So-yeon introducing herself with style. She extended a hand. Manhua recognized the name, the legendary hunt-focused So-yeon Corporation. Built on a foundation of absolute trust and prestige, they were the gold standard. They ruled the hunting industry. So-yeon proudly stated they only touched Korea's absolute best gear. If he was down to sell, she was ready to swipe her card knowing there was serious bank to be made. A smirk crept onto Meng Shiwoo's face. He leaned in, asking exactly how much this blade was worth to her. After a careful inspection of his latest masterpiece, Kim So-yeon dropped an offer 1,000,000 won. With dollar signs in his eyes, he went into a frenzy, slaying monsters and forging gear at breakneck speed. A sudden scream pierced the forge. Kim So-yeon was literally dancing, shouting that the results were straight-up fire. Then came the big reveal. The official contract with the group was finally inked and sealed. Shiwoo figured he'd done okay, but So-yeon beamed, yelling that okay was a massive understatement. Between the perfect timing and the insane gear quality, they'd be totally cooked if it weren't for his help. Clutching his hands, she credited him for everything, promising to have his back whenever he needed a favor. "Anything you need, just name it," she insisted. Then a sudden realization hit her. There was one more thing. She whipped out her phone and told him to check his bank balance. Shiwoo looked at her, completely confused. He logged in anyway, only to find a massive deposit of 284 million won sitting there. He blinked, miscounting only 100 to 2,000 won. Feeling robbed, he complained, but So-yeon just looked puzzled. "What 100,000?" she asked, urging him to look closer. Shiwoo took a deep breath and recounted. Thousands. Millions. He counted those zeros until his brain stalled. 1,000,000, he roared, practically drooling with greed. At 23, Shiwoo officially transcended into a total money slave. Even after she left, he couldn't move. His eyes were glued to that screen, obsessively counting those 284 million won over and over. This was it, the cash needed for a GodTube sub to heal So. 3 legendary channels stood before him. First, the divine Hua Tuo. Second, Hippocrates, the ancient legend widely known as the father of medicine. And finally, Ho Jung, the goat of Eastern medicine, who literally built the foundation of the craft. Subbing to the full trio cost a cool 300 million monthly. Unfortunately, his wallet wasn't that deep yet. He had to pick just one. Crossing his arms, Shiwoo agonized over which legendary doctor to trust. The pressure was insane, and he was literally shaking with indecision. He couldn't take the suspense anymore. Screw it, he thought, letting fate decide. Moments later, Seol Pengguan's voice echoed from outside the forge. Pengguan broke the news. Their hands were tied. With materials this fragile, the options were basically zero. Polishing was a nightmare, so he suggested doing the bare minimum. Shiwoo tilted his head, totally confused. Pengguan kept going, explaining that while high-end precision was possible, the risks were just too high. One wrong move on such brittle stuff and it's over. Suddenly, the smithy door swung wide open. Kim So-yeon walked in with a grin. The grumpy blacksmith groaned, asking why she was always hanging around. "I'm only here for Master Shiwoo," she chirped. Catching her eye, Shiwoo told her straight up. He'd been waiting for her arrival. So-yeon blushed hard, stammering, "Wait, were you really waiting for me?" Shiwoo reminded her of that anything promise, and slid a cryptic list across the table. Could she deliver? So-yeon laughed nervously, remembering her big talk, and took a peek at the list. But the second she read it, her face went pale. On the list, mountain incense and sylph saxifrage, ancient ginseng, rune flowers, and soapwort, the heavy stuff. Shiwoo noticed her expression shift instantly. "Is it too much to ask?" he inquired. She shook her head. She could get them, but there was a catch. It was going to be pricey. "How much are we talking?" he asked. When she dropped the number, Shiwoo nearly fainted. 300 million won. Luckily, she had a bit of a silver lining for him. She slashed 20 million off the price. He needed those herbs to level up his divine medical art. He'd unlocked Hwatuo's S-rank skill through GodTube, but grinding the mastery levels alone was impossible. These rare herbs weren't exactly sold at the local shop, and he had no clue where to find them. Without her connections, he'd be stuck. "Should I go ahead with the purchase?" she asked. With a heavy sigh, he agreed. He'd just gained 284 million only to hand back 280. By the month's end, his last 4 million would vanish. Plus, the Hwatuo sub cost another 100 million. With those massive bills looming, he had to start stacking cash immediately or he was cooked. Sure, crafting gear pays well, but banking hundreds of millions of won overnight, that's a total pipe dream. Then a lightning bolt of genius struck Meng Shu. The secret wasn't the forge, it was NewTube stardom. Cut to a bored commuter on the subway, scrolling through his phone and praying for something worth watching. Out of nowhere, a wild thumbnail appeared from Conqueror of the World, the man who claims to dominate everything. One look at the cover told him this creator was unhinged, especially with a strategy video about hippos. The scene opens on a murky pond, where the creator is lurking among hippos, rocking a bizarre disguise. Meng Shu peels off his mask and drops some trivia. Did you know hippos aren't actually water horses? The viewer stared in shock, wondering what kind of chaotic energy this creator was radiating. Why the hippo cosplay though? Meng Shu broke it down, explaining that these beastly monsters are known as hippodons in Korea, or your classic hippopotamuses elsewhere. As you can probably tell, they're basically twin brothers with real hippos. Everyone associates their name with the Chinese character for horse, but plot twist, they aren't horses at all. Hearing that horse label being debunked like that, the young viewer actually had to pause and process. Flashing 2 fingers at the lens, Meng Shu continued. They're strictly hippo family, specifically the Sirenian order. He warned that if he kept going, our brains would probably explode, so he cut the lecture short. Then Meng Shu whipped out a red cloth. It was finally time for the main event, a masterclass on how to tame a savage hippopotamus. Step 1. Trigger them with the red cloth. It's not about the color, it's about the pure provocation. The viewer sat there, jaw on the floor, as Meng Shu started aggressively waving that red fabric around. He screamed at the beasts to get their attention. The hippos lazily glanced over at the lunatic. But the second that red cloth registered, their eyes flared with murderous intent. In an instant, the entire herd stampeded straight for him. Instead of flinching, Meng Shu kept luring them closer. Once they were in range, he smirked. Step 2, just beat them into submission and catch them. The vibe went from weird to chaotic. Was his actual strategy just baiting them and throwing hands? Ditching the cloth, Meng Shu charged headfirst into the mass of angry hippos. The collision was pure mayhem. Moments later, the hippos were wiped out. Meng Shu flashed a thumbs up, asking his audience for their thoughts. Could it really be that simple? Even after the fight ended, those brutal impact frames lingered in his mind. Rice noodles, Meng Shu roared, landing a devastating blow on the first beast. Eat some wheat noodles, he yelled, clobbering the second. The viewer watched, completely mesmerized by the conqueror. He systematically dismantled the entire herd until not one hippo was standing. Then he looked at the camera. If this strategy helped you, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. A user named Uchiha Chutachi cackled at the pure audacity. Even students from the English department, who didn't know a lick of English, were dying of laughter watching the conqueror go to work. Catching hippos with bare fists was peak entertainment. The masses absolutely loved the chaos Meng Shu dropped. His hippo hunt exploded quickly, hitting 3,628 views. 243 people had already hit the subscribe button on the Conqueror of the World channel. Meng Shu smirked at the stats. Everything was playing out exactly according to his master plan. Within hours, his subscriber count skyrocketed to 1,243 loyal fans. The hippo clip officially went viral, amassing 127,544 views. Scanning the comments, Meng Shu saw a flood of people losing their minds over his unhinged content. It was clear the audience was hooked on his bizarre high-energy concept. He'd found his niche. But luck and algorithms only get you so far. He couldn't bully low-level monsters forever to stay relevant. With the momentum on his side, Meng Shu decided it was time to turn up the heat. To keep his viewers hooked, he needed to escalate. People crave intensity, and he had to deliver. This was his forte, dissecting monsters and creating strategies. 1 million subscribers wasn't a dream. It was inevitable. Suddenly, blood trickled from his nose as exhaustion slammed into him. Gotta edit, he muttered, staggering backward. He slammed into the floor, skull cracking against the table before taking another brutal hit from a nearby chair. Meng Shu lay motionless, a victim of his own soul-crushing grind, until his eyes finally fluttered open. Disoriented, he stared at the familiar ceiling, slowly piecing reality together before hauling his body onto the bed. His brain throbbed with a dull, pulsing pain as the memory of his blackout surfaced. But he was alive. Only his Herculean constitution had saved him from a permanent dirt nap. Pinching his nose, he sighed heavily. Need to finish that edit, he muttered, grabbing his phone to check how much time he'd actually lost. 4:31 a.m. The realization hit him like a truck. He'd been out cold for an entire day. At this rate, he'd be in a grave before seeing a paycheck. He officially needed to hire an editor. Cut to Cafe Eden, where Meng Shu sat nursing an iced drink while scrolling through a mountain of resumes. He hadn't expected this kind of turnout. Was it the clout, or was the paycheck just that tempting? This gig was trending harder than a K-pop audition. 3 million won base pay plus bonuses, total fire. High views meant massive payouts, and cash is the ultimate motivator. He needed someone who could truly deliver. One particular submission caught his eye. He watched the sample, feeling a surge of genuine hype-filled excitement. The timing was perfect, the humor landed, and the technical skill far surpassed Meng Shu's own amateur attempts. 1:30 p.m. His patience was wearing thin as he checked his watch. Where was this guy? The candidate's name was Park Dok-gu. They'd agreed on a 1 p.m. meeting, yet the seat remained empty. Meng Shu already had a mental image of some grizzled, middle-aged veteran walking through those cafe doors. He could picture the Ahusi walking in with a stiff apology, judging by his formal way of speaking. But older meant more experience, which was a plus. He shot off a quick text asking for an ETA. No response. Radio silence. He figured Gu was probably sprinting through traffic to make the meeting. He tried to stay chill, but his fuse finally blew. Mingshu slammed his fist down, rattling the tables. "Where the hell is this guy?" he growled, just as the cafe door swung open with a frantic apology. A nervous girl approached, asking if he was Mingshu. Wait, was this actually the legendary Park Gu? Stunned, he asked for her name. He was fully expecting a middle-aged man, not the girl standing there. The Ahusi image shattered instantly. As she bowed, Mingshu demanded to know why she was ghosting his texts. She admitted she'd been pulling a total all-nighter on a project which led to a chaotic morning routine. Between finishing the edit and prepping her brother's lunch, she'd completely missed her notifications in the rush. She was a mess of apologies. Mingshu waved it off, curious about this video she'd spent all night on. It was the very same video she'd sent him. Mingshu's eyebrows shot up in total disbelief. "You finished that entire thing in one day?" he asked. She shook her head, correcting him with a look. "Actually, it only took 3 hours." Mingshu felt his soul leave his body. 3 hours for a masterpiece. She looked at him, worried she'd said something wrong. Mingshu slowly turned to face his new potential prodigy. She winced, expecting a lecture, but instead, Mingshu dropped the golden question, "When can you start?" Realizing she wasn't in trouble, her eyes lit up. "I can start right this second," she chirped happily. He usually slaved for 8 hours on a clip. With her speed, his ROI was going through the roof. He laid out the terms: 2 videos a week, 3, if things got busy. Standard industry hustle. "I'll pay extra for the grind, obviously." He reached out to the emotional girl, sealing the deal. "Welcome to the team," he smiled. She roared with determination, but then the entire world began to shake. She face-planted onto the table as the cafe rocked. Outside, screams of underground breach erupted in the streets. Emergency sirens wailed a C-rank breach had just opened. Total evacuation was ordered for the entire sector immediately. "Boss, we have to go." Now Gu screamed, her face pale with terror as the world fell apart. Mingshu just smirked. "Didn't you say you were ready to start working for me right away?" Confused and terrified, she could only stare. Mingshu nonchalantly cleared his nose, looking totally unfazed by the chaos. He tossed her his phone with a wicked grin. "Grab that and keep up, we're moving." "Where are we going?" she cried. Mingshu didn't even look back. "To the front lines. To secure the bag." Park Gu's heart plummeted as their destination came into focus, yet she scrambled to keep pace with Mingshu. Mingshu roared at her to kill the shutter and start recording. Right on cue, monstrous orcs surged from the dungeon's maw. Charging headfirst into the horde, Mingshu bellowed, large bowl of rice noodles. With a single brutal strike, he annihilated a C-rank orc. Pivoting to the lens, he flashed a grin, urging viewers to smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Smearing green ichor off his cheek, he wondered if this carnage would finally pay the bills. A professional hunter squad touched down at the disaster zone and instantly scrambled to evacuate the terrified civilians. Suddenly, a blood-curdling screech echoed as a severed orc head sailed right over them. The elites froze, paralyzed by the absurdity before them. Some random dude was absolutely pulverizing orcs with nothing but his fists. Bellowing out a menu of noodle dishes, Mingshu systematically dismantled the entire orc raiding party that dared to exit the portal. He ascended a throne of mangled corpses, thrusting a triumphant fist toward the sky. He locked eyes with the camera, telling his audience to drop a like if they enjoyed the slaughter. After another shameless plug for notifications, Park Gu gritted her teeth and began piecing together the footage for her eccentric boss. She couldn't fathom how this insanity was going viral. In the comments, fans were losing it over the bystanders' traumatized expressions, hyped that the world's savior was wrecking C-rank threats with raw strength. They even complimented the crisp, high-tier editing. Despite finishing the cut, the logic behind his madness remained a mystery. Yet she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her boss was a total loose cannon on the platform. Burying her face in her palms, she questioned if she'd survive this career path. Nearby, her younger siblings were tearing into some fried chicken, raving about how delicious it was. Naturally, they saved the best pieces for their big sister, eagerly waving her over to join the feast. Her little sister snatched a drumstick, claiming it as her prize. Her brother quickly called her out, noting she'd already finished one, and that this piece belonged to their Nuna. Witnessing their innocence, a soft smile crossed Park Gu's face as her resolve hardened. She'd hustle to the limit for her siblings' sake. Meanwhile, work at the Seo family smithy finally concluded. While the video rendered, Mingshu hammered away at the anvil until a masterpiece emerged. Crafted from high-tier class orc remains, this blade was leagues above his earlier creations. It was pure quality. His divine metallurgy skill jumped 1.4%, hitting 4.43. The system labeled it decent, suggesting he donate it. Shiu wasn't exactly vibing with that idea. Still, the gains were undeniable. That massive 1.4% skill boost was a total win. At this rate, his progress was cracked. Even Kim So-yeon was stunned by the blade's lethal edge. She couldn't stop praising him. His smithing game was evolving at a terrifyingly fast pace, so Palguan stood there completely baffled. He couldn't wrap his head around how this was possible. A total newbie with less than a month's experience shouldn't be this good. Xiu just smirked. He claimed he was still a scrub, knowing he hadn't even touched a tenth of Hephaestus's power. So-yeon guessed he was looking to cash out on the sword, and Xiu didn't deny it. Assuming she'd handle the broker work, she simply told him to hand over the entire inventory. As she grabbed the sword, Palguan's mood soured. Meanwhile, So-yeon noticed Xiu looked pretty worn out. Xiu was taken aback, but she joked that his eye bags were practically touching his nose lately. He let out a nervous laugh. So-yeon admitted she'd actually been questioning his status for a while. She wasn't sure if he was a man or a zombie, but he finally looked alive again. With Gu handling the edits, Xiu finally caught some sleep, even though his schedule remained packed. Dangerous jobs cost extra, leaving his bank account hurting. Plus, the crew was doing way too much. The editor was overworking, and she deserved a fat raise. That manager, Kang Do-chil, was absolute garbage. A total bottom feeder. Xiu couldn't fault Gu's editing, though. Her hustle was 100% legit. He felt truly blessed to have her. Then, like a lightning bolt, Xiu remembered his missing order. He checked in on those rare herbs he'd requested. So-yeon clapped her, memory suddenly sparked back. It had slipped her mind, but she quickly produced a bag containing the goods he needed. She delivered every single item. Since it was Xiu's first ask, she'd gone all out. He was floored. The speed was insane, and he told her so. But So-yeon just gave him a knowing look. Her firm only deals in Korea's top-tier stock. Xiu couldn't help but wonder about the true cost. When he asked for the bill, she pulled up the total 212.44 million won. Xiu's brain practically short-circuited as he saw all those zeros flashing. 212 million was a fortune. Luckily, So-yeon was feeling generous enough to offer a discount. She rounded it down to 200 million, warning him no more favors. Xiu bowed gratefully. She questioned why he needed such a massive stash. Xiu gave her a pretty vague, awkward response. He claimed it was for trials. Later, the legendary Hua Tuo began explaining the secrets of purified medicine. These natural remedies come from plants or minerals typically prepared as potent tonics or refined powders. Tablets and creams are the standard, but Hua Tuo's video was about to dive much deeper. The lesson shifted to true herbs, primal substances packed with reality-altering healing properties and raw energy. Roots, stems, and seeds might seem small, but their concentrated power is anything but minor. They are the backbone of any elite compound. Mastering them is essential for any divine healer. Calling them just medicine is a mistake. These herbs are the core components of life itself. Xiu's head was spinning from the complex lecture. At this rate, his brain was going to melt. He feared his divine medicine mastery would stall. Suddenly, a system alert pinged in his vision. High-level knowledge unlocked. His insight skill surged 1.4%, reaching 8.7%. Even his passive skills were leveling up. Then, the realization hit him like a freight train. It wasn't just about plants. It was about mastering the very essence of healing and disease control. The system confirmed his epiphany. He had finally grasped the true nature of divine herbalism. His divine medicine mastery ticked up to 0.4%. Xiu stared completely lost in thought. He'd finally cracked the code, but seriously, why did Hua Tuo make this so extra? With his divine medical art mastery hitting 0.4%, Xiu got to work. He brewed a tonic that the system flagged as a major physical buff for his body. His mastery jumped 0.5%, hitting 0.9, staring at the weird liquid. Xiu questioned if this was even safe. Would this buff actually just wreck his insides? No risk, no gain. Xiu slammed the bowl back, draining every single drop instantly. It is divine medicine, right? There is no way this thing actually kills him. Probably. Thud. Xiu hit the floor hard, wasting the precious brew. But the real tragedy, the insane amount of cash he had blown on those herbs. Suddenly, his system pinged. He checked his phone. That tonic actually boosted his superpower by 0.01%. Xiu was shook. The craziest part, it kicked in under 3 seconds flat. Since he had chugged it, he low-key considered licking the floor just to save the leftovers. Later, in an E-rank dungeon full of E+ vampire bats, Xiu had a clear agenda. 1 film a viral R-Bats Rats video. 2 farm loot for some much-needed gear. Lastly, he needed to analyze their diseases. These bloodsuckers hang out in massive swarming colonies, packed with hundreds of bats, making them literal breeding grounds for every nasty virus imaginable. The twist: the bats themselves are totally immune. If they are carrying these deadly blood pathogens, their resistance might be the key to finally curing Sowai's mysterious blood condition. It's a long shot, but with divine medicine, it is doable. Suddenly, Xiu's danger sense tingled. It wasn't bats, it was footsteps. He lunged upward, vanishing behind a massive, jagged rock. Stealth was the plan, but once he saw the intruders, his jaw literally dropped. It was Kang Do-chul's goons. Wait, how this dungeon was officially locked to his name. The Bureau forbids entry to outsiders. Sure, weird overlaps happen, but this? Was running into Do-chul's C-rank elite squad really just a coincidence? No way. Why would C-ranks crawl into an E+ hole? Easy, they were hunting him. And dungeons are lawless. Dead zones with zero signal. If someone dies here, they just vanish. What's the move? Actually, why overthink it? He would just beat the truth out of them once they are dealt with. Kim Ji-woo barked at a lackey, demanding to know if that pathetic loser Shi-woo had actually come inside. Do-eun nodded, confirming he had watched the guy walk right in. Ji Min-chul backed him up, but Ji-woo was fuming. Then, where the hell is he? Min-chul shrugged, maybe he is already monster food. Ji-woo smirked, remembering how trash Shi-woo really was. He was bottom-tier trash, even worse than F-rank, soloing a dungeon, pure delusion. Still, it made their hit way easier. Min-chul laughed, admitting that while the kid might be weak, he wasn't stupid. He probably had some clever strategy to survive the bat swarm. Ji-woo scoffed, talentless hacks have to rely on gimmicks. But Do-eun hesitated mentioning that video. He wasn't so sure Shi-woo was just using strategy. Min-chul rolled his eyes. You actually buy that? It is obviously fake. Total clickbait or some high-tier computer graphics editing. It is a joke, Min-chul mocked, gesturing around. This whole place is probably just a movie set. Ji-woo agreed, but then boom. A deafening noise shattered the silence. A shadow blurred past. Suddenly, Shi-woo was right behind Ji-woo. Where's Kang Do-chul hiding? Ji-woo froze in terror. He didn't even see him move. Shi-woo sighed, honestly admitting he didn't expect them to just spill the beans. Actually, he hoped they would keep their mouths shut. Seeing Shi-woo's guard down, Ji-woo scrambled back. Where the hell did you come from? Do-eun shouted. What can a loser like you even do? Ji-woo snarled, lunging forward to end him. But before he could even blink, Shi-woo casually flicked his wrist, sending the sword flying. He unleashed a devastating strike, launching Kim Ji-woo across the dirt. Struggling to rise, the broken man let out a pathetic guttural sob. Munsu pondered his next move for only a split second. Then, without mercy, he drove his boot straight into Kim Ji-woo's skull, crushing him into the pavement. Standing over the unconscious wreck, Munsu coldly announced that his target was officially lights out. He'd stomped his foe into oblivion. Do-eun and Ji Min-chul watched their faces pale with sheer humiliating terror. Min-chul spat out an insult, calling Munsu a total savage. In a blur, he was slammed and pinned against the jagged cave wall. Do-eun's heart sank as he realized they were cooked. Desperate, he begged Munsu to stand down and drop his lethal blade. He swore to spill every secret. Yet Munsu didn't even flinch, his killing intent radiating through the cold air. He kept advancing like an inescapable nightmare. Do-eun repeated his plea, but Munsu simply noted that he had zero reason to listen. I don't trust guys who can still walk, Munsu muttered. After breaking him, he demanded to know if Kang Do-chul pulled the strings. Was this Do-chul's hit? Do-eun nodded. Munsu then asked if he wanted a special reward for his honesty. He offered him some honorary scars. Do-eun raised his mangled face, begging for mercy through a mask of blood and bruises. He swore he was being real. Munsu wondered why a big shot like Do-chul was suddenly so obsessed with a nobody like him. Do-eun confessed his ignorance. Seeing Munsu's fist tighten in frustration, the terrified lackey felt his heart stop from the sheer pressure. I swear I don't know, he shrieked. Munsu then pivoted, demanding Do-chul's current location. But before the guy could even speak, Munsu told him to just drop it. Instead, he ordered him to grab his buddies and disappear before things got even worse. Do-eun gaped, shocked they were still breathing after those lethal strikes. Munsu simply shrugged, confirming he'd held back just enough to spare them. He gave Do-eun a message for the boss. Next time, you're the one getting thrashed. Then he seized Do-eun's face like a toy. He asked if delivering that warning would be a problem. After finalizing his lesson, the broken trio eventually crawled back to their master. The battered crew stood trembling before Do-chul, who stared at his ruined men in absolute stunned silence. Then Munsu appeared. Materializing right between his victims, Munsu smirked and casually noted that it had been ages since their last little reunion. A whole month, huh? Hope you've been eating well, he joked. Panicked, Ji-woo screamed that everything was just a massive, tragic misunderstanding. Min-chul cried out, claiming Munsu forced them. It was totally unfair they were being framed like this. Munsu threw an arm around Do-eun, fake praising him for the brilliant trap. Horrified, Do-eun threw his hands up, pleading for his life. He screamed that he'd been framed. Munsu just smiled, promising to fulfill Do-eun's wish to finally put the boss down. Do-eun ripped himself away and bolted like his life depended on it. His cowards in arms weren't far behind either. The others scrambled after him, screaming apologies to their boss as they fled. Munsu turned to Do-chul with a mocking grin. Look at you all by your lonesome, Munsu teased. Maybe you should have treated your dogs a little bit better, boss. You must have been a real nightmare for them to want you dead. Trembling with rage, Do-chul stuttered, unable to process reality. How could a lowly E-rank hunter possess such monstrous strength? Munsu admitted he was just as clueless as everyone else. But before I end you answer one thing, Munsu demanded. Why the hell did you target me in the first place? Du Qiel scoffed, asking why he should bother explaining. Munsu agreed, knowing words were useless at this point. In a flash, Munsu lunged forward, throwing a bone-shattering punch. But Du Qiel was no amateur. His reflexes kicked in just in time. He drew his steel in a blur. With a sharp metallic clang, Du Qiel's blade successfully parried Munsu's devastating strike. Munsu smirked, noting he only trusts broken men. Confronting the boss, he felt the heavy pressure of a true B rank. He couldn't get cocky. This wasn't another weakling. He was dealing with a B rank hunter, a whole different beast entirely. Du Qiel unleashed a lethal horizontal slash. Munsu reacted instantly, ducking low, as the blade whistled mere inches above his head. Du Qiel gave a mocking compliment. Instantly, Munsu vaulted backward, creating some much-needed breathing room. He needed to recalibrate. He realized Du Qiel's speed was on another level, far exceeding his original low-stakes calculations. The guy's sheer malice was chilling. Munsu knew one solid strike could shatter steel, but he wasn't at that level yet. Taking a B-rank's blade head-on was still suicide. Seeing an opening, Du Qiel lunged forward with explosive, terrifying speed. He charged like a predator. His strikes were lightning fast, yet lacked the complex finesse needed to truly trap Munsu. They were readable. Munsu slipped under a wild swing, driving a brutal counterpunch deep into Du Qiel's gut. Mid-strike, a flash of his pathetic past surfaced back when he was just Du Qiel's lowly, overworked video editor. He'd been treated like absolute trash, a slave in a suit who got beaten for even the smallest mistakes. He'd filmed every battle studying Du Qiel's movements until they were burned into his very soul. During every grueling hour of video editing, he meticulously dissected his own combat patterns and instincts. Shu Wu's insight stat ticked up 0.5%, hitting 9.2. At the buzzer, Du Qiel barely parried the lethal fist. Shockwaves erupted as they clashed repeatedly, neither gaining the upper hand. Suddenly, Du Qiel pivoted for a savage overhead strike. The blade carved through empty air as Shu Wu ghosted away, predicting the trajectory perfectly. This was no longer a coincidence. Du Qiel panicked. Was this kid reading his mind? He buried the thought instantly. He was a B-rank elite after all. How could a bottom-tier E+ rank hunter possess a legendary skill meant only for S-rank gods? Capitalizing on the slip-up, Shu Wu buried a heavy blow into Du Qiel's face, sending him spiraling backward. Du Qiel slammed his sword into the dirt to anchor himself, yet the sheer momentum still dragged him across the ground. His entire body trembled in pure shock. This reality was shattering his common sense. It was completely impossible. He had analyzed Shu Wu's power on YouTube 1,000 times, but experiencing this overwhelming strength was different. Du Qiel's mana exploded in a violent burst as his face contorted. "You're dead today," he roared in a frenzy. Igniting his blade with lethal sword aura, he charged. Shu Wu retreated, raising a hand to signal a stop. He yelled that going that hard was overkill. Since that psycho was playing for keeps, Shu Wu had to match that energy. With no other choice, he unlocked his full potential. Shu Wu felt his muscle fibers screaming and tearing under the pressure. He couldn't sustain this form for long. Risking everything, he kicked off the pavement with explosive force. He transformed into a streak of lightning. All Du Qiel saw was a flickering shadow manifesting out of thin air. In a literal heartbeat, Shu Wu appeared. He wound up and unleashed a devastating mid-air punch directly into his target. A massive explosion leveled the battlefield, leaving only wreckage. Moments later, authorities arrived at the decimated construction site. The inspection bureau swarmed the ruins. The commander barked orders to lock down the perimeter immediately. "Search for survivors," she commanded. Several agents moved in, scanning the debris for any signs of life. "Inspection Bureau, identify yourselves," they shouted, as the thick dust cloud finally began to settle. A lone figure emerged from the haze, gripping a sword. The commander eyed him. "Are you Meng Shu Wu?" He stood over the broken body of Kang Do Chol. "That's me," he replied. She introduced herself as Li Minjung, squad leader of the 4th Guard Unit. She then requested Shu Wu accompany them back to the bureau. At headquarters, Minjung cut to the chase. "So this hunter, Kang Do Kyol, actually tried to assassinate you." "That's the truth," he confirmed. "And the video evidence I provided proves every single detail." Minjung had reviewed the footage. It was undeniable, yet Shu Wu's official record was still incredibly suspicious. He was listed as a featureless awakened. These guards were the hunters of hunters, the police of the superhuman world. They specialized in hunting down criminal monsters. Shu Wu had heard the legends about their squad leaders before. Only A-rank titans reached that rank. The woman sitting across from him radiated the aura of a natural-born killer. Does a trait's rank truly dictate a hunter's ceiling? Shu Wu asked, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Minjung noted his E+ rank status. Shu Wu simply nodded, confirming his lowly official standing without hesitation. Before she could press further, Shu Wu interrupted. "Is there a reason I'm being interrogated? I'm the victim here." She offered a stiff apology. Occupational hazard. My job requires me to suspect everyone I meet. Based on the dungeon footage and the construction site recording, the case was essentially open and shut. We'll process everything accordingly, Minjung stated. As for Kang Do-chol, his career is officially over. He'll never see the light of day again. Let's wrap this investigation up right here. She thanked him for the cooperation. Shu Wu stood to leave. I'll leave the rest in your capable hands. As Shu Wu exited the bureau, the office door swung open again. An officer was shocked to find the leader still there. Commander, the kid just left. I assumed you would have headed out by now as well. Something is very wrong here, Minjung whispered. Jun Sua tilted her head, confused by her superior's cryptic tone. Sua, what's your current rank? The question was sudden. I hit B rank recently, ma'am, she answered proudly. Suddenly, the room's atmosphere turned heavy as lead. Minjung smiled as Sua's legs instantly gave way. Unable to endure the suffocating pressure, Sua collapsed to the floor, her heart racing in pure terror. She looked up at the commander in horror. Just as I thought, Minjung sighed. You couldn't even handle it. It was glaringly obvious. That squad leader wasn't just some grunt. Rumors whispered she was the legendary human butcher. An S-rank promotion was imminent. Yet, a baffled Li Minjung noted that Meng Shu felt absolutely nothing. Stunned Yun Su-a questioned his E+ status. Li Minjung nodded, admitting the whole situation was undeniably sketchy. Su-a pressed further, why let him go? Rank heaters are essentially walking time bombs in this world. Minjung cut her off, claiming he lacked that eerie hunter vibe he just smelled. Human. Left in the dust, Su-a scoffed at the nonsense. Meanwhile, Meng Shu strolled home, vibing with his success. Still, he worried about the next crisis. If his God tube channel blew up, things would get messy fast. Criminal syndicates would start hunting him. Right now, even taking down Kang Du-chul was a massive struggle. Without his S+ insight and deep dive intel on Du-chul's habits, he would have been total toast. He'd be dead 10 times over. Facing future threats, his double S trait was his only true ace. But progress had stalled. Meng Shu frowned, wondering why his power was stuck at 1%. Suddenly the system buzzed. He'd scored a private training session with the legendary Hercules. A reward for hitting exactly 1 subscriber. To Meng Shu, this was pure, unadulterated madness. Checking the Hercules channel, he was floored. The hero actually still only had a single sub. This prize better be top tier. Meanwhile, Hercules stared at his lone subscriber's profile in total shock. A human. On his channel, it seemed impossible. Meng Shu reached out, asking Hercules for the lowdown. Was this a dead end? Hercules countered, explaining that if this trend held, he was in trouble. The personal training was off the table. Meng Shu's heart sank. Was he being rejected by a god? Not exactly. Hercules just couldn't physically reach Meng Shu's realm for a face-to-face spar. How did GodTube even link to that blonde smartphone guy, or the white-haired warrior? Hercules cut in, declaring that while he couldn't physically fix his stance, he could still coach. The knowledge was his to share. Hercules told him to quit stressing and just listen up. Terrified of losing his only fan, Hercules insisted they start the grind immediately. His first task, rip a minotaur's horns off in one clean motion. Just like that. Scouting through the lens, Hercules noted, Meng Shu's balance was surprisingly on point, especially those lats. Meng Shu blinked, confused by the sudden focus on his posterior chain. Hercules groaned, explaining that back muscles literally meant every single muscle on his rear side. It wasn't just skin. Those muscles were biological armor. Hercules roared with divine passion. Traps, triceps, and brachioradialis, the names left Meng Shu's head spinning in total awe. Visualizing the perfect physique, Meng Shu felt his super strength skill start to tick upward. 1.02%. Hercules continued detailing the complex layers of the human back. Out of sight, out of mind, but forgetting these muscles is a fatal rookie mistake. Raising a massive leg, Hercules emphasized just how vital these hidden muscles really were. He stomped the earth, declaring them the anchor for a warrior's entire physical equilibrium. For explosive power, they're essential. Meng Shu stared, mesmerized by the raw display of strength. Hercules grinned. This was his own ultimate creation, the legendary divine martial arts. As Meng Shu processed this, Hercules shrugged, calling it a simple fusion of every technique. He'd forged them into one. This very strike had pulverized the Hydra's skull instantly. One hit, one kill. But remember, your back is the engine driving every movement. Your lower body is the pillar. Hercules fixed his gaze directly on his student. If a building's pillars snap, what happens? Meng Shu answered, total immediate collapse. Exactly, Hercules bellowed, that a weak body would crumble just like those ruins. Stomping again, he drove the point home. Without a solid base, you're already defeated. Ding, the system confirmed he'd mastered the physical science behind overwhelming super strength. His power ticked up 0.1%. Next, Hercules prepared to reveal the workout. To keep his subs hyped, the legend told him to watch closely and mimic every move. Moments later, Hercules revealed the secret exhale, the exact second your feet leave the earth. Shu Wu realized this was surprisingly basic, far more normal than he'd ever expected. Then Hercules roared that he didn't give a damn, just shut up and breathe out. Drained Shu asked why, but Hercules told him to check his own reflection first. For a low-level scrub like him, following orders was way more important than asking questions. As they trained, notifications flooded Shu's screen, he was spamming superpower exercises like a pro. This grueling grind boosted his superpower mastery to 1.47%. Shu shot a text to his editor. This absolute banger was going straight to YouTube. Today's theme, a speedrun. Park Doku took over editing, thinking her boss was actually decent. Though he was weird, she giggled, curious about his latest galaxy brain strategy. She clicked play, seeing her boss chilling right outside the dark dungeon entrance. Rocking a batsuit, Shu Wu dropped a casual aloha to his Conqueror Legion. After another greeting, he clarified that the man on screen was a true legend. The literal conqueror of the world stood before the dark, looming cave behind him. Infested with vampire bats, Shu anticipated the questions and explained his presence. He was dropping fresh content, a high-stakes speedrun raid for the Conqueror channel. Doku started layering sounds and effects, but a nagging doubt crossed her mind. Why film vampire bats? They're everywhere, and their lair is a complete nightmare to navigate. Zero visibility makes speedrunning impossible, but hey, clout chasing requires risks to go viral. Checking his phone, Shu noted the current world record sat at 58 seconds flat. S-rank Fire Witch Yuhana held the crown, but today Shu was coming for it. The Conqueror's legendary vampire bat speedrun raid kicks off. Right now. As Doku queued up the timer, something wild caught her eye. Seeing his bizarre stance, Doku wondered if her boss had suddenly taken up gymnastics. Shu Wu roared banquet challenge before slamming his foot down with insane force. A thunderous boom echoed as dust exploded everywhere, leaving Doku absolutely speechless. Rubbing her eyes, she questioned if he'd actually just collapsed the entire dungeon. Shu facepalmed, realizing he still needed to gather those loot ingredients regardless. Game over already, Doku watched in pure terror, wondering what monster she'd just witnessed. Since he was chill, Shu checked his phone and beamed at the insane stats. He'd hit 1.4 million views and 6,810 subscribers already. Even the legendary Fire Witch Yuhana, with 41 million subs, left a comment. Shu smirked, reading the shocked apology from the Fire Witch herself. She'd clearly panicked and rushed over the moment she lost her #1 spot. Her comment was huge, but a collab. That would break the internet instantly. Shu took a breath, trying to stay grounded amidst the massive hype. To keep the momentum, he needed even wilder content while checking his latest stats. After training with Hercules, his superpower mastery finally broke the 2% ceiling. At just 2%, he'd leveled a dungeon. Imagine the chaos at 100. He hoped Hercules would teach him divine martial arts, but the legend shut him down. Shu Wu begged for a lesson during training, but Hercules wasn't having any of it. Shu brought up his victory, but Hercules claimed those things weren't even comparable. Training was basic, but divine martial arts, that was a whole different league of power. They weren't even the same category, for a weakling muscle was the only goal, as divine martial arts was designed for pure strength, not superpowers. Shu insisted he was using his powers, stunning Hercules. The hero's projection surged in size, his voice booming as he demanded to know if Shu was actually tapping into that raw energy. Meng Shuo confirmed it, boasting that the legendary Hercules was currently his own private instructor. Hercules clarified that private training meant individual lessons, not a shortcut for stealing his divine superpowers. Stunned, Meng Shuo pushed back, reminding the god that he had already begun analyzing his powers. Hercules dismissed that as impossible. Meng Shuo questioned if decoding divine traits via GodTube was normal. Was he analyzing the wrong source? Hold on a minute, Meng Shuo urged, pausing the debate. He instantly manifested a perfect projection of Hercules. Shocked, the mighty god lunged and seized him. How Hercules barked, wondering if a simple channel subscription granted him such god-tier powers. Could he copy every deity on the platform? Meng Shuo nodded, confirming his terrifying reality. Isn't this insane? Meng Shuo asked. Beyond insane, Hercules roared back in total disbelief. Stealing divine essence just by clicking follow. It was absolute reality-breaking nonsense. Well, it works for me, Shuo shrugged. Hercules silenced him, noticing a massive logical flaw. How could a mere mortal, without a speck of divinity, even access the GodTube network? Shuo revealed his secret origin story. Suddenly, Hercules recalled two mysterious individuals he had encountered recently. Those two definitely reeked of GodTube. Wait, can those beings cross into our world? Shuo asked. Hercules previously claimed entry was impossible, since their dimensions were never supposed to overlap or interfere. Wait, isn't your login actually a manager account? Hercules realized, his eyes widening in suspicion. That meant one of those strangers was a manager. Do you know these GodTube admins? Shuo pressed. Hercules knew a handful, yet insisted that shouldn't grant Shuo access to forbidden divine abilities. Simply possessing a manager tag shouldn't turn a human into a god-tier power sponge. Is that so? Shuo questioned. Hercules scoffed, noting that managers would all be gods otherwise. Yet, the undeniable truth remained. Meng Shuo had successfully mirrored his divine strength. With a nervous grin, Shuo begged for official discipleship. Hercules shot him down without hesitation. Why the constant rejection? Shuo whined. Teaching is a massive headache, the god groaned. I've already mastered your powers, Shuo argued. Hercules countered that raw power and true mastery differed. Basic lessons were draining enough. Adding complex divine martial arts would be an absolute nightmare. Seeing the wall, Shuo shifted gears. Fine. What do subscribers actually represent on GodTube anyway? Puzzled, Hercules paused before explaining that followers were essentially raw fragments of divine authority. So, more subs equals a higher godly rank. Shuo's eyes gleamed with newfound understanding. The technicalities were fuzzy, but the math was simple. More subscribers meant more power. He realized why the grumpy Hercules tolerated these annoying training sessions. It was for the numbers. Apparently, clout was the only thing Hercules valued as much as his own flex. Seizing the chance, Shuo offered a deal he would help the god grind to 100 subscribers. The price for hitting that milestone, Hercules had to finally teach him the secret divine arts. Hercules scoffed, doubting a mere human could influence the divine algorithm from another world. Looming over the miniature deity, Shuo flashed a confident grin and a thumbs up. Trust me. Moments later, the channel hit 34,241 views and 127 subs. Hercules manifested bowing low before Shuo. Master, he declared, from today I am your loyal blade. Shuo promised a flood of viral content ideas, cementing the god's newfound loyalty to his manager. Now, about those martial arts, Shuo smirked. Hercules knelt terrified of offending his new benefactor. What's the deal with subscribers? Shuo asked. Hercules explained they were essentially a currency of faith. Divine power thrives on collective belief. The more eyes on a god, the more unstoppable they become. Despite the long lecture, Shuo summarized the whole god business as being incredibly headache-inducingly complex. Subs equaled status, that much was clear though. The cosmic details remained a total blur. Whatever, Shuo waved it off. Just start teaching me those god-level fighting techniques already. Hercules swore to begin the training, instantly sealing the deal with a powerful earth-shaking fist bump. Meng Shu requested Hercules return to his serene demeanor. Smiling, the legend agreed. The lesson began instantly. To master divine arts, Meng Shu first had to forge his mind. Specifically, he needed to buff his brain muscles before his body could ever hope to keep up. Action speaks louder than words. Without warning, a sudden blinding agony struck Meng Shu. His skull felt like it was fracturing. It was merely the shockwave of Hercules striking thin air. Shu's mind reeled. How fast was that? He couldn't even track a single frame of the movement. The pressure was suffocating. Then a system ping echoed, divine martial arts mastery achieved. His skill percentage surged by 1 point, officially hitting a respectable 3.61%. Shu was floored. A jump this massive was unheard of, especially for a skill this high tier. It was already SSS ranked. Yet Hercules looked concerned. Shu's current vessel simply wasn't ready. The demigod spoke bluntly. Shu's soul level was trash. Attempting these moves now would be suicide. His psyche would literally implode. To survive the divine arts, he had to evolve his mental capacity. Brain muscles were just code for soul strength. In simple terms, he needed a massive mental buff. Mastering god-tier combat required a psyche made of pure titanium. Why, tell me now, Shu groaned. Hercules offered a sheepish, half-hearted apology. The silent type, huh? Shu cut him off, desperate to know if he still stood a chance. Normally impossible. But Hercules saw a spark in Shu that defied all logic. There was a loophole. Hercules reminded him that he could still borrow the power of others. The realization hit Shu. He needed a god of wisdom. Jesus Buddha. He needed a spiritual powerhouse to balance Hercules' raw, overwhelming physical might. Hercules pointed him toward Master Confucius's channel. Wait, the actual Confucius, Shu stammered. Exactly. But subscribing meant paying a monthly fee to another legendary lunatic. He checked his bank account and winced. Only 153 million won remained. $1 billion a month. That is highway robbery. Is this grind even worth the investment? Just then, Kim So-yeon strolled into the forge, announcing her return. She tossed him the high-grade tendons. Shu nervously asked for the final bill. He expected a small fee, but the total was a staggering 113 million. Watching his savings vanish, Shu wept. So-yeon just beamed happy to have a whale client. His balance dropped to a pathetic 40 million won. What is the plan for those ogre tendons? She asked. Gear, he muttered. Hunting an A+ rank ogre solo was still a distant dream. To afford the divine subscription, he needed 1 billion won. Fast. He had to craft top-tier gear, sell it for profit, and level up his smithing skills. Shu cried internally. When would he finally get to keep the gear he made? Money was the ultimate villain. Regardless, he fired up the forge and got to work. So Pal Guan felt the searing heat and rhythmic hammer strikes echoing through the room. He tried to greet So-yeon, but she was frozen, eyes glued to Shu's intense forging. Finally, the masterpiece was done. Shu smiled at the radiant, polished finish of his creation. System, you have crafted a disposable item. Metallurgy surged by 5%. His skill hit 10.43%. But a disposable item, Shu was devastated. All that effort for a one-time use. His disappointment was immeasurable. His friends rushed over, jaws dropping. Shu just looked at So-yeon. Price tag. She was speechless. You are actually selling this. It is. It is literally priceless. It was beyond her budget. No regular hunter could afford gear of this caliber. Shu's heart sank. If he could not move this glove, his entire plan was cooked. Those subscription fees were not going to pay themselves. He was officially broke. After covering So-a's medical bills, Meng Xiu told Kim So-yeon to focus on selling the gloves. So-yeon froze in disbelief. How could he call such masterpieces disposable items? Since she promised to handle everything, she turned to Master Seo for his official blessing. She planned to use his legendary name to put the gloves under the hammer at auction. Later at the auction, the crowd buzzed as the next lot was finally unveiled. Even the great Seo Palguen was impressed, leaving the guests whispering in pure awe. Everyone knew Palguen was a master smith, recognized by the prestigious Aurelian. The auctioneer pulled back the silk, revealing a pair of high-tier combat gloves. Crafted from ogre tendons, these gloves boasted insane durability built to never break in battle. The auctioneer calmed the crowd, telling them not to lose their cool just yet. These were forged from A-rank monster materials as proven by the official appraisal results. When she revealed they could physically empower the wearer, the hall erupted in noise. Rumors of enchantment flew, though only the Master Aurelian possessed such divine skill. With a nervous grin, she clarified, they weren't enchanted, but still offered a 5% strength boost. Despite that small number, having a special effect made them top-tier auxiliary gear. Sensing the mounting tension, the auctioneer joked that the crowd might actually kill her. She knew better than to stall any longer, while the whales were hungry for blood. Bidding opened at 10 million won, with 5 million won increments for each raise. Hands shot up immediately, pushing the price to 25 million won in mere seconds. No one backed down, and the price quickly snowballed to 50 million won. The stakes rose as the bid increments jumped to 10 million won per turn. Like a runaway train, the price smashed through 80 and hit 100 million won. Even when increments hit 50 million won, the bidding war only grew more fierce. It hit 250 million, then skyrocketed to 350 million won. A sudden silence fell, as the auctioneer scanned the room for any more challengers. Suddenly, a guest roared out a bid of 2 billion won, shocking everyone present. They were stunned to see Han Chae-rin as the auctioneer reeled from the astronomical price jump. After confirming the 2 billion won bid, a counter came in at 2.1 billion. Shouts erupted as people recognized the newcomer. It was the infamous Lee Min-jung. Whispers about the butcher filled the room before Chae-rin counterbid 3 billion won. Gritting her teeth, Min-jung pushed it to 3.1 billion, but Chae-rin was ready. Without hesitation, Chae-rin dropped a 4 billion won bomb on the entire competition, going once, twice, and sold. The gloves were hammered down for 4 billion won. Chae-rin smirked in victory, while Meng Xiu sat trembling in shock back at the shop. So-yeon was equally dazed, never dreaming the gloves would fetch such a king's ransom. Xiu's cut from the 4 billion won winning bid was an insane 3.6 billion won. After the 5% commission and So-yeon's fee, his bank account was finally overflowing. Overjoyed, Xiu pulled So-yeon into a crushing hug, shouting his love for her. But So-yeon gasped, begging him to stop before he squeezed the life out of her. Realizing he was choking her, Xiu let go as she struggled to catch her breath. He apologized for his wild excitement, eager to reward her for all her hard work. She declined, noting that their company becoming a VIP was already a massive win. Xiu then turned to Master Seo Palguen, offering to help him out as well. The master refused, claiming he didn't do a thing and that all the credit belonged to Xiu. Touched, Xiu promised to teach him the legendary Allegro rhythm he'd just mastered. Thanks to Hephaestus's video, he'd mastered a 4-beat rhythm that fit his style perfectly. Taking the plunge, Meng Xiu grabbed his phone and officially subbed to the legendary Confucius channel. A cool 1 billion won vanished instantly, but for the sake of divine martial arts, he had to pay the price. He couldn't afford to be cheap now, even if the massive hole in his bank account nearly moved him to tears. Later on, a worried CEO asked if the restaurant was overkill, insisting they didn't need such a pricey meal. Meng Xiu shrugged it off, claiming they deserved a taste of the high life, even at 600,000 won a plate. With 2.6 billion won, still banked in subs to both Huatuo and Confucius active, he was playing big. His total monthly sub fees hit a staggering 1.1 billion won, so he grabbed a drink to numb the pain. While waiting for the feast, Meng Xiu scrolled through GodTube as Seo soaked in the luxurious atmosphere. It was her very first time in a place this grand. Meanwhile, Meng Xiu clicked on the Confucius channel's bio. The bio reads slow in speech but lightning fast in action. It already boasted 34,566 subs. That seemed like a massive following. He wondered if every single one of the sage's disciples had signed up. Clearly, academic cliques existed even on GodTube. Hercules had warned him that divine arts required serious mental heavy lifting. He anticipated an SSS rank challenge. Since it wasn't a combat skill, SSS meant it transcended standard divine martial arts. To level up his mastery, he had to analyze the content and absorb every ounce of wisdom possible. Kicking things off, Meng Shu hit play on the featured video titled The Dignity of a Gentleman. On screen, Confucius sat in a serene pavilion explaining that a true gentleman lives to protect those around him. As the sage droned on about virtue, Meng Shu felt a wave of soul-crushing boredom wash over him. Despite the boredom, the fundamentals began to sink in. His stats in benevolence, righteousness, and propriety started to twitch. His SSS rank gentleman status crept upward, finally reaching a whopping 0.01%. Hercules questioned him, noting that while he'd accessed the sage's intellect, the connection was far from complete. Meng Shu nodded, admitting his synchronization was weak, and his mastery level desperately needed a boost. Hercules reiterated his warning. Divine martial arts were way out of Meng Shu's league for now. In simple terms, these arts were about rewriting the laws of reality, not just popping off some basic superpower. Normally, Meng Shu would just channel mana through his veins, but this was on a whole different level. Mana is the fabric of life, and to truly weaponize it, he needed a specialized biological amplifier. This organ projects the user's will onto the world. The Eastern gods famously refer to it as the center of Qi. Catching Meng Shu's blank stare, Hercules realized the kid was totally lost and dying of boredom. A sudden flash from the screen startled Meng Shu before Hercules playfully jabbed him in the forehead. He teased that Meng Shu just wanted the god-tier power without any of the actual heavy lifting. "You want the glory, but you hate the homework, don't you?" Hercules asked with a knowing smirk. Meng Shu couldn't even fake a denial. He sighed and confessed that the big guy had hit the nail on the head. Expecting that answer, Hercules revealed he'd already figured out a shortcut for mastering these divine arts. The secret, it was all in the muscles. Confused by the sudden meathead logic, Meng Shu just gasped, "Wait, what?" Hercules argued that if the vessel is weak, the mind withers. Meng Shu blinked, wondering if the logic was backwards. Hercules insisted that as his muscles grew, those complex concepts would naturally click into place. Flexing hard, Hercules told him to stop overthinking and let his physique do the heavy learning. Meng Shu stood there completely floored. Meanwhile, at the elite sage group HQ, the elderly Mr. Han was busy. He mentioned to his granddaughter that he'd heard whispers about her latest high-end gear acquisition. Han Sharon confirmed the news, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. But Mr. Han wasn't finished. He'd heard the price tag was a jaw-dropping 4 billion won. Sharon didn't flinch, acknowledging the steep cost. While no match for Aurelian's legendary blade, this gear pushed her abilities to a whole new peak. Seeing her power surge from just one item, Han Taisun smiled, telling Sharon to name anything else she desired. After a respectful bow of gratitude, Sharon looked up with determination, signaling that it was finally time to begin. At those words, Taisun's expression hardened. His granddaughter Han Sharon was finally ready to move. The aftermath of an S-rank dungeon raid was brutal. Meng Shu lay there, his body completely spent. Hercules' movements were just too fast to track. Shu realized his journey into divine martial arts had barely begun. He checked his phone, staring gloomily at his stats. The worst part, his level was stuck in limbo. Could he ever break through? Long ago, a scholar asked Confucius how to survive an impossible fight. The secret was simple: never let the battle end. Remember, even the legendary Hercules started as a mortal. He was a human who ascended beyond godhood. Do you think he didn't struggle? That he didn't bleed? He must have tasted despair too. Divine martial arts are so god-tier, they make you doubt human potential. It's more than just fighting. Shu knew he lacked natural talent, so he'd have to outgrind everyone. Taking a stance, Shu threw punch after punch, mimicking Hercules until he whipped up a violent gale. An unbreakable will surged through him. His hidden virtues, benevolence, and wisdom ticked up by 0.5%. They hit 0.51%. Shu snapped his eyes open, stunned as his final strike landed. He'd finally touched the essence of divine art, accidentally obliterating the entire park. His SSS rank skill evolved. It climbed by 0.03%. Shu laughed nervously, realizing he desperately needed a private gym. Park Daku groaned when she saw the latest notification from her boss. Looking at the file name, it was another video featuring those same vampire bats from the last upload. Meanwhile, the Fire Witch was smashing records and reclaiming her #1 spot. Her stats were insane. 11 seconds. Her blitz was over in a heartbeat. Yet here was Shu filming the exact same concept. Once the upload finished, Daku opened it. This time, Meng Shu was actually rocking a witch costume. "What's up, world conquerors?" he shouted, reminding everyone he's the man who dominates everything. The conqueror of the world. Glancing at his screen, he mentioned he'd heard some spicy drama. A new record had just dropped on the Fire Witch's channel. A lightning-fast 11 seconds. A truly legendary run. But today, he was going to smoke the Fire Witch Yuhan himself. He was about to show everyone how it's done. Each boss video left Daku more shell-shocked. He was back at it again. Shu addressed the fans, knowing they were curious about this sudden beef. Taking shots at her usually means getting roasted. He knew he couldn't just go in unprepared. Am I right? That's why today he's revealing the ultimate strategy to topple the top-ranked Yuhan. Enough small talk, let's get to work. Shu raised his leg and slammed his foot down. Suddenly the camera lens shattered, and the screen went black. Daku sat there, completely floored. The ending was so abrupt. She checked her inbox again and realized her boss sent 2 clips. The second video left Daku even more stunned. The moment Shu's foot made contact with the earth, the gate behind him warped as the camera tumbled. Massive fissures erupted from where he'd kicked. He'd literally vaporized the entire dungeon. Shu casually remarked that he finally found a training spot. Daku was speechless. Was this even real? A sudden chill of realization ran down her spine. She frantically checked the video's duration and nearly fell out of her chair in shock. The entire clip was only 4 seconds long. Soon, Shu's new video was already trending everywhere. His subs hit 11,560. Those divine martial art vibes sent his views soaring. At this rate, making hundreds of millions wasn't just a dream. Shu was scrolling through the comments when one strange message stopped him cold. A user named Why Are You Crying posted a question. Is it not enough to clear the dungeon where Han Charon failed? Shu froze. What failure? He dove into the thread, seeing confused fans asking why she was allegedly in tears. The user claimed they'd just heard it through the grapevine. Shu figured it was just typical rumors. Then another user with a weird name confirmed the news was legit and hitting the internet. The headlines were already everywhere. Shocked by the news, Shu immediately asked for a source link. His jaw dropped at what he saw. If the SH group really failed an S-rank raid, they were finished. The news of their S-rank disaster broke at exactly 1 p.m. today, sending shockwaves everywhere. Breaking news rocked the world. SH Guild's powerhouse, Han Charon, just botched an S-rank raid. Miraculously, everyone made it out alive. But the public was fuming. The SH group's massive investment just went up in smoke, leaving their reputation in the gutter. Their grand plan to dominate the market vanished overnight. That golden dream, officially dead. Stocks were in a freefall. Meng Shiwu went digging for dirt, but the details of Sharon's epic fail were scrubbed clean. Why should I even care? Shiwu muttered, tossing his phone onto the bed like it was trash. He had his own problems to juggle. If Sharon was in a bind, she'd have to figure it out herself. Back at the SH skyscraper, the air was thick with tension. Han Sharon barely stepped inside before she was cornered. Enter Han Mina, the icy SH director. Well, if it isn't my dear niece, she sneered. It's been a minute. Mina flashed a fake smile, demanding Sharon look her in the eye while asking about her disastrous day. Coming back from a chat with the big boss, Mina poked. Sharon nodded, her voice cold as steel. Are you here for him too? Sharon countered. Mina replied that the chairman had summoned every executive for a reckoning. The company was a dumpster fire. Stocks were cratering and investors were jumping ship faster than rats. It wasn't just on Sharon, though. They were the ones who gambled everything on a single person's shoulders. Beat it while you still can, Mina warned. Unless you want to be ripped apart by your brothers. Sharon stood alone in the silent hallway, lost in thought. Meanwhile, So was gulping down Shiwu's latest herbal brew. Tastes like trash, right? Shiwu joked. Soe just sighed. I guess this is what karma tastes like. Shiwu grinned. His S+ rank divine medical art was finally leveling up, and the results were looking spicy. Progress hit 20.47%. Plus, this batch didn't taste nearly as lethal as the last one. Thanks to the gentleman's mind, his stats were skyrocketing across the board. It wasn't just about his martial arts anymore. Super strength, god-tier insight, and even divine metallurgy were starting to feel like second nature. Insight took the lead at 24.8%. It was the glue holding all his other abilities together. That SSS rank tag on Gentleman's Mind was no joke. As Soe drained the cup, the magic started happening. Her pale skin began to glow with life. The treatment was actually working, and it was working fast. Relief washed over Shiwu. If he kept grinding this medical art, he knew he could finally save her. But there was a catch, money. He needed 1.1 billion won just to keep his subscriptions active. The pressure was crushing. Even with 1.7 billion won, he was still dangerously short on cash. Paying for Huatuo and Confucius was going to drain him dry. He stared at his brew, brainstorming a hustle. Selling this stuff would be a gold mine, but without a medical license, he'd be throwing himself in jail. I'll ask Soyeon about it later, he thought. Right then, a sudden knock echoed through the room. He wasn't expecting company. Shiwu frowned, wondering who'd be showing up at his door uninvited. Sorry to barge in, but is this Mr. Meng Shiwu's place? A voice asked. It was Kong Minjae, Sharon's secretary. Shiwu let him in, and Minjae got straight to the point. The young lady wanted him back in the dungeon. Shiwu knew the drill. Sharon was stuck, and she needed his big brain to craft a winning strategy. So she wants a tactical breakdown of the raid, Shiwu asked, cutting through the formalities. Min-jae nodded. Exactly. Shiwu pressed for details on what went wrong during their first disastrous run. I'm in the dark on the specifics, Min-jae admitted, looking genuinely apologetic. But Sharon was adamant Shiwu's help was the only way. She wanted to come herself, but too many eyes were watching. Min-jae bowed low. Please, can we discuss how to make this happen, he pleaded. Shiwu could practically smell the clout. This was pure gold for his YouTube channel. A joint raid with the legendary Han Sharon. That video would rack up millions of views in hours. They arrived at the SH gym, where Sharon was a blur of steel and focus slashing through the air. She was rocking the specialized gloves he'd crafted, totally oblivious to his presence as she trained. Min-jae went to interrupt her, but Shiwu held up a hand. Wait, he whispered, don't break her flow. He could see it in her eyes. Sharon was deep in a trance-like state, a zone of pure combat instinct. That kind of hyper-focus was a level-up cheat code. Shiwu knew because he'd just been there himself. Min-jae attempted to protest, but Shuo silenced him, insisting that the brief delay was a necessary sacrifice. This was a massive break for Han Sharon. She stayed laser-focused, oblivious to everything happening around her. Observing closely, Meng Shuo noted her strikes were wildly unrefined and lacked systematic flow. Shuo figured his S+ insight and divine martial arts had evolved his perception to a new level. To his awakened eyes, Han Sharon's supposed techniques were nothing more than desperate, uncoordinated swings of her arms. Rumor had it she never learned true swordsmanship. Despite her S-rank talent, she was purely raw power. Her sheer lack of polish completely buried her potential. It was as if Han Sharon was wielding SS rank strength like his own, yet lacking the divine martial arts needed to actually control it. Eventually, relying on raw aggression will hit a hard ceiling. If Han Sharon could only master legitimate techniques, her power would skyrocket. The only path left for her evolution is becoming a sect disciple. That's a tall order. Plus, the SH group would never permit such a move. Meng Shu shot the secretary a strained, nervous grin. Joining the sect meant Han Sharon would have to cut ties with the SH Empire forever. Sometimes a prestigious background is more of a shackle than a blessing. Judging by Sharon's raw potential, Meng Shu realized she could easily master those legendary godtube techniques. Imagine her wielding the power of King Arthur himself. The mythic hero behind Excalibur, the graceful Queen Guinevere, or even the unstoppable conqueror, Xiang Yu. A warlord so terrifying he commanded legions and forced his greatest rivals into humiliating submission. The content was wild, but if Sharon could inherit their skills, the catch, she's locked out of godtube entirely. That meant those god-tier sword skills were off-limits, until a brilliant shady idea struck Meng Shu. What if he binge-watched the tutorials himself, and then acted as her personal instructor? Sure, the subscription fees were steep, but he'd just bill Sharon. A few billion here or there was chump change for her. Money was irrelevant to the crown princess of the SH Group conglomerate. He could even tack on a massive teaching fee. 10 billion sounded like a fair price. Meng Shu was practically salivating. Visions of luxury danced in his head. Capitalizing on Sharon's insane wealth was a golden opportunity he couldn't pass up. One massive hurdle remained: why would an elite S-rank hunter take pointers from a bottom-tier D-rank scrub? Plus, he could only pass on what he mastered first. A critical question gnawed at his mind. Could a mere mortal truly relay divine arts to another? But walking away now meant losing everything. It was now or never. Just then, Sharon wrapped up her session and headed toward her assistant. She scolded him for not mentioning Meng Shu's arrival sooner. Kang Min-jae bowed in an immediate respectful apology. He explained that Shu insisted on not breaking her focus. Sharon blinked, genuinely caught off guard by his consideration. Lock-in eyes with the stunning heiress, Meng Shu's face turned bright red as his tongue tied into knots. She excused herself to clean up and slipped away, leaving Meng Shu dazed by her presence. He had to confess, she was breathtaking. Later, in a private lounge, Sharon finally addressed him. She apologized for the delay, but Meng Shu brushed it off, eager to hear about her urgent request. He cut straight to the chase: what went wrong in that dungeon. Sharon leaned forward, her expression darkening. The place was empty, she whispered. Meng Shu recoiled in shock. An empty dungeon, that was impossible. She clarified that while the halls were eerily vacant, they eventually crossed paths with a single solitary nightmare. So one beast ruled the entire zone. Sharon shivered as she remembered those piercing, predatory eyes. She described a creature with a wolf-like silhouette, yet its presence felt far too ancient to be a mere monster. It was unlike anything in the hunter database. A wolf. The canine species had countless variations, but this was different. Standard wolf types were never powerful enough to anchor an S-rank gate. Something was seriously wrong. Sharon's hands began to shake. She confessed that she was utterly powerless against its overwhelming aura. Hearing an elite A+ rank hunter admit total defeat was chilling regardless of the dungeon's tier. You couldn't even touch it, he asked. Her grim nod confirmed his worst fears. Then he remembered her crew. She wasn't soloing. She had a squad of top-tier pros armed with the most expensive gear money could buy. And yet they were dismantled. It wasn't just a loss, it was a complete humiliating slaughter they couldn't survive. The facts were terrifying. One single entity inhabited the abyss, possessing strength that defied all logic. A lone beast so monstrous that a high-ranking hunter like Sharon stood zero chance of victory. Typically, dungeon ranks are calculated by the collective mana of every creature inside. This broke the rules. It's unheard of for one monster to carry an entire S-rank rating solo, unless they were dealing with a rare anomaly, a freak occurrence known as a mutation, or to be more terrifyingly specific, a Kappa-class monster, a singular predator that monopolizes every drop of mana in the entire dungeon. Against a beast like that, it was no wonder Sharon felt like a helpless child. It was a suicide mission. A Kappa is a nightmare at any level, but an S-rank version, that's an extinction-level event. Meng Shu looked her in the eye. He broke the news they had stumbled upon a Kappa. Sharon gasped, the term completely foreign to her elite training. The mystery was solved, but the conclusion was grim. Sharon, he warned, you need to abandon this dungeon immediately. Suho asked if she'd brave death again. Che-Rin refused to back down from the challenge. When Suho pressed for her motives, Che-Rin cryptically remarked that she wasn't the only one drowning in problems. The gravity of the situation clicked. Che-Rin's botched raid had sent the SH group into a financial tailspin. He'd seen the headlines hundreds of billions of won vanished like smoke within minutes of the news hitting. To stop the company's stocks from flatlining, Che-Rin realized she had to scrub this stain from her record. A successful dungeon sweep was her only play. It was a suicide mission, but she had zero room for failure. Risking her life seemed like a fair trade for trillions of won, and slaying the legendary S-class Kappa. Defeating this unprecedented beast would be a nightmare. Suho understood, but he had a specific price in mind. Suho flashed a grin and extended his hand, asking for the green light to film the raid for YouTube. Then came the kicker, a 10 billion won fee. Suho wore a cold businesslike smirk while laying out terms. He wasn't budging on the price. Moments later, a 1 billion won advance hit his account, sealing the deal. Staring at the massive deposit, Suho felt a twinge of regret. He definitely should have aimed for an even bigger bag. He never expected her to fold so fast. Shrugging it off, Suho decided to stop overthinking and just focus. 10 billion won was already a life-changing haul. Now his mind turned toward the unseen S-class monster. Facing the S-class, Kappa was a total gamble. Suho wasn't even sure if he could formulate a winning strategy. Charging too much felt risky, but with his insight at 24%, he had a hidden edge. Could he really dismantle an S-class monster's patterns? Suho steeled his resolve. He had to make it happen. Entering the S-rank gate, Che-Rin took point, only allowing Suho inside if he stayed glued to her side. Suho knew the danger was off the charts, but he needed eyes on the target to craft a counter-strategy. Armed with divine martial arts and superpowers, he felt a surge of confidence. He wasn't planning on dying today. Victory against the Kappa wasn't guaranteed, but Suho was certain he could survive whatever hell awaited them inside. Scanning the area, the oppressive aura of the S-rank dungeon felt worlds apart from any low-level gate. We need to move, Che-Rin commanded, leading Suho deeper into the shadows of the ominous dungeon corridors. As they pushed forward, Che-Rin stopped abruptly, tugging at her combat gloves with a look of visible discomfort. Suho noticed her struggling and asked if the gear was the problem. Che-Rin admitted the fit was off. He offered to tweak them on the spot, leaving Che-Rin blinking in confusion at his sudden strange request. He'd crafted these for himself, originally making them too bulky for her. The discomfort was likely slowing her down. Suho reached out, his fingers brushing the material as he began to manually recalibrate the gloves for Che-Rin. Right before her eyes, the fabric began to ripple and shrink, molding perfectly to the contours of her hand. Suho flashed a casual thumbs up, telling her to think of it as a bonus. Che-Rin stood there, stunned. She demanded to know how he understood such gear. Suho just shrugged, admitting he was the one who forged them. Her jaw dropped. Was he Master Seol Guang's hand-picked successor? The implications were absolutely mind-blowing. Suho played it cool, claiming he just shared the same workshop floor with the master. No big deal. Their conversation died as a wave of pure malice suddenly flooded the air, chilling them to the bone. A crushing pressure threatened to buckle their knees. Emerging from the gloom was a predator radiating pure extinction. This wasn't just a monster, it was a god-tier threat. Its energy was on a level they hadn't imagined. Che-Rin instinctively lunged in front of Suho, screaming for him to retreat as the beast narrowed its eyes. Standing before them was a nightmare-made flesh, the S-class Kappa monster, a creature of pure raw destruction. The colossal wolf Kappa, the true sovereign of this dungeon, loomed over them like a mountain of fur and rage. Suho's mind raced. Could Che-Rin take this thing? Even with his help, did they stand a chance? He instantly killed that thought. They were vastly outmatched and nowhere near prepared for a showdown. Their mission was intel, not suicide. Suho gritted his teeth, knowing they had to bail before the slaughter. Suho instantly unleashed his Heracles superpower. He slammed his heel into the earth, triggering a blinding shockwave that momentarily dazed the towering predator. Grabbing Chae-Rin's shoulder, Suho roared for them to move. They had to run like their souls depended on it. Meng-Shu and Han Shiron bolted for the exit with everything they had. By some miracle, they slipped through the shadows and escaped the clutches of their pursuers. Lungs burning from the frantic escape, Meng-Shu struggled to process the sheer insanity of what had just gone down. The shock still had him reeling, and since he hadn't dared to trade blows with that beast yet, gauging its true power was nearly impossible. However, he knew one thing for certain: it would take at least 5 S-class hunters working in perfect sync just to leave a scratch on this wolf. Once her breathing finally steadied, Han Sharon pressed Meng-Shu about the mysterious ability he unleashed before their retreat. In return, he questioned how she even survived that ordeal. Alongside her entire squad, Han Sharon chalked it up to pure luck, which prompted Shu to ask if she really intended to challenge that monster boss again. Without hesitation, she confirmed it was a mission she had to complete. She promised that if Meng-Shu crafted a winning strategy, her team would follow his lead blindly. Shu weighed her offer carefully, locking eyes with her for a tense second. He eventually turned away, promising to reach out once he finished analyzing the beast. Returning to his room, Shu dove straight into the dungeon footage. He was obsessed with uncovering the true identity of this terrifying creature. This kappa was clearly a mutated variant of a standard monster, implying there had to be a base species, serving as the blueprint for this nightmare. He scoured the Hunter Association records and the Monster Encyclopedia, but the internet turned up absolutely nothing. Even after activating his S+ rank insight, not a single lead materialized. What exactly was he dealing with? Hitting a dead end, Meng-Shu stepped away from the screen for a breather. After a grueling training session, he managed to bump his superpower skill by 0.1%, reaching 5.88%, while his divine martial arts crawled up a measly 0.01%. Witnessing this effort, Hercules mocked him, asking if such a basic routine was really enough to tire him out. Shu just tuned out the trash talk and stayed glued to his smartphone. Caught off guard by his first subscriber's focus, Hercules leaned in to see what was so interesting. Once Shu realized Hercules was hovering over him, he explained he was breaking down a monster he'd encountered. Hercules looked stunned, and Shu admitted that even after 3 days of constant research, the creature's origin remained a total mystery. Skeptical Hercules demanded to see the monster with his own eyes, but the moment the pitch-black wolf appeared on screen, Hercules went dead silent. Shu asked if he recognized the beast, but Hercules told him to hold on, his voice trembling as he asked if that thing was actually Fenrir. The name hit Shu like a ton of bricks, making him shout out in disbelief. Fenrir, the legendary calamity, straight out of Norse mythology, known across legends as the demonic wolf and the wolf of divine slaughter. The logic behind those terrifying titles is bone-chillingly simple. It is the beast, destined to trigger the apocalypse known as Ragnarok. Legends say his massive upper jaw scrapes the heavens, while his lower jaw grinds against the earth. He consumes everything in his path, and eventually, this monster swallows the world whole and tears apart Odin, the supreme king of the Norse gods. Shu demanded to know what Fenrir was doing in this realm, but Hercules just shrugged, having no clue how such a being crossed over. This wasn't even his original world after all. That's when Shu realized the mysterious figure who gave him that phone had basically handed him a direct link to GodTube and the apocalypse itself. Shu joked that under the circumstances, Hercules was the only one who didn't actually know the secret to traveling between worlds. He needed a final confirmation if this really was the Fenrir. Hercules nodded, confirming the wolf's identity. He'd actually traded blows with the beast before, and naturally, he walked away the victor. Shu was floored by the revelation, and couldn't help but wonder how he'd fare if he went head-to-head with Fenrir. Hercules did a double-take asking if Shu had a death wish. But Shu was serious. He wanted an honest evaluation. Hercules scratched his head, admitting that while he wasn't sure of the exact timing, the fight would probably last about 1 second. 1 second, Shu's eyes widened, but Hercules just burst out laughing. That 1 second was all the time Fenrir needed to rip Shu into confetti. Speechless at the brutal roast, Shu turned his focus back to the screen. Upon closer inspection, the recording revealed a shocking truth. Fenrir was severely weakened, his legendary frame having shrunk down to something resembling a mere wolf cub. Shu was baffled. Even in this cub state, the beast was still the size of a mountain. Yet looking at its unique biology, there was no doubt. Hercules then spotted something else unusual. Fenrir was wearing a strange ornament he had never seen before. Shu was completely lost, not following what the god was seeing. Pointing toward the screen, Hercules urged him to look closer at the bizarre object. He suggested that this very item. Meng-Shu squinted at the mystical restraints binding Fenrir's overwhelming pressure. Suddenly, the terrifying truth clicked. Those weren't just chains. It was Gleipnir, the legendary binding that no mortal force in this world could ever shatter. Hearing about the mythical shackles, Hercules noted that even while bound, Fenrir would only need 60 seconds. Confused, Meng Shu pressed for details. Hercules dropped the bombshell. Fenrir only needed a minute to rip them into literal shreds. With a chilling laugh, Hercules stared, while Meng Shu spiraled about why this beast was even here. If this monster truly was the legendary world devourer, they were cooked. But Hercules cut through his panic, offering to finally spill the tea on the wolf's fatal flaws, though it wouldn't be for free. As the spirit toyed with him, Meng Shu played his trump card, provide the intel, and he'd grant him exclusive viral content ideas for his next 200 subscribers. Tempted by the clout, Hercules swore to his master that he'd organize the tactical data immediately before vanishing into thin air. Back at the base, paparazzi swarmed Han Sharon, demanding why she was returning to the very dungeon that broke her. Eyes set on redemption, she marched toward the gate, ready to reclaim her honor where she once tasted defeat. Stepping inside, she saw the squad was locked and loaded. "Move out," she ordered, wanting to waste no more time. Suddenly, a strange voice cut through the tension. Someone nearby was live streaming to a camera. A hunter scoffed, asking who the clown was. "Just a YouTuber," a comrade replied. "Goes by Conqueror of the World." The scarred veteran frowned, racking his brain. The name rang 0 bells. Just another irrelevant influencer. "What's this psycho doing on an S-rank raid?" he spat. But the gray-haired hunter dropped a curveball. Rumor had it this content creator actually brought a tactical plan for their rematch with the wolf. A strategy for that beast. Total cap, the scarred man erupted, unable to believe the sheer audacity. The gray-haired man shrugged, just relaying what he heard. But the veteran noticed something fishy about their current support. Between the weird gear and this bottom-tier YouTuber, the signs were pointing to one thing. He concluded Han Sharon was totally desperate, but his partner cut him off before he could say more. "What's your endgame once this job is done?" he asked. As the scarred man started to answer, he caught himself warning his friend not to jinx them. "Just focus on the raid," he growled. Deep within the S-rank hellscape, the team moved with lethal intent, hunting for the great wolf's soul. Meanwhile, the most chaotic member of the squad was busy giving his subscribers a front row seat. "We're live in an S-rank dungeon, fam," Meng Shu hyped. "Can you guys feel this insane mana pressure?" The scarred veteran's blood boiled. He knew this awakened newbie was named Meng Shu, but this was ridiculous. This guy was actually vlogging in the middle of a suicide mission. Talk about zero self-awareness. What if the beast heard his loud-mouthed commentary and ambushed them? The risk was astronomical. Suddenly the temperature dropped as a massive shadow swallowed them whole. He looked up, paralyzed by dread. The legendary Black Wolf stood before them. Seeing it again, Sharon felt a cold wave of doubt. Was she leading her squad to a slaughter? Should she have swallowed her pride and called an S-rank pro? No. She shook off the weakness. This wasn't just a raid. It was a statement for SH Group. This was their debut in the industry. They needed a win, and they needed it on their own terms. The world needed to see SH Group's true might. They needed to be feared, not just respected. Sharon gripped her hilt, her aura exploding in preparation. But then, Meng Shu casually strolled right past her. "All right, chat, meet Fenrir," he said casually. "The legendary demon wolf of the Norse myths. The world eater itself." He could already see the chat spamming. "Is that really the real Fenrir?" He gave a cocky grin. "Honestly, no clue," he admitted. "But there's only one way to find out. Besides, I'm the conqueror of the world, right? That's what the channel says." Even if this wolf was destined to swallow the planet to Meng Shu, it was just another day at the office. "Ready, Sharon?" he asked, then shouted for his viewers. "All right, step one of the strategy is to go all out." In a blur of speed, Meng Shu lunged and vanished from sight. Before anyone could blink, he was inches from Fenrir's snout. The squad stood frozen, unable to process his godly speed. Fenrir's claws slashed through the air in a blur. Han Sharon screamed for Meng Shu to move, but it was too late. The beast's strike landed on nothing but air. Suddenly, Meng Shu materialized right beside Fenrir's massive ear. He slammed a devastating punch into the wolf's jaw. The scarred hunter watched in disbelief, demanding to know what happened. His gray-haired partner stood speechless, equally stunned. Despite that heavy impact, Fenrir didn't even flinch. Instead, a terrifying dark aura erupted from the beast, growing suffocating. Meng Shu realized the situation was spiraling out of control. That strike was clean, yet the wolf remained completely unscathed. Cold sweat broke as Meng Shu scrambled for a new plan. Hercules promised this would work, but reality hit hard as Fenrir's counterattack pulverized the surrounding forest. Yet the beast couldn't land a fatal blow on Meng Shu. Fenrir went berserk, shredding the landscape in a mindless rampage. Weaving through the relentless onslaught, Meng Shu's stamina hit zero. Seeing the opening, Han Sharon signaled her squad to strike. She lunged forward, leading the charge against the monstrous wolf. Meanwhile, Meng Shu narrowly escaped another bone-crushing swipe. The situation was dire. Any doubts about this beast's identity vanished. He was facing the legendary Fenrir in the flesh. The myth was real. Hercules claimed a weakened Fenrir would give them at least 1 minute to survive the encounter. But the reality was brutal. Meng Shu would be lucky to last even 10 seconds before being ripped to shreds. That strategy was a total bust, clearly designed for someone with the godlike power of Hercules himself. Their only saving grace was Gleipnir. As long as those unbreakable chains held firm, a sliver of hope remained. Losing was one thing, but being unable to fight back was a death sentence. Suddenly, a brilliant arc of light ignited. Han Sharon's blade carved through the air, slicing the wolf's jaw and saving Meng Shu. This surprise attack forced Fenrir to falter. He shifted his murderous gaze from Meng Shu to Sharon. But suddenly, the smell of singed fur filled the air. A massive orb of flames materialized overhead. Meng Shu wasn't fighting solo anymore as a giant fireball illuminated the sky. Even Meng Shu was stunned by the spectacle, realizing a powerful magic user was finally backing them up. "Watch out," the mage roared. In an instant, the flames condensed into a lethal beam of pure incineration. Hellfire rained upon the beast. Fenrir's roar shook the earth to dispel the spell, but the mages intensified their assault. Then the impossible happened. Fenrir tilted his head back and began swallowing the sun-like sphere of fire whole. The magic users froze in horror. The beast didn't just resist their ultimate attack, he literally ate it for lunch. It was clear. The monster was practically immortal. Desperate, the gray-haired hunter barked orders to the trembling squad. "Stand your ground," he screamed. The scarred veteran followed up, commanding everyone to brace for the real fight. Meng Shu pointed out the obvious to Sharon. Fenrir was still restrained by those legendary shackles. "You see them too, right?" he asked. "If those chains can hold him, we still have a chance to strike." Sharon gave a sharp nod, catching his drift instantly. She bolted toward the shadowy wolf without a second thought. The hunters unleashed a coordinated assault to pin the beast down. Meng Shu centered himself, taking one long, focused breath. Pushing his limits, he silenced his fear, honing every sense into a single point of absolute concentration. With explosive speed, Meng Shu lunged at the wolf's skull. But Fenrir's predatory instincts were still razor-sharp. A heavy swipe slammed Meng Shu into the dirt. Yet the boy's agility surpassed the beast's wildest calculations. Predicting the wolf's move, he carved out a lethal opening. Meng Shu finally activated his rank SS superpower. Channeling Hercules' legendary might, he rocketed forward, delivering a devastating punch to the wolf's flank. For the first time, the titan wobbled. Meng Shu's power was actually piercing through the beast's divine hide. He just needed to maintain this frantic pressure. But suddenly, his danger sense screamed a frantic warning. A strike faster than thought bypassed his defenses completely. Blood sprayed as the attack found its mark. The impact sent him flying like a rag doll. Staring at the gash on his chest, reality finally set in. A fraction of a second later, and that blow would have ended his life right then and there. The giant beast finally recoiled. Meng Shu realized his borrowed strength was finally making a dent in Fenrir's armor. He had to keep the momentum going, but in that heartbeat, a chilling shiver of pure dread paralyzed him. An invisible strike flashed by too fast for human eyes to track, let alone dodge. Pain exploded as he was hurled across the battlefield. Clinging to life, he looked down at his mangled chest. This was a death trap. If his reflexes had been even slightly slower, he would be a dead man. He was nearly shredded. Suddenly, Meng Shu realized something was chillingly wrong. It was subtle, but before the impact, Fenrir actually seemed to hesitate. Sharon's blade saved him, but Meng Shu knew that final blow should have been fatal. The wolf had the kill. So why hold back? Fenrir howled as blood sprayed the floor. Sharon's steel bit deep. Meng Shu gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. This was his only shot. He lunged at the shadow beast with everything he had. The wolf buckled, then lashed out with a massive soul-crushing claw. Exactly as planned. Meng Shu dove forward, grabbing the chains, binding the monster. He hauled back with explosive strength, dragging the titan toward him. With a violent heave, he whipped the massive wolf into the air like a rag doll. Meng Shu charged his next move, while Sharon blurred toward the airborne predator. Their powers collided in a devastating duo strike. The other hunters stood frozen in shock. It was absolute insanity. The impact carved a massive crater into the earth. "Victory," Sharon gasped for air. Then a sickening crack. Meng Shu was sent flying. Horror washed over the crew. This wasn't possible. Fenrir's growl vibrated through the room. Thicker, darker energy oozed from the wolf. The scarred hunter realized they were doomed. This wasn't a fight. It was a death sentence. A void-like maw loomed before them. Those chains meant nothing. They were helpless. Reeling from the blow, Meng Shu hit the dirt. He stared at the sky, mind racing. Why Gleipnir was supposed to bind him. Yet Fenrir was still the endbringer, a titan of slaughter that once devoured gods. Even nerfed Fenrir was a walking apocalypse. Their puny attacks were mere flea bites. Combat was a joke. But a nagging feeling tugged at Meng Shu. Something was off. "Run," Sharon's voice cracked. "Everyone get to the exit, right now. Take Meng Shu and go." This was the Black Troll incident all over again. She was playing the martyr again, but bravery wouldn't bridge this insane power gap. Fenrir was unbeatable. So why were they still breathing? Suddenly the pieces clicked. The truth hit him like a freight train. He couldn't believe he'd been so blind. "I'm such an idiot," he muttered. The entire scenario had been a lie. "Can you move?" the hunter asked. Instead, Mengshu bolted straight toward the beast. "Are you insane?" they screamed. But he ignored them, charging the beast. Sharon held back. Sharon was at her limit when Mengshu suddenly stepped into her line of sight. She froze in shock. Fenrir let out a guttural snarl, locking eyes with the boy. Just as he suspected, no attack. Just a silent stare. "What are you doing?" Sharon screamed. "Have you lost your mind? Get back to the others before you're killed." He walked right up to the Shadow Maw. "This raid, it never made sense," he said. S ranks aside, for a group like theirs, challenging this thing was suicide from day one. It was a pointless struggle, and that was the key. "Why am I still alive? Why is the body count 0? He asked. Sharon stared at him, completely confused. "Don't you get it?" He pointed at the beast. "If Fenrir wanted us dead, we would be dust. If he were serious, no one would have left this cave." The weight of his words sank in. A chilling silence fell over the hunters. "Then how did we escape?" Mengshu looked at the wolf. "He let us." Sharon survived her first raid for one reason. Fenrir didn't want a bloodbath. He didn't want to hurt them. It sounded crazy, but the pattern was undeniable. Fenrir never threw the first punch. Against a mindless monster, that would be impossible. Fenrir, Asgard's destroyer. Cast aside at birth, he was forged in the fires of starvation and crushing solitude. Survival was his only instinct. He endured, refusing to break, until whispers of his existence reached the heavens. Asgard's elite tracked him down. One deity knelt before the massive wolf, praising the legends of his strength. Then came the challenge. Could he snap this binding? Seeking connection, Fenrir submitted, letting them ensnare him. To a lonely pup, it felt like a game. He truly believed he'd finally found a pack. Fenrir shattered the bonds effortlessly. The gods stood frozen. Even Thor lacked such raw, terrifying power. Pure joy filled Fenrir. He'd earned their friendship. But the gods saw only a monster that needed taming. Paralyzed by fear of his potential, they forged Gleipnir, the ultimate chain, to imprison him forever. They returned with the new shackles. Sensing the shift in the air, Fenrir felt a cold dread. Tyr, god of war, made a wager. If the wolf couldn't escape, the gods would surely free him. The wager, Tyr's hand. Trusting the only god who showed him mercy, Fenrir accepted the deal. Tyr alone hadn't looked away. He was the only soul who brought meat to that desolate, barren wasteland. Fenrir chose trust over instinct. But Gleipnir held fast, trapping the legendary wolf in an unbreakable, magical grip. The betrayal was absolute. The gods laughed and Tyr turned his back just as the prophecy demanded. Despite the deception, Tyr kept his hand in Fenrir's jaws. Even knowing he was played, Fenrir wouldn't bite. He refused to hurt his only friend. Yet the gods remained petrified by his dormant, world-shaking power. They jammed a blade between his teeth, locking his jaws open forever. Bound and silenced until the end. Agony and isolation became his world. When Ragnarok finally erupted, absolute madness consumed the shackled wolf. He swallowed the world whole, tearing deities apart. Yet he could never bring himself to kill Tyr. Even lost in a blood-red haze, he remembered. Tyr was the only one who didn't treat him like trash. He was the friend who fed a starving outcast. To Fenrir, that bond was more sacred than godhood. It was a tragic, foolish loyalty. This wasn't some mindless demon wolf. He was a creature seeking love. Mengshu claimed Fenrir meant no harm. The hunters stared back, their faces twisted in absolute disbelief. "You expect us to believe that?" Sharon snapped, reminding Shu that Fenrir remained a lethal threat. An S-rank dungeon break would be an irreversible catastrophe. "We can't just leave this ticking time bomb. If Fenrir escapes during a breach, there's no telling how many cities he'll wipe off the map." Sheathing her blade, Sharon signaled a retreat. "We report this to the association immediately," she commanded. They needed an S-rank strike team. Sharon officially pulled her squad from the mission, refusing to risk it. Shu couldn't argue. To save the world, this tragic legend had to be put down for good. But why was he here? Shu wondered. If history was repeating, had Fenrir been discarded yet again? In myth, Ragnarok broke his chains. Yet here he was bound once more by some twisted cosmic irony. Was this dungeon a cage, a divine barrier built to trap the wolf in this miserable dark void? Lured into a permanent prison just like his birth, destined to rot away in total soul-crushing silence. This explains the S-rank rating. The system wasn't measuring Fenrir, but the sheer power of his cage. The mana readings came from the trap itself, not the weakened wolf dying inside of it. A prison built for a godslayer would naturally rank as S tier. Sharon urged Shu to move out. Shu lowered his gaze, his heart heavy, as he followed the team toward the dungeon exit. If they left now, it was over. Fenrir wasn't the monster. He was just tired. Even if Shu died here, the wolf wouldn't chase them. He had no hate left to give. Shu clenched his fists. In this fragile state, Fenrir stood no chance against an elite S-rank squad. They'd swarm the dungeon and slaughter him. A simple, efficient execution of a bound, helpless creature. He couldn't let innocent people die, but could he really stand by and watch this murder happen? Just kill Fenrir, the world would say. Go back to your life. Forget the wolf. Back to the forge. Back to the daily grind and the comfort of his normal routine. Back to GodTube and making bank to save So. But his conscience was screaming. It's his last stand, yet he refuses to retreat a single inch. Shocked by Shu's sudden pivot, Han Sharon froze. Shu surged forward, charging Fenrir. A frantic Sharon screamed, wondering what he was doing. As Shu closed in, the wolf reared up, letting out a bone-chilling howl. Then Shu saw it. Fenrir was slowly bleeding out from their previous strikes. Fenrir was just an abandoned, lonely wolf who never hurt anyone. Even while suffering, the beast refused to strike back, yet the world labels him a dungeon monster. He's branded a demonic threat that must be purged. They can't let him live, and sadly, execution is the only option. But GodTube legends never quit. They never back down. Even in battles they can't win, they keep fighting until they shatter the very concept of impossible. That's how heroes are born. If there is no path forward, they'll carve one out themselves. With a confident smirk, Shu vowed to demolish the dungeon. Sharon's jaw dropped in pure disbelief. She gasped, demanding an explanation. Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted from Shu. The dungeon itself was the problem. This realm was just a cage for Fenrir. To save him, the entire reality had to break. Sharon panicked, yelling that only gods can shatter space. To a human, destroying a dungeon was physically impossible. It was suicide. Channeling that much raw power would surely tear Shu's body apart. Yet he can't stop. Just as rivers don't drink their own water and trees don't eat their fruit, the sun doesn't shine for itself and flowers don't bloom for their own sake. Shu mused that a true gentleman lives for others, sounding like an ancient scholar. He let out a laugh. He laughed because this path brings no fame or riches. Yet if you remain calm when ignored, aren't you a true gentleman? A real man stays composed even when the whole world overlooks him. Shu wasn't sure about being a gentleman, but in this era, not being called an idiot was enough. Still, he yearned to be someone decent, not just good, but someone who truly treats people with kindness. He couldn't explain it, but Confucius's teachings suddenly flashed through his mind like a bolt of lightning. Seeing the broken Fenrir Shu's heart softened, and a genuine warm smile spread across his face. Then he unleashed Heracles' divine martial arts. Sensing that legendary presence, Fenrir began to tremble in terror. Heracles once taught him that divine arts aren't just for killing, they can rewrite the laws of existence. This wasn't just a superpower. He was overriding the very fabric of space and reality. Shu braced himself, activating the first secret technique of Heracles' divine martial arts, the descending dragon kick. He slammed his foot down, detonating every ounce of his built-up energy. In an instant, the entire dimension was engulfed in a tidal wave of celestial power. Then, a massive fracture split the sky of the S-rank dungeon. The starry void shattered like glass. Exposing the real world, Sharon stood paralyzed, witnessing a miracle that defied all logic. Her mind raced, unable to process the scene. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed. Shu had collapsed. The strain of using divine arts had broken him. Sharon scrambled toward his fallen body in a panic. She frantically checked for a pulse. Thank God he was still alive. Around them, reality continued to splinter, bleeding vibrant colors into the void. Meanwhile, Fenrir watched the man who had just ended his prison. As she lifted him, Sharon's mind spiraled. She knew Shu was a unique, featureless awakened, but this. Even back during the troll fight, she had wondered what kind of monstrous strength he truly held. But there was no time for questions. They bolted toward the exit as the world dissolved. They had to escape before the entire dimension imploded into nothingness. Much later, Shu groaned as he drifted back to consciousness. Disoriented, he wondered if he had actually cheated death. Scanning the room, he realized he was tucked away in a luxury VIP suite at SH Group Hospital. As he sat up, he noticed Han Sharon resting in the bed beside him. She asked if he was okay. Startled, Shu questioned her presence. Sharon simply pointed to her IV drip. She joked that she was a patient too, then asked if he was feeling any pain. Shu gave a stiff, awkward grin. Uncomfortable was a massive understatement, he thought. Would she feel uneasy being in his private space? Honestly, who wouldn't want to be near such a beauty? But ancient wisdom says, men and women shouldn't share a room after age 7. The tension was real. Shu Wu questioned those old rules, but Sharon's icy silence quickly snapped his focus back to reality. Sharon finally broke the quiet, asking if he wanted to know the truth. Shu gave a nod. As the dungeon imploded, Sharon dragged his unconscious body to safety just before the final collapse. He finally came to after emergency treatment, struggling to process Sharon's incredible story of survival. Sharon went stiff, lost for words. Was he being too blunt for her to handle? She confirmed the S-rank dungeon was completely obliterated. The mission was officially a success. That was a relief, but Shu had one burning question. What happened to the divine wolf Fenrir? Sharon wasn't certain, but she caught a glimpse of the massive beast vanishing as the dust settled. With his prison shattered, Shu hoped Fenrir had finally found his way back home, safely back to the divine realm. For now, Sharon decided to keep the true events under wraps. She swore her team to secrecy, ensuring the public only knew the official version of the raid. They took the credit, but Sharon offered to reveal Shu as the real hero. He needed to clarify. He asked if she was really willing to hand him the glory. Sharon didn't hesitate to agree. Shu surprised her by insisting she keep the fame. A heavy silence filled the room. Why hide such insane strength, she wondered. Shu was genuinely confused by her question. He wasn't hiding anything. If he were, he never would have started his YouTube channel. Sharon realized her blunder. Shu explained that while he wasn't being secretive, optics mattered right now. For the sake of the current situation, she needed to be the face of this victory. Her team would be hailed as the S-rank conquerors. They would announce Sharon as the winner. She hesitated the word but hanging in the air. Shu could see her confidence wavering. Was it right to take credit for an S-rank clear she didn't truly achieve alone? He reminded her this raid was unique. He looked Miss Sharon in the eye. He insisted she was truly S-rank caliber. Was he just being nice? No, he stated cold facts. A quiet moment passed before she beamed a grateful smile. Shu decided it was time to move on. Was that everything? Not quite. Sharon had one more proposal for him. She asked to partner up again. To Shu, the idea felt like pure madness. Shu stared at his phone in disbelief. That dungeon collapse had triggered something insane. His stats were skyrocketing. Insight jumped 11.7%, and his super strength surged by 13%. Divine martial arts and gentlemanly wisdom hit new peaks. These gains were absolutely off the charts. Normally, his strength grew by 0.4% daily. This 13% leap was pure insanity. His martial arts, which barely budged a fraction of a percent weekly, had reached a new peak. A 9.3% jump. His insight and wisdom felt like they had aged years instantly. Was it the dragon's downward strike? His YouTube fans had only seen basic clears so far. He hadn't just cleared a dungeon this time. He literally tore through the fabric of space. The entire dimension collapsed. It left him drained, just like that brutal fight with the dark troll. The power surge knocked him cold instantly. Still wielding divine martial arts was a total game changer. He wondered how long it would take to truly master this overwhelming power once and for all. He had to test it. Surprisingly, Sharon was all in. Soon he was finally leaving the hospital. Sharon headed straight to see her grandfather. Her assistant Min-jae was full of gratitude. The raid was a triumph, and the chairman was thrilled. Sharon breathed a sigh of relief. When Min-jae asked about Shu's response, Sharon looked completely baffled. Did he reject the offer again? A quiet yes was her only answer. Shu's words stayed with her. A true gentleman aligns with people, never with an organization. Small-time thugs stick together but can't stop bickering. Min-jae finally swallows his pride and apologizes. He totally missed the point. Xiaoran shuts him down, explaining that casual collabs beat being permanent teammates. On that note, Shu makes a wild move. He asks if she is down to master the blade. Min-jae's jaw drops. Wait, is this random dude really about to tutor her in fencing? Sure, Shu has some hidden sauce, but he's just a lowly D-ranker, right? And yet he is training an S-rank goddess like Xiaoran. Surprisingly, she is actually hyped to try. Min-jae wonders why they are hitting up the chairman. Xiaoran's answer is simple. Master Shu needs to get paid for his elite coaching. Later, Shu is chilling by the hospital grounds. Scrolling through GodTube, he is stuck between three legendary styles. King Xiangyu's heaven-shattering sword, Siegfried's iconic dragon-slaying technique, or the legendary Tai Chi blade of the Wudang founder, the great Zhang Sanfeng. Shu is convinced these three ultimate moves are exactly what Xiaoran needs. One of these is bound to be her perfect match. He decides to flex all three and let her pick her favorite. The subscription isn't cheap, but with that 10 million won plus monthly fees, he is golden. Shu pulls up the payment page to check the damage. He is expecting a 200 million won bill, but his heart stops when he sees the total. He double-checks the screen and freezes. A single sub is now a staggering 2 billion. Why the massive price hike? Panicking Shu frantically scrolls through his phone for answers. Confucius was only 1 billion. How are these styles even more expensive? It makes 0 sense. He checks Hippocrates and Huatuo, only to find they have also jumped to 2 billion each. They were literally 100 million yesterday. Why is the price tag skyrocketing like this? Then the horrifying truth hits him. Is the cost scaling? Based on how many channels he follows, that means the next hits 3 billion, then 4 or 5. This financial spiral is endless. Suddenly, Shu realizes subscribing to all three is straight-up suicide. The dream of being a multi-style master just got crushed by a massive paywall. Even a 1 billion increase puts him 9 billion in the hole. That is insane. Can he just sub and cancel immediately? What if the system traps him in a contract? Is he doomed to pay 9 billion every month? Luckily, a failed payment should auto-cancel it. Even if he sticks to one sword style for Xiaoran, the next channel will still be overpriced because his total subscriptions just keep stacking up. This grind never ends. Suddenly, Shu senses a bizarre energy nearby. This isn't a human presence, it is something else entirely. He peeks behind a tree only to find a tiny, harmless-looking dog. Wait, is that really Fenrir? Shu crouches down, questioning where the beast came from. He stares at the pup, unable to believe this tiny fluffball is the legendary world eater he met before. Suddenly, Fenrir turns and hacks up a live mouse. Is he offering a snack? Shu reaches out, but the gift starts twitching and trembling. The little guy is still alive. Before Shu can react, Fenrir bolts. Left with a half-dead rodent, Shu is just utterly confused. Meanwhile, Hercules is fuming. He demands to know why Shu failed to take Fenrir down. Shu fires back that he was literally asking for help. Hercules insists his training was perfect. He told Shu to aim for the ribs and grab the tail to seal Fenrir's power. But that pro tip was useless in a real life-or-death struggle. Hercules just scoffs, pointing out that Shu is simply too weak to pull it off. Shu is livid. He almost died out there, and all he gets is an insult. Hercules just shrugs. He didn't realize Shu was such a noob. Shu just walks away done. He pressed Hercules for a tactical plan tailored to his current rank, ignoring the god's insane combat styles. Hercules erupted into dramatic sobs, wailing about the utter injustice of it all. Then he suddenly struck a pose, begging Shiva to witness his gains since even his triceps were crying foul. It was a massive relief that they survived this chaos. Death was literally knocking at his door, but his mind was on the footage. That epic dungeon recording had been completely wiped. It wasn't just Fenrir, he'd caught Han Jarin on camera too. That clip was a guaranteed viral hit with over 1 million views. It would have launched his career to the moon. But now it was digital dust. Meng Shiwu felt the soul-crushing loss. Suddenly, a strange rustle broke the silence. Shiwu figured the beast was back. But Fenrir froze mid-stride, his massive frame shivering with pure, unadulterated terror. This left Shiwu stunned. Nearby, Hercules was still stuck on loop, muttering about how life was totally rigged. Suddenly, Hercules sensed a chilling presence and whipped around. But before he could spot the intruder, Fenrir bolted. Shiwu glanced down only to find a dazed pigeon sprawled out. What was this bird doing here? Did Fenrir fetch a snack? The second Shiwu let go, the bird sprang up and turned into a statue. It scanned the room in a panicked blur, trying to process the situation. Then, its eyes locked onto Shiwu's. Terrified, the bird noped out through the window. Hercules demanded to know where that weird Fenrir had even appeared from, and what was up with that pigeon. Shiwu shrugged, guessing Fenrir was just trying to serve him some lunch. Maybe Hercules scoffed, noting that Fenrir wasn't some house cat bringing home trophies. Shiwu remained completely clueless. Regardless, if Fenrir was delivering these creatures, did that mean he viewed everyone else as mere hunting targets? Shiwu argued that Fenrir wasn't bloodthirsty. Hercules raised a skeptical eyebrow, doubting the beast's supposed kind intentions. Then why the delivery service? Was he asking for an execution? Shiwu could only offer a blank stare. Then came the million-dollar question. Where did Fenrir originate, and why was he obsessed with bringing him animal gifts? Shiwu explained his connection with Fenrir, and the absolute madness of how they leveled that S-rank dungeon. The pieces started fitting together for Hercules. Yet one massive mystery still haunted the god's mind. How did Fenrir bridge dimensions to exist in this realm? Shiwu confessed that he was equally baffled by it. He then teased if Hercules was simply out of the loop. The god barked back, calling the idea total insanity. Dimensions aren't supposed to collide like this, so Shiwu pushed. Where could Fenrir have possibly spawned from then? Hercules went dead silent. Shiwu smirked, concluding that the mighty god was indeed the only one left in the dark. Hercules wailed once more, denying everything. He pleaded for Shiwu's trust, while sobbing about the world being against him. He struck another pose, claiming even his bulging biceps were crying over this blatant disrespect. It was peak comedy. To end the drama, Shiwu just nodded along. But Hercules' gears were turning. Did this mean Shiwu survived? That insane dragon's downward strike. More importantly, how did a mere human even trigger such a legendary move? Shiwu played it cool, claiming it was pure luck. Hercules wasn't buying it for a single second. Because you don't just luck your way into a dragon's descending blow. Since the topic was open, Shiwu nudged him for the next skill. Hercules grinned, saying the move was easy, but there's no free lunch. What was in it for him? Shiwu promised to hook him up with some legendary GodTube content. That sealed the deal for the Hercules channel. The god roared with joy, praising his brilliant student's foresight. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a shady client handed over a fresh hit list to his mysterious boss. The mark Meng Shiwu, a lowly D-rank hunter. The boss slammed his drink down the glass, nearly shattering. He dismissed his entourage with a cold glare. They vanished instantly, knowing better than to question his authority. A dark smirk stretched across the boss's face. A D-rank. The client nodded, confirming the target's pathetic status. He felt insulted. Mengji Wang, the absolute powerhouse leading Pandemonium, narrowed his eyes in pure disgust. Did they think Pandemonium was a joke? The client stammered that Shiwu wasn't your average weakling hunter. Ji Wang scoffed. D-rank is D-rank. Why was this fool wasting his time with such garbage nonsense? The client dropped a bombshell. Surely Ji Wang had heard about Han Che-rin's recent S-rank victory. Pouring a whiskey, Ji Wang admitted the news was blowing up all over the web. He knew the story well. It was viral. Then the kicker, Meng Shiwu, was right there in the heart of the raid. Whether it was that D-rank trash or not, the client didn't have the full story. Still, Meng Shiwu backed Han Sharon. When Ji Wang demanded details, the client spilled everything. The method didn't matter, only the result. After all, this was a high-stakes VIP hit. Ji Wang downed his whiskey and flatly declined, claiming the job was impossible. He blamed the interference on Li Minjung's sudden move, leaving the client totally shook. "The human butcher from the bureau," the client gasped. Ji Wang just shrugged, playing it cool. "She was digging up dirt and causing major headaches lately." His Pandemonium's boss actually worried. Afraid of a mere guard, Ji Wang just scoffed, calling the man a total moron. "If that woman catches you, you're toast." Plus, a new branch manager just landed in Korea. He was just appointed, and Ji Wang wasn't about to stir up any messy drama. The client froze, stunned that a new manager was already stationed in Korea. "A Scar-level manager," he whispered. "In Pandemonium, the elite leaders are ranked by lethality. There are 5 tiers: Tear, Fracture, Crack, Scar, and Bruise. Legend says Pandemonium's Shadow Leader actually took down Red Shadow, one of the 13 legendary heroes. Only those who survived a clash with Red Shadow escaping with mere scars earn that rank. So a Scar-level monster is actually operating in Korea right now." Ji Wang nodded, warning him to keep quiet before going back to his drink. Suddenly, the client offered to handle the bureau, catching even Ji Wang off guard. He vowed to help Pandemonium solidify its dark grip over all of Korea. Basically, he'd help the new manager seize total control. That was the ultimate pitch. It was the perfect chance for Ji Wang to gain favor. This wasn't just VIP. It was super VIP. Grinning, he asked for the terms. "Don't kill Shu Wu," the client requested. Ji Wang crushed his glass. "So, breaking his limbs is fine then." Later, Shu Wu's strength ticked up by 0.4%. His divine arts rose slightly too. Shu Wu realized that pushing his body while injured slowed his growth, but at least his stats were climbing. Suddenly, something thudded at his feet. It was a dazed rabbit. Shu Wu stared, wondering how on earth Fenrir caught a bunny, especially in the middle of a bustling concrete jungle like this. Days passed, and Shu Wu hoped Fenrir would chill out. But the very next morning, Fenrir dropped off a whole deer, then an eagle. Shu Wu was terrified to imagine what would come next. How was he even catching these? Would it be a bear? Later at the hospital, Shu Wu swung open his ward door and froze. The door slammed into something massive. When Shu Wu saw what it was, he screamed. Fenrir had actually dragged a grizzly bear inside, seeing Fenrir's proud, sparkling eyes. It was like he was saying, "Enjoy." Shu Wu knew he had to stop this madness now. A week later, Shu Wu finally made it home. So Ah was shocked to see him back. She worried about his health, but he just waved it off, claiming it was nothing serious. In reality, he'd be dead in that dungeon if Han Sharon hadn't saved his life. He quickly shifted focus, asking So Ah if she'd been keeping up with her meds. He hoped she wasn't skipping doses while he was away. So Ah just looked away. She denied it, but Shu Wu pressed her about those bitter herbal remedies. Just the mention of herbs made So Ah clutch her stomach, fighting back the nausea. Her stomach churned at the thought. Seeing her suffer, Shu Wu felt a pang of guilt. It was clear he needed to master his divine medical arts, and fast. Shu Wu suddenly had a question that piqued her interest. "Hey, do you like puppies?" Before she could even answer, a tiny puppy peeked through the door. "Wait, did you actually?" Ming Shu panicked, fumbling for excuses, but So-Ah was already obsessed with the cute puppy. As she reached out, Ming Shu's sharp warning stopped her cold, leaving her completely baffled. He warned of bites, but So-Ah laughed, mocking the beast's tiny, harmless little paws. She had no clue one snap from those jaws could literally trigger the end times. Asked for a name, Ming Shu whispered Fenrir, but the pup's death glare silenced him. Trapped by that gaze, he let So-Ah take charge of naming the creature herself. Ming Shu surrendered control, and So-Ah beamed. "How about we call you Chernish?" Ming Shu froze. Chernish. When she asked for his thoughts, he tried to object. But one look at the puppy's murderous eyes killed his sentence. Was she just clueless? "You like it, right?" she chirped, noticing the legendary monster actually wagging its tail. So-Ah was thrilled, but Ming Shu was spiraling. Had the great Fenrir actually accepted that? Or had this world-ender already learned how to play the good boy for survival? With no protests, So-Ah declared it official. The legendary beast was now Chernish. From now on, his name was Chernish. The pup's tail wagged as Shuo beamed, satisfied with the name Seo bestowed upon Fenrir. It was a vibe. Shuo burst into laughter as Chernish's playful tickles caught her off guard inside the SH Guild gym. Downstairs, Meng Shuo offered a quick apology for his tardiness. As they sat, Han Chaoran wasted no time getting to business. She insisted on finalizing the contract immediately. After deducting the deposit, the remaining balance totaled a staggering 9 billion won. Chaoran double-checked the figures for total accuracy. She then urged Shuo to check his bank account right then and there. The massive wire transfer had already been initiated. Shuo's heart raced, seeing a 9 followed by an endless string of zeros. Transfer confirmed. His balance now sat at a staggering 10,614,530,451 won. That's 10.6 billion won straight-up life-changing wealth. A family of 4 could live comfortably for nearly 3 centuries on that. Regarding the tuition fees, Chaoran had one condition: she wanted to see his legendary sword techniques in action first. Shuo nodded, inviting her to witness his skill before deciding. Truth be told, Meng Shuo was actually flying blind here. He had zero clue what a fair tuition rate looked like, nor did he know how much she was willing to pay. Letting Chaoran decide, the value felt like the smartest play. Stepping into the ring, Shuo grabbed a standard training blade. Sword in hand, Shuo revealed he'd be showcasing 3 distinct high-level techniques for her today. 3 techniques. Chaoran's eyes widened in anticipation. Shuo explained he had handpicked styles that would perfectly resonate with her. Narrowing it down to just one was an impossible task. That's exactly why he wanted her to see the full variety. He wanted Chaoran to pick the path she liked best. Initially, he considered mastering the entire trio just to show her, but the system costs were astronomical. Every new skill subscription caused the price of the next one to skyrocket. He'd only previewed their trailers before coming here, hoping the visuals were enough to guide his demonstration. Shuo wondered if he could pull it off perfectly. Taking his stance, he raised the training sword and prepared to strike. The blade shifted as he announced the first style, the divine sword that splits the heavens. With a single explosive step, he cleaved the air, unleashing a brilliant cerulean aura. Chaoran stood paralyzed by his sheer speed. His movements were a complete blur even to her. Shuo reset his stance, preparing to strike another heavy blow. He slowed down the tempo this time, but the Heaven Splitter lost none of its terrifying, majestic power. The crushing pressure of the blade pinned Chaoran to the floor. Even at a fraction of his speed, the weight was overwhelming. The aura alone was enough to suffocate her. Shuo pivoted, his energy shifting into something primal and ancient. Now he muttered, "Witness the dragon-slaying blade." In a flash, Shuo executed a dizzying, lethal flurry of strikes. The air screamed as a monstrous predatory aura began to take shape around his training sword. A phantom dragon roared, sending a chill of primal terror down Chaoran's spine as she struggled to track his movements. She desperately tried to decode his technique. Finally, Shuo transitioned into the mysterious Tai Chi sword style. The moment he flowed into the Tai Chi stance, Chaoran's jaw hit the floor in absolute disbelief. This wasn't just a technique, it felt like the birth of the cosmos. Shuo's sword seemed to pull in universal energy. Elemental forces, fire, water, and earth swirled around his blade in harmony. With one final stroke, the darkness was dispelled. Shuo lowered his blade, the demonstration concluded. "Those are the 3 paths I can teach you," he stated calmly. "Which one spoke to you?" he asked. Meanwhile, across from the SH Guild headquarters, trouble was brewing in the shadows. Meng Jiwang was pacing like a caged beast, fuming that Shuo hadn't emerged. A pandemonium lackey reported 0 activity outside. The boss snarled, wondering what could possibly be taking that idiot so long inside the guild. He speculated with a sneer if Shuo was providing special services. To Jiwang, the guy was just a brainless puppet. He wondered if Shuo's real talents were hidden in the bedroom. The lackey asked if they should keep waiting. Jiwang went silent, a twisted plan forming in his mind. He licked his lips, his eyes gleaming with pure malice. "Wait, doesn't Shuo have a little sister?" he asked. The lackey hesitated, warning him about the potential consequences. Targeting civilians was a dangerous game. If the inspection bureau caught wind, Li Minjung would hunt them down. Jiwang waved off the concerns with a smirk. He claimed their secret backers would ensure they remained completely untouchable. "This time we have the ultimate protection," he boasted. He figured if they messed with his sister enough, they wouldn't have to wait. A furious Meng Shuo would come charging straight into their trap on his own. Back in the gym, Chaoran was still frozen in a state of pure shock. Shuo tried to snap her back. Meng Shu called out again, finally jolting Han Se-rin from her dazed state. Startled, she blinked as Meng Shu pressed her to pick a favorite sword style. Se-rin froze her mind, racing to find an answer in the heavy silence. Seeing her hesitate, he handed her a practice blade to test every move herself. "Really?" she whispered, taking a deep breath as she dropped into the first stance. She struggled to mimic his fluid motions while Meng Shu watched her every move. Her form was a perfect mirror, yet something was missing. Se-rin gasped for air. Exhausted, she stared at her palms, wondering why the technique felt so hollow. While she pondered, Meng Shu gave a forced grin and pushed her to continue. He needed her to learn fast, or his paycheck was going to disappear. Later on the bus, Hercules dropped a truth bomb. Mortals couldn't match Meng Shu's pace. Normal humans lacked their power. Meng Shu whispered back, reminding him he'd managed fine. After all, with Hercules' help, he was already wielding the arts of the gods. Hercules countered that he only succeeded by tapping their essence. "What's the difference?" Hercules smirked, asking if he remembered begging to learn these divine combat secrets. Why did I refuse? Meng-shu recalled the hero, calling him way too lazy. Hercules waved him off, hinting at a deeper secret. Meng-shu fell into thought. He remembered the warning only those with god-tier power could master these styles. And then Hercules pressed. Meng-shu admitted his mental state was a total wreck. Hercules agreed, then paused for a moment before correcting his initial thought. He explained that divine arts required a spiritual foundation that humans simply didn't possess. Without the right essence, Seirin was trying to read a language she didn't know. Yet the fact she could even track his movements was a miracle for a human. So that's why I use moves without even subbing to their GodTube channels. Hercules admitted Meng-shu was an anomaly, recalling his claim of having zero potential. He'd claimed to have no traits, yet he still awakened. Meng-shu nodded, confirming. Why ask now? Hercules theorized that having no traits was actually Meng-shu's power. He explained that a simple GodTube sub wasn't enough to grant true divine power. In short, you can't just overwrite a person's soul with a new divine essence. A person's unique trait is permanent and can't be masked by another's power. Doing so would deny their existence. But Meng-shu, he was a blank slate. With zero pre-existing traits, he could soak up any god's power without issues. It was the perfect logic. Perhaps that's why GodTube chose him in the first place. Hercules smirked. Meng-shu realized he was likely the only one with this gift. When Hercules confirmed it, Meng-shu stood frozen as the weight hit him. This meant teaching Seirin was impossible, and his easy income was about to vanish. Suddenly, Hercules tossed a lifeline. Meng-shu could simply invent his own techniques. Original skills would actually work. Meanwhile, a pandemonium agent lurked outside Meng-shu's home. Is this the kid's place? The villain hissed, reaching for the cold door handle. With a violent jerk, he ripped the door open and slipped inside like a predator. Finding Sohee's bedroom, the villain glared at his innocent target with a twisted grin. His hand crept toward the sleeping girl. He figured since she was just bait, why not have a little fun before the real hunt began? Suddenly, a sharp creak echoed. He was certain the girl was home alone. Where was that noise coming from? He looked down at a growling dog. That caught him off guard. Meng-shu questioned if everything Hercules said would be useless if Seirin was his student. Hercules explained that while pure divine arts are beyond humans, there was a workaround to make it work. If Meng-shu shared his own personalized mastery, the power gap wouldn't matter. Meng-shu then pointed something out. He was already teaching Seirin GodTube techniques, and worried she wouldn't make any progress if he kept it up. Seirin would hit a wall. But Hercules insisted that for Meng-shu's chosen ones, the results would be different. It all started with Tai Chi master Zhang Sanfeng. His legendary martial arts were the key. These basics are the foundation of all combat, which even helped Hercules refine his own godly skills. By subscribing to that channel, Meng-shu could master Tai Chi and use it as a core foundation. It would be his base. Direct divine teaching is impossible, but he could adapt them. He could craft his own human versions. Once modified, they would no longer be forbidden divine techniques. They would be Meng-shu's original creations. He would essentially be a filter for god-tier power. By studying Tai Chi, he could bridge the gap to divine mastery. Hercules gave a firm nod. Meng-shu considered this. Creating a brand new style wouldn't be easy, but it solved his biggest headache. After weighing his options, he thanked Hercules. But the god wasn't looking for just a simple thank you. If he was truly grateful, Hercules wanted something else. He cleared his throat asking about that video idea. Meng-shu promised to spill the tea later. He needed to handle his current business first. This next video concept was way more complex. Hercules didn't mind the wait and waved him off. The bus doors hissed open. Heading home, Meng-shu realized that forging a new technique would be brutal. Mastering divine arts was already insane. Now he had to figure out a chi-based style for Han Shirin. He finally reached his front door, but his blood ran cold. The door handle had been ripped off. Pure rage boiled over. Someone had dared to break into the home where his sister was sleeping. He didn't hesitate for a second. Meng-shu charged inside, rushing straight for Soei's bedroom. He burst in and saw her still dreaming peacefully. A massive weight lifted off his chest. Soei was safe. Just then, a sharp bark echoed. Fenrir had already neutralized the threat. The beast wagged his tail, waiting for praise. Meng-shu glared at the intruder, wondering who he was. This fool had a death wish. Meng-shu thanked Chernish for guarding Soei and gave him a pat. The face was unfamiliar, but his aura gave him away. This wasn't a normal thug, he was awakened. Why target his home? Regardless, this guy had bad intentions. Ming-shu picked up Chernish. He thanked the pup again, then asked Fenrir to keep a close watch while he handled business. Chernish barked a loyal affirmation. Suddenly, Meng-shu's expression turned cold and deadly. It was time for an interrogation. Shortly after, the pandemonium rat who broke in finally woke up. He found himself bound to a chair in a dark, unknown room. He panicked, wondering where he was. Wide awake already, Meng-shu's voice cut through the dark. The pandemonium member gasped in shock. He froze, wondering how Meng-shu knew his name. But that slip of the tongue confirmed everything. Meng-shu had him cornered. He offered a simple choice, answer honestly, or things would get ugly. The criminal just sneered, calling Meng Shu a total moron. Then he flexed his massive muscles. The ropes snapped like twigs. He laughed, asking if Meng Shu really thought some string could hold him. Meng Shu simply placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. You definitely didn't come here for tea. The thug tried to stand, but Meng Shu crushed him down. A scream of agony filled the room, but the scream was cut short. Meng Shu's other hand clamped over his mouth like a vice. He unleashed a terrifying aura, drowning the man in pain. Meng Shu whispered a chilling order. If Soe woke up, he'd end him instantly. Then Meng Shu remembered he still needed answers. He delivered a brutal punch to the chest, then grabbed the man's collar, pulling him close. He wasn't the type to trust a snake who still had all his limbs attached. A sickening crunch echoed through the room. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, pandemonium stirred. The sentries froze in shock as a shadow emerged. Out of the darkness stepped Meng Shu. He tossed their broken comrade's body like trash. Then he turned his cold gaze toward pandemonium. "Where is Meng Ji-wang?" he demanded. The bald leader sneered, dismissing the question as total nonsense. A thug told him to scram and go home. Grabbing Shu's shoulder, he threatened a world of pain. He mocked Shu, asking if he even knew Meng Ji-wang's name, before ordering him to vanish. "Leave or die." Meng Shu's voice remained icy. "Where is?" Meng Ji-wang fury finally ignited. "Livid at being ignored," the thug barked. "You really have a death wish, don't you, kid?" Shu seized his collar, demanding answers. The thug snarled, ordering Shu to release him immediately. To his horror, the stranger's strength was absolute. Every effort to resist was nullified by Shu. Shu unleashed a devastating blow, flooring the thug. The rest of the gang watched in disbelief. "Do you know who we are?" they roared, charging the cocky brat, who dared to defy them. Shu's heel crushed the asphalt as he shifted. In a blur of motion, his fist rocketed forward. One opponent flew back. He palmed the second attacker's face, slamming him aside like mere garbage. Looming over the final enemy, Shu's piercing gaze demanded, "Where is Meng Ji-wang now?" At the Seoul Branch Bureau, Yung Soo-ae alerted the commander that pandemonium had finally mobilized. Stunned by their sudden move, Lee Min-jung pressed for intel. "Have we pinpointed their location yet?" "Not yet, but their tracks are clear. We will find them in no time," Soo-ae replied. Min-jung barked orders to mobilize Squad 4 and requested immediate reinforcements from every available guard. "I want everyone on the field, no exceptions." With a salute, Soo-ae bolted to execute orders. Before Min-jung could leave, a voice halted her. "Commander, apologies for the intrusion during your duty." The deputy delivered grim news. An emergency mission had arrived, and her presence was absolutely mandatory. "You are needed there, Commander." But Min-jung refused, stating she couldn't help with this task. "This is a direct order from the chief," he countered. Min-jung froze. "The chief? Since when?" He explained a rank C dungeon appeared in Sandun. Lee Min-jung was ordered to deploy immediately. "Is this really necessary?" she snapped, questioning why she specifically had to be the one to go. "Can't another squad handle it?" she challenged. The deputy sneered, recalling her recent reinforcement request. "Imagine if your request was rejected," he mused. "The chief won't turn a blind eye to defiance." He warned that her choice carried dire consequences, and he wouldn't be there to shield her. Min-jung fumed. The thought of this snake leading the inspection bureau in the future disgusted her. Teeth clenched, she growled, "I don't care if I'm fired. I'm doing things my way today." The deputy's shouts fell on deaf ears. She brushed him off, telling him to do whatever he wanted. Meanwhile, Meng Shu stood his ground against a massive wave of pandemonium's most dangerous members. They laughed at his audacity, ready to crush him. Among the mob, nearly 100 were awakened. This wouldn't be easy, but they had touched Soha. Now they would pay a bloody price. If he showed mercy, they'd strike again. He couldn't let them see even a flicker of weakness. To protect her, he had to destroy them all. These weren't men. They were mindless wild animals. Devoid of morality, they only understood instinct. He would instill a terror that reached their souls. He would imprint fear into their very bones. The mere mention of his name must terrify them. They would learn this lesson well. Suddenly, a crazed vandal broke ranks and charged at Meng Shu. He swung, wildly screaming at Shu's insolence. But before the thug blinked, Shu made his move. Like a lightning strike, Shu countered. Their fists collided, but Shu's overwhelming power sent him flying. The thug crashed back into the group. Pandemonium realized this was no ordinary human they were fighting. "Don't just charge in," they yelled. "Surround the monster. We have to attack him all at once." Against a single target, they usually utilized small squads. Groups of 3 to 5 were their specialty. Any more than that, and they would just hinder each other, ruining the flow of the battle. Fighting solo is usually the vibe, but when a whole squad syncs up to jump you, that's tactical warfare. Honestly, calling this a strategy is a total stretch, but these thugs are definitely trying to play soldier. Classic move for goons used to bullying humans instead of beasts. But as the legend Zhuge Liang taught, shattering their ranks is actually light work. It all starts with spotting the gates of life and death. Charging his internal gauge, Meng Shu suddenly blitzed forward. He shifted into high gear, bowling through the front line like they were nothing but standing pins. Every formation runs on a single logic, whether it's the 16-man heavenly collision, which leaks at the edges, or the 12-man earth axis, which is soft right in the middle. Meng Shu still hasn't fully cracked the code on Zhuge Liang's riddles, but his eyes see the truth. A tiny fracture appeared in the enemy's advance, illuminated by the tactical genius's divine insight. That opening is his gate of life. Diving straight through, Meng Shu dismantled their entire setup in a few savage strikes. The Pandemonium captains stood there, shook. Seeing their unbreakable wall crumble like paper was straight up glitching their brains. Real talk, the human body is full of off buttons, from the Dantian to the Ren, Meridians, and Yuan points, down to the rib cage. Flooding his strikes with raw energy, Meng Shu sniped every pressure point in sight. His chi traced paths of destruction everywhere he glanced. But past the first wave, the gate of death loomed everywhere. No exits, no safety. Breathing heavy, Meng Shu watched as the Pandemonium mob closed the circle. They were seething, cursing the rat who dared to blitz them. Now that they had him cornered, it was time for the payback. Look, being a top-tier fighter is cool, but facing a literal army, the math just doesn't add up. Even Hercules warned that sheer numbers turn any fight into a nightmare real fast. Small fries can still drown a giant. Usually rules don't apply to our boy, but even he was feeling the walls close in. When you're blinded by enemies on all sides, what's the play? Simple. You stop thinking and start smashing. Faced with zero options, Meng Shu went full beast mode, flattening anyone in reach. Panic started spreading like a virus. The thugs realized they weren't fighting a man anymore. This was a straight-up monster. Just as Hercules cleared the field of his foes, the big boss Meng Ji-1 finally showed his face, demanding to know why his men were failing. Usually the final boss waits until the end to spawn. Ji-1 looked around the carnage, confused and pissed. "Who's the punk trashing my squad?" he growled. It's classic villain behavior, waiting for everyone else to lose before stepping up. Meng Shu didn't wait for a monologue. He flickered like lightning, burying his fist deep into Ji-1's jaw. Total maximum output. Per Hercules' logic, if you see the head honcho, take him out immediately. One shot. Ji-1 went limp, ragdolling into the concrete wall. The crowd went dead silent. Their brains were melting. Seeing their supposedly invincible leader get one-tapped, absolute madness. Ji-1 spat out a mouthful of crimson, scraping himself off the wall. His lackeys exhaled. The boss was still breathing. He survived the monster's opener. To the naked eye, Shu didn't look like much. But that sneak attack nearly sent Ji-1 to the afterlife. Wiping the blood from his lip, the boss demanded to know Shu's beef. Shu's voice was ice cold. "Did you take So A?" The name rang a bell. Ji-1's eyes narrowed as he connected the dots. "So you're that Meng Shu kid." Shu didn't care for small talk. He just repeated the question, his aura getting heavier by the second. Silence was all the confirmation Ji-1 needed. Staring at the boy, it finally clicked. This was the face from the bounty site. But the intel said Meng Shu was just a trash-tier D rank. Clearly, the rumors were a lie. Losing his cool, Shu demanded the truth about So-I one last time. "Did you snatch her or not?" Ji-1 just smirked. "What if I did?" He realized Shu was a hidden gem, but he wasn't scared. Before he could finish the thought, Shu exploded forward. He was in Ji-1's face in a millisecond. But this time, the boss caught the fist, mocking his speed. Even with his senses cranked to the max, he barely reacted. Shu was definitely a threat, but he was still just a kid. Ji-1 could feel it. Shu had speed, but zero physical weight behind it. He guessed Shu was running on pure willpower hacks. Suddenly, Ji-1's frame began to grotesquely expand. His body surged with raw power, shredding his clothes. The Pandemonium leader was transforming. Meng Jiwang had ascended to a terrifying A+ rank physical peak, roaring in absolute dominance. Believing his overwhelming strength would crush Shu, he unleashed a blow that sent the boy reeling. Yet Shu stood his ground. He wiped a bruise with cold defiance, his eyes locking onto Jiwang. That last exchange rattled Jiwang. Somehow, even under that pressure, the brat had landed a counter-sting. A mere D-ranker shouldn't have such reflexes. Jiwang's lips curled into a smirk, mocking Shu's efforts. He urged Shu to wake up to reality, officially welcoming him into the twisted ranks of Pandemonium. When a captain dared to question the recruitment, Hunam silenced him with a single icy command. Jiwang finally admitted Shu possessed genuine potential. But then he asked, why waste such lethal talent? Why crawl among the mundane? To him, they were gods compared to the sheep of the ordinary world. Jiwang viewed regular humans as breathing trash, scoffing at the very idea of their justice. Why obey rules written by insects? Let the weak hide behind laws built for their own safety. Beings of their caliber were above such trivial restrictions. Jiwang questioned the point of playing the hero. Why bleed for those beneath them? Shouldn't the weak be sacrificed for the sake of the mighty? To be superhuman meant absolute freedom, the right to dominate anyone who couldn't stand in their way. They would build a world where might is right, a paradise free from the chains of law. A world where you just take what you want. No limits, no consequences, just pure power. Shu sighed, asking what kind of delusional garbage he was spewing after tuning out the boring speech. He'd only stayed quiet because Jiwang needed to vent. Are you finished with the fairy tales? Shu asked. Rage boiled in Jiwang's veins. He sneered, asking if Shu's pathetic attachment to his sister blinded him. To Jiwang, emotions were poison. He preached that anyone shackled by loyalty was destined to stay weak. Shu shut him down instantly. Having a heart didn't make him weak, it made him human, unlike Jiwang. He wasn't a mindless beast like Jiwang. The leader roared, regretting he ever offered Shu a chance. He'd been impressed by Shu's talent, but if the kid wanted to die for humanity, so be it. Don't regret this later, Jiwang growled. His body swelled further, snapping thick golden chains like thread. Raising a massive boulder-sized fist, Jiwang declared victory and lunged forward with every ounce of weight. He threw a punch meant to pulverize, but something unimaginable happened that left him breathless with shock. Instead of crushing, Shu Jiwang was thrown backward. Before he could even process the impact, Shu appeared. Shu moved like a ghost, closing the distance instantly. Jiwang roared desperately, swinging to catch the blur. He launched a panicked counter, but Shu didn't flinch, swatting the massive attack aside like nothing. Shu countered with a strike so precise it neutralized Jiwang's momentum. The leader's mind raced in confusion. How could a bug overpower his A-rank strength? Seizing the opening, Shu blurred forward once more. A brutal fist buried itself into Jiwang's gut, sending a shockwave through his organs that stunned him. In that haze of agony, the truth dawned on him. Shu wasn't just stronger, he was god tier. This power far exceeded their initial clash. One final strike sent Jiwang tumbling like a rag doll. Broken and beaten, Jiwang wheezed, trembling as he reached out with his final bit of energy. He pointed a shaky finger at Shu, snarling that Pandemonium would never let this humiliation slide. Shu simply challenged them to try. If they wanted a war, he was ready to provide one. He vowed to dismantle Pandemonium personally. Jiwang froze his entire body, shivering from genuine fear. You think you can take us all alone? Jiwang stuttered. In response, Shu's true aura exploded. He told the Pandemonium thugs to watch closely. He was about to show them real power. As Shu took a single step, the air grew heavy. The members fell paralyzed by pure terror. The crushing pressure was unlike anything they'd felt. Shu channeled his core energy for the end. Shu raised his leg with terrifying grace. Jiwang's heart nearly stopped at the sheer magnitude of threat. This wasn't a bluff. He was looking at a power that transcended the limits of humanity itself. Shu exhaled sharply, unleashing Haegyul's divine martial art form 1, the legendary descending dragon strike. Arriving at the carnage, Li Minjung demanded a sitrep. A stunned bureau worker stammered that words couldn't describe it. He urged the captain to witness the madness with her own eyes instead, because explaining it was impossible. By then, Pandemonium's elite lay broken. Minjung questioned if they'd all been knocked cold by the attacker. The agent clarified some remained awake. He then sought urgent orders on how to handle the surviving criminals. Minjung commanded an immediate ID sweep, ordering checks the moment any of the survivors regained consciousness. She demanded a deep dive into their records for homicide, violent battery, or severe physical trauma offenses. Any history of second-degree psychological damage, or worse, was a death sentence. Criminals were to be executed instantly. The employee nodded in grim understanding. Minjung then barked orders for Jung Su-ah to assist the others. Scanning the wreckage, Minjung froze as she spotted a high-profile target lying motionless at her feet. It was Myung-ji Wan, a Pandemonium powerhouse. Taking him down would have been a suicide mission even for her squad. Victory wasn't guaranteed even with her intervention. Li Minjung couldn't fathom what kind of monster did this. Meanwhile, Meng Shu had vanished from the carnage, frantically treating his own wounds with specialized acupuncture needles. The delicate needlework paid off, boosting his mastery of the divine medical art by 3.3%. Exhaling a weary breath, Meng Shu groaned as a wave of agonizing exhaustion washed over his entire body. He wondered when he'd fully recover. Unleashing the descending dragon strike on a mere human felt like overkill. Though he'd held back, he'd still channeled far more raw power than during the Fenrir dungeon raid. Had he gone all out, no one would have survived. Thankfully, his control over his divine arts was sharpening. After that intense clash, his proficiency with his divine martial arts surged by another 1.6%. He finally smashed through the 10% ceiling, reaching 11.03%, while his attributes soared. Despite the gains, he was far from his peak. That red-haired Pandemonium freak had been a true menace. The guy was worlds apart from a weakling like Gong Do-chil. This was a direct declaration of war. The global criminal syndicate would surely strike back, and he knew it was only a matter of time. But he wouldn't back down. They dared to touch Su-ah. This hit was a hired job to take him out. They used Su-ah as bait for a deadly trap. If he hadn't left Chernish at home to guard her, Meng Shu stretched his aching limbs, knowing Chernish was likely standing guard over Su-ah with lethal focus. He'd have to reward his loyal companion later. Elsewhere, the big boss reeled from a shocking tactical report. How could a titan like Myung-ji-won be crushed? The secretary whispered a single name, Meng Shu. The boss scoffed. And D-rank awakened Ju-won couldn't believe a low-level hunter had slaughtered his top leader. Ju-won demanded to know if a prestigious pandemonium executive really fell to some bottom-tier trash. Trembling under the boss's gaze, the secretary stuttered that the intel was still being fully verified. The boss's aura flared. He hissed, asking if the subordinate dared to bring him unconfirmed rumors. The secretary hit the floor, gasping that the inspection bureau had already swarmed and seized the location. Ju-won demanded more details on the bureau. The secretary struggled to his feet, desperate to explain. Bureau guards had locked down the area. Among their survivors, the few remaining were completely broken mentally. Ju-won narrowed his eyes, asking what proof linked this absolute carnage to a nobody like Meng Shu. Right before the massacre, Myung-ji-won had been hunting Meng Shu. That's when everything went south. Ju-won asked if they'd captured the target, but the secretary shook his head in defeat. A D-rank taking down an executive, even if he was the target, it felt like a freak accident. It made more sense if the inspection bureau had orchestrated the ambush themselves to wipe them out. If a monster like Lee Min-jung, the human butcher, was involved, the outcome was actually believable. However, the traumatized survivors only reacted to one name. Hearing Meng Shu triggered pure, unadulterated terror. Ju-won's interest was piqued. He demanded to know exactly how his men had responded. The secretary described them shaking uncontrollably, paralyzed by a level of shock that defied logic. Ju-won realized this man had branded their souls with fear. Tapping the table, he weighed the threat. All signs pointed to Siwoo. This guy wasn't just some low-tier D-ranker. He was a monster in disguise. While masking his rank, he wiped out Seoul's criminal underbelly and crushed Pandemonium solo. He played the ghost perfectly. Now he's officially the top target on their organization's hit list. Oh, Ju-won smirked with wicked excitement. Was that arrogant brat actually trying to send them a warning? His secretary suggested tracking Moon Siwoo, but Ju-won had a different plan. He issued a high-priority order. Every Pandemonium member was to watch Siwoo closely. Normally, they'd just erase him from existence instantly. But with the inspection bureau sniffing around, things were getting messy. Direct action was too risky now. Ju-won didn't care about Lee Min-jung. He wondered how deep the bureau's involvement really went. Word was that director Park Sung-jae himself was joining the fray. Meanwhile, at the bureau headquarters, the boss slammed the desk papers flying everywhere. He screamed at Lee Min-jung, questioning her sanity. Did she think her skills made her untouchable? If so, why didn't she just take his job? Kim Ji-pil, the hot-headed branch director of the Hunter Inspection Bureau, was absolutely fuming. She defied his direct orders and left a dozen bodies behind. Lee Min-jung stood her ground. She calmly explained that every target was a confirmed high-risk criminal who needed to be stopped. Kim Ji-pil barked back, outraged by her defiance. Those criminals were already neutralized and defenseless. He demanded to know if she understood. This wasn't self-defense, this was straight-up, cold-blooded murder. She'd crossed a forbidden line. Despite her apology, the director demanded her immediate resignation. Her squad was livid. The captain dared them to follow her out. Ignoring the director, a guard defended her actions. He insisted the captain was just doing her duty. Kim Ji-pil threatened to fire everyone on site. He claimed he was only showing mercy because of Captain Lee. He told them to zip it. He advised them to stop the chatter and let her leave. To save her team, Lee agreed to quit. Her subordinates wouldn't back down. She waved them off, but a guard shouted that this was total BS. He accused the boss of hiding his dirty secret, taking massive bribes from the underworld. Kim Ji-pil snapped. He slammed the table and roared, demanding to know who said that. Then he met Lee's icy gaze. She coldly confirmed her resignation. Her only condition: leave her team out of this political mess. Director Kim sank back, cleared his throat, and muttered his agreement. But a new voice cut through. Someone stepped into the office, declaring that Captain Lee wasn't going anywhere. The room went dead silent. Everyone froze. The big boss had arrived. Kim Ji-pil's face turned pale at the sight. He stammered, asking why the high director was here. Park Sung-jae, the legend himself, stepped forward. He heard Pandemonium was making moves and decided to handle things personally. The tension was suffocating. He confronted the branch director, questioning if he even understood the threat Pandemonium posed to the city. Even worse, he'd heard rumors of the director letting criminals walk free. Kim Ji-pil started trembling. He frantically claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Park Sung-jae promised they'd uncover the truth soon. Footsteps echoed as his elite investigators swarmed the office. Misunderstanding or not, an audit was starting. Park turned his attention to the captain, asking if she was indeed the famous Lee Min-jung. She confirmed her identity. Park Sung-jae requested a private moment to speak with her immediately. Soon the two were alone. Park Sung-jae prepared to ask her the most important question. Standing before her was the director of the entire inspection bureau. He was a force of nature. This man had crushed the madness of Korea's deadliest syndicates. He was the ultimate deterrent against evil. He was the son of Park Sung-hyun, a legendary hero. He asked about the details of the arrest. He wanted to know if anything unacceptable happened. Lee Min-jung hesitated, then prepared to come clean. But Park began his own story. Once awakened ones were humanity's only hope against the demon invasion. Now that peace had returned, their powers were just tools for profit. It was a cold reality. His father called it the natural order. He fought for decades to build this stable, peaceful world. Yet groups like Pandemonium thrived by abusing that power, a sin his father would never forgive. He swore off meddling. If he ruled the world, he'd just become another monster. His father claimed absolute justice was impossible, but the son disagreed. Even if perfection is a lie, he believes we must still chase the light. Boundaries matter, sure, but you can't purge the filth without getting your hands bloody. He questioned Lee Min-jun about any casualties during the raid. A heavy silence followed. Min-jun confirmed the kills. Park Sung-jae demanded to know who pulled the trigger. Min-jun checked every camera. No ghost, no shadow, nothing entered or left that scene. The few survivors were shells of men, their minds completely shattered. Sung-jae pressed for details. Min-jun's voice trembled as he explained. They were paralyzed by pure terror, mindlessly chanting one single name. Sung-jae assumed it was some S-rank titan. Min-jun's answer chilled him to the bone. Not an S-rank, just a lowly D-rank. Meanwhile, Maing-su played with Chernish. So-ah blinked awake, surprised to see her brother up before the sun. He kept the mangled door handle hidden. Luckily, his sister didn't notice a thing. His divine metallurgy increased by 0.1%. A small but vital gain. He realized his god-tier crafting wasn't just for forging weapons of war, but he couldn't stop worrying. What if another threat came for them? Chernish was a beast, but even fate could be cruel. Then, inspiration struck him. Why not build his own fortress? He had Hephaestus's divine power after all. A home designed to withstand dungeon breaks and keep intruders out forever. Location was the only hurdle. Seoul was mandatory for So-ah's medical care. Then he remembered his balance 10 billion won sat waiting in his account. A wild thought crossed his mind. Why not just buy this entire building? He said his goodbyes. So-ah waved, and Chernish barked as he stepped out. The moment he hit the street, a stranger blocked his path with a question. The inspector general stood there. That face. Ma Wang-su had definitely seen it before. It clicked. This was the legendary Park Sung-jae standing right in front of him. Cold sweat dripped. Why was the bureau's big boss hunting for him? There was only one answer, the bloody underworld purge from last night. The authorities weren't about to let a massacre like that slide. He should have been stealthier. Now his mind was racing in a blind panic. Pandemonium targeted So-ah, but how did Sung-jae track him down so fast? He forced his heart to slow down. Speculation would only get him caught. Keeping his poker face, he confirmed his identity. I am Maing-su, he stated. Sung-jae's gaze turned razor-sharp. Are you the ghost who leveled the underworld yesterday? You left a trail of broken bodies, yet you're acting perfectly normal, Sung-jae noted. The game was up. Park Sung-jae had seen right through his disguise. The power gap was insane. One wrong move and Sung-jae would end him. He needed to vanish, but So-ah was right behind those walls. He couldn't leave her. Even with a guardian beast, she'd be a target. He was outclassed, but he wasn't backing down. Then, Sung-jae took a step. The big man gripped his shoulder and asked, how about becoming a guard? Maing-su braced for death, but the question left him completely stunned. Wait, what? Sung-jae simply repeated his offer. Maing-su's mind went completely blank. The invitation hung in the air. Maing-su struggled to process the insanity. A typical guard's monthly paycheck probably mirrored the modest wages of a government clerk. In short, it was peanuts. However, elite guard salaries could skyrocket into the hundreds of millions, or even several billion won. Yet that was a drop in the bucket compared to his insane subscription costs. 10 billion won alone wouldn't cut it. Why did Park Sung-jae even bother with that offer if he planned to bail? And why show up in person after getting rejected? If this was about yesterday's chaos, he should have at least scoped out the underworld first. Min-su felt a massive headache coming on. He shook his head, wondering why he was overthinking. He needed to stay focused. Moments later, the landlady checked in. She asked what brought him by. Min-su explained it concerned the house he shared with his sister. He straight up asked if she was selling. Caught off guard, she wondered why he was suddenly curious. Before he could explain, she told him to relax because she'd never sell it out from under them. Not while he and So-ah were still there. She mentioned the housing market was a total wreck anyway. Properties were sitting stagnant. With interest rates hitting the ceiling, mortgages were literally crushing people's souls. Realizing she was rambling, she reminded him again that she had zero plans to sell. As long as they stayed, they were safe. Min-su let out an awkward, nervous laugh. He clarified that wasn't his point. He actually wanted to know if she'd sell the place to him. If she was open to it, of course. The owner froze, asking if his current bank account could actually handle a flex like that. Min-su reminded her he was an awakened now and business was booming. Since his finances were solid, he wanted to secure the house. The landlady clapped in excitement. She congratulated him on finally leveling up his life. But then she asked why they wouldn't just move. After all, their current spot was ancient and pretty much falling apart at the seams. It wasn't exactly luxury living. Minsu admitted he'd developed a deep sentimental bond with the place. Seeing his resolve, she offered it for 150 million won. Minsu blinked, asking why so cheap. She replied that she knew his struggle, and this was the least she could do for the siblings. Besides, the market was so dead she wouldn't get much more anyway, so he should just take the deal. Minsu refused to lowball her. Without her kindness, he and So-ah would have been out on the streets. Instead, he made a staggering counteroffer of 1 billion won. The air went still. The owner's jaw hit the floor in pure shock. 1 billion won was life-changing money. Later, Minsu grew frustrated. The red tape was endless. Ownership transfers and permits would take months of bureaucratic nightmare. He'd have to sprint across all of Seoul just for paperwork. Minsu groaned at the mountain of chores. It had been ages since his last YouTube upload. Because of his radio silence, his comment section was a war zone of complaints. Plus, he still had to prep for sword training. His session with Che-rin was looming. With shaking hands, Minsu pulled up his phone and tapped away. 2 billion won vanished instantly for his Zhang Sanfeng subscription. His balance was now 7.5 billion. After paying rent, he was down to 6.5 billion. He still owed 3.1 billion monthly. Despite his double S rank, Tai Chi mastery money stress was killing him. He decided to handle things in person. At the Sage Group Guild Hall, a radiant Han Che-rin entered, asking if he'd been waiting. Minsu wondered how she managed to get more stunning every single day. He quickly forced himself to focus. Che-rin asked about the tuition fee. Swallowing his nerves, Minsu proposed a schedule, twice a week for a monthly rate of. He winced and looked away, blurted out 10 billion won. Che-rin agreed instantly, leaving Minsu completely stunned. He couldn't believe how easy that was. Why did she say yes so fast? Was 10 billion won just pocket change to her? He briefly wondered if he should have aimed higher. Then Che-rin noted that 10 billion won was exactly the amount she planned to offer. Her grandfather would veto anything higher for a recurring monthly expense. Since it wasn't a one-time fee, Minsu managed to choke out that the price was perfect. It made sense since 120 billion a year was huge even for Sage Group. Then Minsu made a request. Shuren asked what he needed, clearly uneasy. Undeterred, Meng-shu dropped a bombshell he was planning to build his own house from scratch. But the red tape was a total nightmare, way more complicated than he'd imagined. Shuren raised an eyebrow and asked if he really intended to DIY the whole thing. Shu nodded instantly. Shuren went silent for a few heartbeats, processing the madness, before promising to pull some strings. Shu let out a nervous laugh and thanked her, though he secretly worried she was being way too chill. Maybe she was moving too fast. Fast forward past hours of intense grinding, and Shu finally forged a brand new blade. But the system notification was a total slap in the face. It was a disposable item, not a real sword. Shu was fuming. Yet in that moment, his divine metallurgy stat actually ticked up by 1.1%. Shu sighed. It actually made sense for the system to call it trash, since the materials were total garbage compared to the high-tier loot he'd used for his legendary glove. When Seo Palguan saw the blade, his jaw hit the floor. He could tell the kid's skills were getting absolutely cracked. He asked if Shu had been training like a demon in secret. Honestly, even the master himself couldn't believe that such a crazy feat was even possible. He'd already dumped all the boring administrative paperwork onto the Chaeyun family, leaving only Kim So-yeon to deal with. Suddenly, she barged into the smithy and shouted a greeting to Seo Palguan. He looked up, asking what on earth brought her to his neck of the woods today. He noted it had been ages since their last meeting. So Yeon played it cool, claiming she was just passing by. But then, she turned to Shu, noting how long it had been since they caught up and asking how life was treating him. With a heavy heart, Shu admitted it had been a total roller coaster. So Yeon leaned in intrigued, but Shu quickly backtracked. His recent trauma flashed before his eyes, yet he just shook it off, claiming everything was totally fine. So Yeon nodded, sensing the vibe. She told him point blank, if he ever needed a hand, she had his back. Seeing his chance, Shu leaned in close, catching her off guard by asking for a massive favor right then and there. So Yeon froze, stunned by his sudden intensity. Shu quickly realized his mistake and clarified it wasn't life or death. He just needed her help sourcing some specific building materials. So Yeon blinked, completely baffled by the weird request. She agreed it was no problem, but she couldn't help asking why he suddenly needed construction supplies. Shu casually replied that he was building a house. So Yeon processed that for a second, her brain totally buffering, before begging him to stop right there. She couldn't believe he was actually planning to build it with his own hands. Shu gave an awkward nod, confirming her fears. So Yeon admitted he was a god-tier blacksmith, but architecture was a whole different beast. Shu just smirked and handed her a crumpled list of requirements. He claimed these were his supplies. As So-yeon scanned the list, her eyes widened. These weren't bricks and mortar at all. The realization hit her like a truck. She gasped, asking if he was seriously planning to build a home. Out of literal monster parts, Shu gave a confident nod and dropped the ultimate master plan. He was going to forge the entire building into a piece of equipment. Meanwhile, Park Sung-jae asked Captain Park for an update. Captain Park Tae, man of the investigation bureau, reported that Ju-won was staying quiet, not making a single move. He was likely playing it safe, terrified of the CEO catching wind. Sung-jae leaned back, questioning if that was the whole story. He cracked open a drink, taking a slow sip. If that was true, then the guy's luck had officially run out. Sung-jae caught the captain staring and joked if he wanted a drink too. He realized then that Taeman was a fan of the same brand. But then he got serious, asking why he'd let the target slip away. Sung-jae clarified if he meant Shu. He mentioned that Captain Lee from the Seoul branch swore that despite his dorky vibes, Shu was the most compassionate hunter she'd ever encountered. Then he asked Captain Park how long he'd been grinding in the bureau trenches. The captain replied it had been 7 long years. Sung-jae nodded, respecting the hustle before dropping some heavy lore about his own past. He'd awakened at just 11 years old, enduring 8 brutal years of training under his father's iron fist. His old man eventually kicked him out to learn the world's harsh truths. He spent 5 years wandering as a nomad, before joining the bureau, where he'd now spent 20 years. In that time, he'd hunted down endless scum, and stacked a human body count that probably put his monster kill count to shame. Maybe that's why he finds people way more terrifying than monsters. After seeing so much darkness, he realized that being a nice guy gets you nowhere. Now he trusts nobody, viewing the world with nothing but cold cynicism. To him, everyone's a perp now, but a few inner circle allies still remain. He threw a question at Captain Park. After a heavy silence, Park Tae-hyun admitted he was totally stumped on that one. Sung-jae noted that feeding a family is a burden only the strongest can truly carry. It's pure self-sacrifice, the hallmark of every great parent, and Shiu is fighting for his dying sister. Standing up, Sung-jae declared that survival isn't enough. He has to rescue her soul. Captain Park countered that Shiu's fake rank is a massive red flag that can't be ignored, especially since he literally deleted the city's entire underworld single-handedly in one night. Sung-jae reminded him they hadn't actually confirmed the lie yet, keeping his options open. Tae-hyun was confused, so the inspector reminded him that while the world calls them killers, they must never forget their blades only exist to erase the absolute scum of society. Tossing his trash, Sung-jae admitted he craves the peaceful world his father once guarded. His next stop, the SH Group headquarters. He wasn't planning on playing nice. The news hit Tae-hyun like a truck, as Sung-jae vanished into the night. Remember, only target criminals. Meanwhile, Shiu was busy planning to turn his crib into a fortress. So Palguan was totally skeptical about Shiu's DIY construction skills for a project this big. Shiu was confident though, asking So-yeon if she could source all the legendary loot. She scanned the list, noting that cash alone wouldn't secure these high-tier materials. We're talking dragon shells, golem cores, and death knight plates straight-up endgame gear. These drop from B to A rank elites, and trust me, they aren't your average mobs. Since hunters hoard this gear for themselves, the market is basically a ghost town for buyers. Supply is non-existent because nobody wants to sell their power. Shiu took it all in. But So-yeon dropped a hint: everything has a price if you're willing to overpay. The price tag for a full set. A cool 3 times the market value. 3 billion won. Shiu felt like he'd been struck by lightning after hearing that total. Luckily, his payout from tutoring Han Sharon meant his bank account was actually stacked. Even with the bread, So-yeon warned that finding sellers would be a complete nightmare. Shiu refused to cut corners. This house had to be an impenetrable shield for So-ae. He told her to grab whatever she could find, while he handled the rest himself. So-yeon promised to hustle despite the stingy hunter market being at an all-time low. Then it clicked: why buy the mats, when he could just farm the dungeon himself? Small problem, he's a D-rank bottom tier, and these monsters are B-rank beasts. No permit means no entry, so it was finally time for a massive rank up. You can either grind for fame, or jump straight to a Second Awakening reassessment. Reevaluations were rare back in the day, but the Second Awakening changed the whole game. This phenomenon lets a hunter's power explode a second time, shattering their previous limits. It can unlock god-tier traits or push existing ones to a legendary level. Science can't explain why it happens, but the power boost is undeniably real. Shiu pulled up his system interface to check his current progress toward the next level. Insight was at 41.9%, while Super Strength hit 21.48%. Divine Medicine sat at 8.7%, with Metallurgy at 18.03%. Heracles Martial Arts hit 11.03%, and Wisdom reached 4.11 Mastery. No more wasting time, it was back to the heat of the forge for him. Over at the Han residence, Mina joked that pigs must be flying since Sharon finally visited. Sharon played it cool, admitting it had been a hot minute since their last meetup. Despite the sass, Mina was actually impressed with Sharon's recent wins and praised her. Sharon played it cool, claiming she was simply doing her duty to keep the company from sinking. But Mina knew the truth. The company's survival was built entirely on the director's relentless hustle. Sharon hadn't changed one bit. Mina finally sighed, asking how long she planned to keep up this formal director act. A heavy silence filled the room before Sharon coldly replied that today, she was here strictly for business. No family ties. Mina forced a smile, remembering when Che-rin was just a sweet, innocent little girl. After her brother's passing, the poor child was left alone in a den of vipers, where every relative was a rival. Constant surveillance and cold control had been her only reality since her parents died. It was no wonder that her heart had turned to stone. Without her father there to shield her, survival was her only option. Back then, Mina was powerless to help. But now, the tables had finally turned. Mina took a slow sip of coffee and cut to the chase. Sharon's request: she wanted to build a house. But she needed the legendary S-Heck brand to do it. The request left Mina completely stunned. Was it a luxury villa? A secret getaway? Sharon shook her head. It was nothing that simple. She just wanted a home. Mina's heart sank. Was her current living situation really that miserable? She couldn't just stand by. Mina immediately promised to pull some strings with the head of Shea Construction. If they bypassed the middleman and started tonight, they could finish the whole project in record time. But Sharon dropped a bombshell. Someone else would handle the labor. She only needed the company's prestigious name. Mina nearly choked on her drink in pure shock. Meanwhile, over at the Hunter Management Bureau, Mengshu stood in the waiting area for his rank reevaluation. A guy walked past him, radiating pure arrogance. Rank F felt like a total insult, but it was his reality. Usually people only requested reviews out of pure desperation. They couldn't swallow the bitter pill of being weak. Mengshu had been there, drowning in that same denial. When the dungeon resonance first awakened him, he'd prayed for a rank A miracle to change his life. He even hoped for a rank S trait. But reality was cruel. He had 0 traits, just a regular guy. He was the bottom of the barrel. But as Mengshu remembered the past, a smirk crossed. The clerk signaled the next hunter forward. Reevaluation began with a deep tissue scan of their awakened essence. The official directed Mengshu to the scanning platform. The moment his feet touched the markers, the system hummed to life. Stay perfectly still, they warned. But Mengshu's mind was racing with the secret he held. He possessed 6 god-tier traits. Once revealed, this wasn't just a promotion, it would shatter the world's power balance. This massive shift was exactly why he'd hesitated to step back into the spotlight. More fame meant a target on his back. Still, Mengshu realized the time for hiding was over. But as the data processed, the staff froze in sheer disbelief. How? How is this even possible? They stammered. Expectations for the world's first SSS rank were sky high. Yet looking at the display, even Mengshu was stunned. 0 traits. The screen was a total blank. An awakened being with no special abilities. That's physically impossible. There's no way, Mengshu protested, convinced the hardware must have malfunctioned during the process. The official sighed. 1 scan per person, kid. Now clear out. He was being dismissed. Mengshu wouldn't budge. This result was insane. He demanded a redo, certain something had gone wrong. Despair hit him like a truck. Why was he still stuck at the bottom? This made 0 sense. Then it hit him. Could a human-made machine even detect the power of the gods? S rank is the ceiling for mortals, but he was tagged as rank F. Maybe his logic was flawed. If the sensors failed to read him, it should have shown an error, not a flat 0. Was Hercules actually telling the truth? Was his trait literally the concept of nothingness? The scan didn't change because his essence was an empty vessel, a unique, unchanging void of power. It was a wild theory, but it felt right. Or maybe there was another reason entirely. Could it be his lack of mastery? He hadn't fully synced with these divine powers, yet still just a novice? He was still adapting to this celestial burden. With a heavy sigh, he searched for answers. How could he weaponize these god-tier traits? Hercules claimed he was the only one who could truly master them. Since he started with nothing, he became the perfect vessel for the strength of the heavens. Then there was that mysterious blonde stranger. Did that guy see right through his hidden potential? The man had left things cryptic, apologizing for dragging Mengshu into the upcoming chaos. Replaying those words, Mengshu realized the situation was far more complex. He stood up, shaking off the confusion. No use overthinking it now. The reevaluation was a bust, so he needed a new plan. If the system wouldn't promote him, he'd climb the ranks manually by dominating high-level dungeons. Grinding from rank F to rank A would be a marathon. Plus, his YouTube channel was totally dying. The frustration sparked a brilliant idea. He'd create the ultimate viral content out of this mess. Elsewhere, Director Han couldn't believe his eyes. The CEO of the Inspection Bureau had actually shown up unannounced. Park Sung-jae chuckled, playing off his sudden arrival with a smooth, disarming charm. Director Han Kwang-gook of SH Group rolled out the red carpet for the most powerful man in law enforcement. When the head of the Inspection Bureau visits, you don't just stand there, you bow. Han Kwang-guk gestured toward a seat, sweating, as he wondered why Park was there. Park noted that SH Group was the backbone of the nation's economy. He just wanted to meet the mastermind. Han basked in the flattery, calling Park the ultimate shield of Korea's national security. But Park's smile didn't reach his eyes. Power alone doesn't keep a man at the top. Survival requires pleasing the right people, mastering the art of the deal, and ruthless networking. Sometimes it even requires stabbing your own blood in the back. Park claimed he had no interest in family drama, but his tone suggested otherwise. He didn't care if Han Chae-rin was exiled, but Meng Shu, that was a different story. The name Meng Shu hung in the air like a death sentence. Han's heart nearly stopped. Han's face turned ghostly pale. Did the Inspector General already know about their secret conspiracy? He knew everything, especially the plot to destroy Han Chae-rin. Pandemonium's targeting Shi-woo now. Kwang-guk gripped his chair. Stay away from Pandemonium. Arrogant yet different with Sung-jae. Hero Sun Hyun's own son. Sun Hyun is too dangerous. Why protect a nobody? Secrets kept, family warned. Sung-jae left, business concluded. Daku refused her paycheck. Don't fire me. She'd work for free. Stop, what's wrong, Daku? Quitting, no way, boss. He'd ghosted his channel. Why no salary, Daku? You're a great boss. I'm staying. Salary's fixed. Let's plan a video. Daku's eyes lit up. Payday smartphone out now. Buy your siblings treats. Memories of dad's chicken. Just call me Daku. Then I'll call you. Shiwoo, fine. Let's be friends. Daku blushed, nodding shyly. What's the video idea? Next, the bureau shouted. The admin froze instantly. It was featureless, Shiwoo. He wanted rank up info. Scanning his D-rank ID. 0 to D-rank hero. Impressive, for a nobody. Talent always beats effort. 200 dungeons for C-rank. 1 year of rating. Then the final test. Any questions? None. What's my current total? 16, cleared. 184 remaining. Raid today, yes please. Any preference? Somewhere close. There's one right here. A high-tier D-rank dungeon sat just 5 minutes away, yet the administrator felt a chilling sense of dread. This zone was leagues above his current level, leaving her terrified for the young hunter's survival. Shiwoo insisted it was perfect and accepted the challenge, forcing the clerk to provide the directions. After hearing it was just 2 blocks past the junction, Shiwoo vanished, leaving the clerk praying for his safety. Moments later, she regained her composure and called the next adventurer to the service desk. She started her routine greeting, only to freeze in shock. It was him. Shiwoo had already returned to the counter. Stunned, she questioned his lightning-fast return, realizing with a jolt that barely 10 minutes had passed since he left. It made sense. She was certain that high-tier dungeon would be an impossible death trap for a rookie. The panicked clerk began to apologize, but Shiwoo just scoffed, complaining about how annoying the round-trip commute was. He hated wasting time, and demanded she assign him a massive stack of dungeon permits immediately. Park Do-gu leaned in, curious about the revolutionary content strategy Shiwoo had teased earlier that day. Shiwoo dropped a bombshell: he planned to reach A rank within 30 days. Do-gu gasped. Wait, A rank already? The video title was set 0 to hero A rank in 1 month. Shiwoo then turned back to the stunned clerk. Slamming a mana crystal down, he demanded a bulk pass for 50 dungeons, eager to maintain his insane clearing momentum. Over at the Korea Management Bureau, a panicked staffer sprinted toward the manager's office like his life depended on it. What is it? The manager barked. Did an S-rank dungeon just collapse? The breathless employee struggled to find his voice. He gasped out that a cleaner had appeared. Shaken, the manager demanded to know the total number of cleared gates. When the aide reported 150 successful clears, the manager's jaw nearly hit the floor in disbelief. That is pure insanity, he roared. Didn't the record say this guy was a bottom-tier awakener with 0 special traits? After his evaluation just 2 days ago, the employee confirmed his rank remained unchanged, despite a formal reassessment. Fearing the worst, they considered alerting the inspection bureau, suspecting this man might be an illegal and dangerous awakened one. Suddenly, another staffer burst in yelling that the legendary dungeon cleaner had just filed for a C-rank promotion. The manager stood frozen. A C-rank jump required 200 clears. Was this man actually close to hitting that impossible milestone? Just 60 seconds ago, the count was at 150. This speed was absolutely terrifying. Get that report to the bureau. Now the manager ordered only for the aide to scream that they had already. The bureau was already on the line. Over at the inspection HQ, Yoon Suwa was briefing their top investigator. She informed Captain Lee that management needed urgent backup. A mysterious hunter had rocketed from bottom D rank to C rank in record time. In just 3 days, he climbed the ladder, sparking a mandatory investigation. Who is this anomaly? Captain Lee asked. Suwa revealed the name Mong Shi-woo. The mention of that name sent a shockwave through the captain. Min Jung suspected a second awakening, but such a massive power spike usually required a mandatory visit to the testing crystals. Instead, he was bypassing the tests and ranking up solely through pure achievement. a move that dodged official reassessment entirely. Only one dark possibility remained: Shi Wu was using forbidden black magic, but was he truly desperate enough for that? Turning to Arin, Minjung asked if she had ever encountered an awakened soul corrupted by the dark arts. Arin nodded gravely, explaining that black magic was a twisted beast compared to the logical flow of standard arcane arts. Normal magic channels mana, bridging the gap between our physical world and the complex rules of higher dimensions. By manipulating the fundamental laws of three-dimensional and four-dimensional space, a mage can rewrite the fabric of reality itself. This spatial hacking allows for spells like conjuring roaring infernos or striking lightning bolts out of thin, empty air. At its core, every spell is just a calculated effort to reorganize the very blueprints of our existence. Growing impatient with the lecture, Minjung demanded the bottom line. Arin sighed and simplified the dark truth for her. Black magic is a parasite that feasts on the raw, negative vibrations of extreme human emotion and deep sorrow. It devours terror, obsession, and rage, growing more potent as the user descends into their most twisted internal desires. However, as they fuel this power, their sanity withers away until they eventually lose their very humanity to the darkness. These power-hungry fools eventually transform into bloodthirsty monsters. How do we spot these walking nightmares? The captain questioned. Arin promised that the signs are unmistakable. You don't need to be a mage to feel the wrongness oozing off them. Their very existence feels unnatural. Deep in thought, Minjung considered the implications. Word reached her that the director personally scouted Meng Shiwu for a high-stakes guard position. If the big boss himself made that offer, Li Mingju couldn't help but smirk. She summoned Zhang Su-A to warn the office that Shi Wu was off limits. Suddenly, Li Mingju's eyes began to glow, with fascination for this mysterious man. Deep in the forge, the system pinged a notification for Shi Wu. He had crafted literal trash, yet his divine metallurgy skill somehow increased by 0.1%. It was shocking that the system dared call it junk. This was light years beyond any normal equipment. Shi Wu figured the quality tanked because he was forging with basic construction scrap, which was far inferior to his usual premium materials. Even so, the mechanics were finally clicking. Shi Wu smirked awkwardly, reflecting on his chaotic past. His specialty used to be environmental destruction, but now, his biggest failure was just creating trash. A realization struck him. He still had a narrow window before his hunter rank would skyrocket. This gave him enough time to grind his skills and build a legendary top-tier house. One massive question lingered: had So-yeon actually managed to track down those rare requested items? Right on cue, a voice echoed from the entrance. So-yeon's timing was terrifyingly perfect. Shi Wu marveled at how she always appeared at the right moment. She greeted him casually. Her face fell. With a frustrated frown, she admitted the search was proving to be a nightmare. She had even begged her brother for assistance, and they'd found some leads, but it was brutal. "You have a brother?" Shi Wu asked, genuinely stunned. Seeing his shock, she realized she hadn't mentioned her younger sibling, Kim Yi-jun, who just turned 20. As an awakened hunter himself, he was the one out there doing the heavy lifting for materials. Shi Wu felt a wave of guilt. He'd requested items that were dangerously rare and high tier. They only dropped from B-rank monsters, deadly beasts that even seasoned pros struggled to locate. When he asked about the brother's level, she beamed, revealing he was a solid B-rank hunter. Even more insane, his trait was a prestigious A-rank. Shi Wu was left speechless by the news. She laughed nervously, explaining he was a reckless rookie who was constantly getting himself patched up. But with his super regeneration, he could literally regrow missing limbs like a monstrous troll. She told Shi Wu not to sweat it. Her brother was already deep in the search. He would definitely secure a decent batch of loot. Just then, So Palguan entered the smithy. He wasn't surprised to see her. So Yeon greeted him warmly, asking about the seminar gear. The Global Metallurgy seminar was a big deal. He invited her to check his latest progress. Meanwhile, Shi Wu's mind was racing. The scraps Kim Yi-jun brought in wouldn't cut it, meaning he'd have to dive into the dungeons himself to rank up. He announced his departure, waving goodbye just as Park Do-gu finally finished her latest project. This marathon had been brutal. The boss dumped 184 videos over 22 hours. At least her debt was paid. She marveled at her boss's freakish growth speed. Most take a year to climb from D to C rank, but he did it in 3 days. Her boss was built different. Suddenly, a notification chimed. Shi Wu had sent over 300 files. They were for the upcoming video, leaving Do-gu completely floored and wondering how this was possible. He'd already rocketed from C rank to B rank. Was she really expected to edit this entire mountain? Then another ping caught her eye. Her bank account had just been credited with 10 million won. Do-gu's jaw hit the floor at the sight of those zeros. Her phone buzzed one last time. Shi Wu had sent a massive bonus for the upcoming grind. She checked the screen again. It was 10 million won, clear as day. Her heart nearly stopped. A second later, her phone vibrated with a message notification. Do-gu's breath hitched. Shi Wu confirmed the payment. It was a fat bonus for editing the next legendary video. Park Da-gu promised a fat bonus if views exploded. She was grinding hard for her younger siblings. From the bottom-tier D ranks to the elite A ranks, she was ready to hustle through everything. Speedrun Guide Part 1 just dropped. In a flash, it already racked up 840,000 views. World Conquer exploded to 54,245 subs. Fans were totally losing their minds. Comments flooded in, screaming fake or bug. Nobody could process the insane gameplay they just witnessed. Even Meng Shiwu had to admit it. Da-gu was a literal god at video editing. 840,000 views in one day. Viral wasn't even the word. But solo filming was hell. His trail of destruction was real. He had already smashed more cameras than he could actually count. Since Da-gu was just a regular human, he could not drag her into the crossfire to film. Shiwu needed an awakened cameraman. Meanwhile, a terrified Kim So-yeon was desperately calling her brother. Still, no answer from Yi-jun. Anxiety gnawed at her. Had something gone horribly wrong in the shadows? A sudden sound of footsteps made her jump. It was Shiwu appearing right as she hit her limit. She choked out that Yi-jun had vanished. Shiwu realized she was talking about her missing younger brother. He headed for the Dragon Turtle dungeon yesterday, and since then, total radio silence. Not one text. When she reached out to the admin office, they gave her a standard cold response. The dungeon was already cleared, they said. So why was Yi-jun still missing? Something felt very wrong. Shiwu tried to stay cool, suggesting her brother was fine since the dungeon boss was already dead. He flashed a grin, joking that the kid was probably out partying with friends to celebrate. After all, being 20 is the prime age for wild nights. But So-yeon was not buying it. He's not that type of person, she whispered. Shiwu reminded her of Yi-jun's insane super regeneration trait. No news is good news, right? He urged her to report it to the inspection bureau anyway. Relief flickered in her eyes as she thanked Shiwu and prepared to rush out the door. She sprinted toward the inspection bureau, her thumbs still frantically tapping the redial button on her phone. Shiwu felt a knot in his stomach too. Suddenly the scene shifts. Kim Yi-jun finally wakes. Heavy chains rattled. He was trapped in a dark room, his senses slowly returning to him. He tried to wrench himself free, but his body would not obey. Panic started to set in. He remembered gathering the squad for the Dragon Turtle run, all to help his sister's future. They went for drinks after the raid, and then, nothing. A complete terrifying hole in his memory. Was this a kidnapping? Suddenly a chilling voice echoed through the room, mocking his futile struggle. Those chains are custom-made, kid. Even an S-rank hunter could not break those links of pure despair. What do you want? Yi-jun hissed. The stranger stepped into the light, a twisted grin appearing. Ever heard of illegal awakened? The words hit Yi-jun like a physical blow, making his head throb. The lab-coated freak cackled, screaming that all those failed experiments were actually his sick masterpieces. He ranted about how they were weaklings who died before appreciating his life-changing gifts. Some died from blood loss, others when he got creative with their limbs. Such fragile, screaming things. He gripped Yi-jun's jaw with terrifying strength, his eyes wide with a manic, obsessive light. But you're different, he hissed. Right, Pandemonium's Du Yobchul, you're a true masterpiece. He leaned in, obsessed with Yi-jun's potential, before promising to come back for more later. Back at training, Han Chae-rin clashed blades with Shiwu, her movements sharpening with every passing second. Shiwu lectured her on Tai Chi, explaining the cosmic dance between the opposing forces of yin and yang. They seem like enemies, but they are actually two halves of one whole shaping the entire universe. Shiwu originally wanted to teach his own style, but realized it was way too complex for beginners. Instead, he decided to build her foundation from the ground up, using ancient principles of balance. He molded Tai Chi to fit Chae-rin's wild nature, refining her raw strikes into lethal, elegant swordsmanship. Soon, she would not just be copying Tai Chi, she would be forging a unique path of her own. This path could evolve into a legendary S-rank fencing style, unique to her. Munchu explained that she must embody the dual essence of yin and yang. With one swift motion, he disarmed Sharon, proving she could soon nullify any foe. Flushing with embarrassment, Sharon admitted the concept was way too deep. Shu cheered her on, noting he'd be lost without his insight skill too. Even so, he believed Sharon was finally carving out her own path. Shu gave a reassuring smile, promising to teach her until it finally clicked. Sharon thanked him deeply before Shu decided to wrap up the day's training. He prepared to head out, but Sharon cut him off with a sudden vow. She promised to have everything figured out before the month ended. Shu was floored, but Sharon reminded him of the request he'd made earlier. He racked his brain until it hit him the building permit. She confirmed with a nod, making Shu realize his small favor was massive. To Sharon, this was light work, but Shu knew the truth. Was the SH group really above the law? 1 month was the perfect window. He'd have the materials ready by then. Meanwhile, Suab burst into the office. She had urgent news regarding Kim Yi-jun's mysterious disappearance. Captain Lee looked up as Suah handed over a grim file. It was the list of hunters who entered the dungeon with Yi-jun. Min-jun instantly clocked them as illegal awakened hunters. Every single one was a criminal suspect hunting Yi-jun for a reason. But why him Swa dropped the truth bomb before the captain could finish? Yi-jun possessed super regeneration, the ability to regrow lost limbs instantly. Min-jun's blood ran cold. Sua's expression turned to one of pure disgust. Yi-jun was likely a lab rat for human experiments. Elsewhere, Shu couldn't reach him. Was he grinding levels Shu still needed to pitch that video idea to Hercules? He'd been so slammed lately that he'd totally ghosted his partner. He'd even ignored messages about their training sessions. Talk about a fail. Hopefully Hercules wasn't salty, because this new video idea was pure fire. Even if Hercules called now, Shu had to clear these B-rank ore golems first. Shu focused feeling Zhang Sanfeng's Tai Chi power flow through his soul. Martial arts balance three pillars: the mind, the Qi, and the body. Wisdom rules the mind, strength fuels the body, but Tai Chi governs Qi. Closing his eyes, Shu thrust his palm into the approaching aura golem. The beast shattered. Qi is the life force that flows through all creation. Usually this power requires a grueling purification process to master. But Tai Chi allows the body to harness Qi without any purification at all. Shu unleashed a sudden punch and the world seemed to scream. A massive energy beam vaporized everything. Dust blinded him for a heartbeat. When his vision cleared, the field was littered with monster corpses. Shu stood frozen, unable to believe a single strike caused such carnage. Tai Chi mastery hit 1.7%, while super strength reached 22.28. Wisdom ticked up to 4.31%. Shu's excitement was reaching its peak. Hercules said Tai Chi was helpful, but helpful was a massive understatement. Only one hurdle remained: mastering the perfect Tai Chi combination. His hands were trembling so violently that triggering his awakened abilities was a total lost cause. Mastering Tai Chi usually requires superhuman stats, so he was definitely hitting a lucky streak here. Shu couldn't help but grin, realizing Hua Tuo's legendary medical arts were a massive game changer. Legend says, mastering these divine arts grants a god-tier physique, like a caterpillar, evolving into a butterfly. Even with just a fragment of this power, he could finally begin his intense Tai Chi training. He originally subbed to Hua Tuo's channel to save Soa, but the perks were reaching insane levels. The progress felt amazing as his divine medicine mastery surged by 1.1%, hitting 30.97. Shu was hyped to see a skill finally break the 30% ceiling, a massive milestone. With this buff, he could finally fix Soa's health so she could live her best life at college. Shifting gears, Shu turned around to inspect his gear, only to confirm his fears. The camera was completely trashed, meaning he desperately needed to recruit a dedicated cameraman immediately. Feeling the loss, he wondered if his divine metallurgy could forge a literal indestructible recording rig. After clearing 15 B-rank dungeons today, he still needed 500 more to hit that A-rank status. The grind was slowing down because he had to scavenge resources in these mid-tier B-rank zones. Still, he was determined to crush that goal and rank up within a single month. He thanked Midnight for the freedom and even splurged on some high-quality meat for the little guy. Suddenly he realized he just dropped 700,000 won on a snack that is a crazy expensive puppy. Between food and subscriptions, he was burning 60 million, one a month just to keep the lights on. But for Midnight, money didn't matter until the front door swung open and reality hit. Soa welcomed him back, while Midnight barked a greeting, but the atmosphere felt a bit different. Soa confirmed she was fine, but dropped a bombshell. Shu actually had a visitor waiting for him. Shu was stunned because nobody should be dropping by this late at night without a heads up. He peeked around the corner and was floored to see Li Mingjong sitting right there. Locking back into professional mode, he tossed Midnight his meat and took a seat across from her. Li Mingjong watched in pure horror as that tiny demonic pup inhaled the meat like a literal black hole. The sight left her completely shook, making the whole situation look almost like a dark comedy. He used to think the human butcher was a cold machine, but she actually looked totally baffled. Shu asked what brought her here, snapping the high-ranking hunter back into the present moment. He wondered why she looked so rattled before she cleared her throat and apologized for the late-night intrusion. She revealed she was there to drop some intel regarding the missing Kim Yi-jun. Soa instantly felt the tension spike in the room as the vibe turned incredibly heavy. Seeing the look on her face, Shu knew the news was bad, and suggested taking the talk outside. After hearing the captain's report, Shu's heart sank. Was Yi-jun really taken for human experimentation? Li Mingjong nodded, explaining that his unique awakening made him a prime target for underground labs. Even legal tests had left his body a scarred wreck back in the day despite his powers. Illegal labs would be a nightmare, risking a total mental collapse regardless of his insane regeneration. Time was running out, but Shu questioned why the captain came specifically to him for help. She mentioned Pandemonium, a criminal syndicate using high-tech gear to vanish from the face of the earth. Their magical cloaking tech could scrub every trace of their existence from any surveillance system. The gear was so advanced it could even ghost S-rank hunters, keeping the syndicate hidden for years. That is exactly why the Bureau was stuck in the mud, trying to track these guys down. However, a mysterious powerhouse recently went on a rampage and absolutely leveled Pandemonium's entire operation. In these cases, there is a golden hour, a ticking clock, where survival is still on the table. Once that window slams shut, the chances of finding a kidnapping victim alive drop to zero. But families never stop believing, holding on to hope that their loved ones will eventually walk through the door. Casting aside her dignity as an elite agent, Li Minjung bowed low, desperately pleading for Meng Shuwu's help. Shuwu was stunned. It was hard to believe she'd throw away her pride for a man she barely knew. His sharp intuition caught every flicker of her internal struggle, the heavy shame clashing with her ironclad spirit. This wasn't just a guard's failure. It was a raw human plea. Finally, Shuwu broke the heavy silence. He tasked her with guarding So-yun's side. Moments later, he hit the pavement with his loyal hound, Midnight. "I'm counting on you, pal," he whispered, met by an affirming bark. Following Minjung's intel, they moved out. They arrived at the Dragon Turtle Dungeon, the very site where Yi Jun was last seen 3 days ago. After clearing the raid, the group had hit a local bar, but that's where the trail went cold. The dungeon was the logical starting point, even if the lingering scent was now little more than a whisper. But Shuwu knew better. Midnight didn't just track simple smells like some common stray dog. That's how he'd found him at the hospital, by sniffing out the very fabric of residual mana and energy. These mystical waves would be far more potent here at the source than in some crowded, smoky bar. Suddenly, Midnight's ears perked up. He'd locked onto the frequency and signaled the direction of their prey. "Lead the way," Shuwu commanded. Meanwhile, in a gore-stained chamber, Yijun's agonizing screams echoed through the dark. "You're a masterpiece," Duyup Chul sneered briefly, lifting his whirring chainsaw from the boy's mangled shoulder. Chul's praise was pure madness. Shattered and ghostly pale, Yijun wondered how much more torture he could endure. Would this nightmare ever cease? He was drowning in agony, his will pushed far beyond its absolute limit. Death felt like a sweet escape, a way to finally silence the pain. But Chul saw that fading light. "Don't you dare quit on me yet," the psycho hissed, commanding his victim to stay anchored to this hell. Because if Yijun expired, his precious sister was next on the operating table. The threat hit like lightning. Rage ignited in his dying eyes. So-yun was everything. Clawing back from the brink, his resolve hardened again. "Touch her and I'll kill you," he wheezed. Chul just grinned. If the brother failed, the sister was next. They shared the same blood after all. She likely inherited that same miraculous ability to regenerate. "She's normal. Leave her alone," Yijun begged. Chul only erupted into a chilling, twisted fit of laughter. "Let's check the preliminary test results, shall we?" Chul teased. Tears blurred Yijun's vision. He had to survive. He couldn't let this monster lay a finger on her. Then the chainsaw roared back to life, tearing flesh. Time became a blurred haze of screams and blood. He was fading fast, but death wasn't an option. He had to be her shield, but his body was failing. Then boom, a massive blast rocked the facility. Debris rained down as a silhouette emerged from the smoke. "Hang in there, your sister is waiting." As the dust cleared, Shu Wu's blood ran cold. The scene was more gruesome than any nightmare. Even with high-tier regeneration, these wounds shouldn't be this deep. The damage was simply catastrophic. He healed faster than a mountain troll, yet even that divine gift had been pushed past its breaking point. It wasn't just his physical form failing. His very sanity was dangling by a single fraying thread. Just as Shu Wu feared the worst, a raspy broken whisper cut through. "So-yun, is she safe?" Pure shock hit Shu Wu. The kid's will was unbreakable. He immediately drew his specialized needles to work. If the soul was still intact, there was still hope. "Just a little longer, kid. Don't let go." Forcing his eyes open for one last effort, Yijun croaked out a single question. "Is my sister okay?" That spark of consciousness was everything, but the relief was shattered as Chul came charging back in. "Who the hell are you? How did you find my sanctuary?" The madman shrieked with infantile rage. He stomped like a brat, clawing at his scalp until it bled. "This is my world. Only mine." As he maniacally tore at his skin, sickening white flakes fell. Shu Wu's lip curled in pure revulsion. The sight was beyond stomach-churning. But then Shu Wu's eyes drifted to the grisly trophies around the room. These weren't just Yijun's limbs. Discarded parts of various shapes and sizes lay rotting in the shadows. This wasn't just a lab, it was a slaughterhouse. Could a human truly be capable of such depravity? Cold fury hardened Shu Wu's gaze. "What kind of monster are you?" he demanded as Chul screamed. "Just who are you?" A sudden chilling calm washed over him. After a heavy silence, Do-Yop Chul finally spoke. He realized the man before him was no ordinary human. "Is it true?" he pressed, voice trembling. "Is it really true?" Obsessing over the stranger's anomaly, Do-Yop Chul's form began to warp a sight that left even Moon-Su baffled. "Moon-Su, run! Get out of here now!" Kim Lee-jun screamed. Do-Yop Chul grinned, sensing an extraordinary power hidden within. "Do you get it now?" Do-Yop Chul hissed, certain that his twisted intuition was spot on. The mutated monstrosity spread its arms wide, demanding Moon-Su unleash every ounce of his hidden strength. He hungered to see Moon Su's true form. After all, crossbreeding C+ was a pinnacle tier trait. Originally designed for agriculture, it allowed different plant species to fuse into a single hybrid organism. But Do-Yop-Chul loathed such a weak ability. Driven by a warped obsession for true power, he crossed a line that should never be touched, experimenting with the stolen traits of other awakened. He didn't stop there, fusing monster abilities into his own flesh through horrific self-experimentation. This nightmare was the result. Now, he demanded to know Moonsu's secret as Kim Lee-jun begged for a retreat. It was too late. Vile pulsing tentacles lashed out, striking at Moonsu before he could even blink. "You're disgusting," Moonsu muttered with ice-cold calm. Then with a casual flick of his wrist, he pulverized the oncoming mass of flesh. Kim Lee-jun watched in total shock, his mind unable to process the feat. The strike didn't just stop the attack, it obliterated a massive chunk of Do-Yop-Chul's mutated frame. His right arm and half his skull vanished. But then, the gore scattered across the floor began to crawl back. His body knitted itself back together. Moonsu watched the regeneration, realizing this wasn't just simple healing. It was something far more sinister. With his head reformed, Do-Yop-Chul spat out, "Just what are you?" Moonsu had godlike strength but felt human. To the monster, this was an insult to his own evolution. "I've ascended beyond humanity," he roared. "Filthy weaklings like you shouldn't even exist in my shadow." Believing himself a god, he wound up a massive, mountain-shattering punch and launched it straight at Moonsu. Move Lee-jun screamed, but Do-Yop-Chul's roar drowned him out. Too late for regrets. Die. The monster's colossal fist slammed into the ground, a devastating impact that seemed to leave nothing but dust behind. Lee-jun squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the end, only to be tossed aside by a violent shockwave of air. Looking up, he gasped. His savior hadn't dodged, he had caught the monster's fist barehanded. Do-Yop-Chul froze in disbelief. How could a mere human overpower him? He had the genes of an ogre. "This is impossible," he screamed, his ego shattering. Moonsu didn't argue. With an effortless swipe, he carved another chunk out of the monster's frame. The scream died in the beast's throat. Reeling from the pain, he whimpered, How are you doing this?" Before he could blink, Moonsu vanished and reappeared, closing in for a lethal strike on his core. Panicking, the beast shrieked, "What are you doing?" But Moonsu wasn't there for conversation. Moonsu unleashed a devastating Tai Chi strike, shredding Do-Yop-Chul into ribbons. Lee-jun stood paralyzed. How could one man possess such overwhelming godlike power? But he realized the truth. The real monster wasn't the mutant, it was Moonsu. Moonsu methodically incinerated the remains to prevent any more regeneration. "No, this can't be." Chul wheezed. A mangled face formed from the gore, staring up at Moonsu. "You're just an ordinary guy. Why are you so strong?" he hissed, convinced Moonsu had been born with this divine gift. He loathed those born with everything, the chosen ones who never had to struggle for power. "I'll rip you apart," he snarled. "You gifted bastards are all the same, looking down on us. You take everything for granted," Chul screamed. Moonsu paused, a realization dawning on him. "Was all this horror just to feel powerful?" Moonsu asked. Chul laughed bitterly. "You understand nothing. Do you have any idea how it feels to be helpless?" Tears of pure resentment welled in his eyes. "You don't know the hell of being weak. Unnatural, like you could never comprehend our misery. To you, we're just insignificant bugs. Pitiful lives that don't even matter. Natural-born geniuses with god-tier skills never had to lift a single finger for their power. Because of that, they are frauds." His aura surged, warping into a nightmare of twisted visages. Do-Yop-Chul spat that these elites were just lucky, yet they had the nerve to call others lazy. He loathed them all, and vowed to slaughter every last one. Mungshu admitted he once shared that bitterness. Mungshu questioned Hercules about his mindset during his legendary 12 labors. Since those trials defined him as a hero, was he hyped? Hercules' answer was chilling. He just wanted it to end. Mungshu froze, hoping the legend was just trolling him again. Hercules confessed that pure insanity had gripped him, driving him to slay his own blood. His existence became a living hell fueled by crushing regret. He felt unworthy of even drawing breath. Before he could end it, Theseus intervened, arguing that death would not fix his past sins. Instead of taking the easy way out, he chose the trials not for glory, but for redemption. He embraced the suffering to pay his debt. He danced with death more times than he could count. The pain was endless, and every single morning he felt like he would finally hit his breaking point. He wanted to quit. Then Hercules asked if Mungshu had actually believed the hype before. Mungshu had viewed him as a flawless god, who breezed through every challenge without breaking a sweat. Hercules noted that while victory matters, it is not the ultimate metric of a person's worth. The real value lies in the grind, the blood and sweat spilled to reach the top. Touching his lion-skin trophy, Hercules scoffed at the rumors of his effortless success. People think he won just because he is a powerhouse born for greatness. Unmasking himself, Hercules dropped a truth bomb. Greatness is not a birthright. It is forged in hellish trials. Ascension is simpler than it looks, even though everyone is fighting their own uphill battle. For some, the deck is stacked so high that winning seems like a pipe dream. But true victory is not about the odds. It all comes down to a single core truth. It has to be you. No matter how cringe or wild your reason, it belongs to you. Hercules urged him to remember the million excuses for why you might fail do not mean a thing. Only one reason counts, the drive that pushes you forward. With a smirk, Hercules stood tall. True power is not about your starting stats. It is about standing your ground right here, right now. Meng Shu told Do Yapcho to stop obsessing over the final score. The guy was just coping. Do Yapcho shrieked, morphing into a gruesome cyclone of gore. As the beast feasted on carnage, Meng Shu centered his spirit with zen-like focus. He fused his Tai Chi mastery with Hercules' raw divine might in perfect sync. The horror lashed out with blood-soaked strikes, but his chi barrier held firm like iron. Meng Shu wound up channeling the second form of his god-tier martial arts. He unleashed a heaven-shattering punch that bleached the entire world in a blinding flash. Staring at the whiteout, Kim Lee-jun's brain short-circuited at the sheer scale of power. The blowback hit Meng Shu like a freight train, surging with agonizing bone-snapping pain. Stacking Tai Chi with dual divine buffs was taking a massive toll on his body. He did not want to go this hard, but that villain's trash talk finally pushed him over the edge. Staring at his shaking, mangled hand, Meng Shu could barely process the damage. He was shocked he was still awake. Usually an attack like that would have knocked him cold. Li Jun stammered, grabbing Meng Shu's focus. Meng Shu checked if he could still stand. After a dazed moment, Li Jun confirmed he was surprisingly back on his feet. His injuries had vanished. He felt brand new as he tried to take a step. The heavy chains rattled, proving to be the only thing holding him back now. Li Jun sighed, noting that even S-rank hunters could not shatter these cursed bindings. Shu Wu gripped the heavy chains. As they rattled, Li Jun gasped, asking what he was planning. Before he could finish, Shu Wu shattered the iron restraints. "I'm good to go now," he smirked. Li Jun blinked in total shock. Then his gaze dropped to the shackles that once bound him, which had completely vanished. Li Jun let out a dry laugh. "Who even are you?" he asked. Honestly, Shu Wu had been low-key waiting for that exact question for a very long time. "Just a friend of your sister's," Shu Wu shrugged. Li Jun's jaw dropped at the revelation. "Wait, you mean her boyfriend?" he pressed. Shu Wu just shook his head. "Nah, just a friend." Li Jun scrutinized him, wondering why he'd cap. Then panic set in. "Is my sister safe? Was she hurt?" Shu Wu's heavy, "She's not okay," sent a terrifying chill down Li Jun's spine. "She's been worried sick," Shu Wu clarified. "But hey, you can ask her yourself soon enough." Shu Wu extended a shaky hand. He looked fine, but he was actually running on total fumes. Without a healing factor, he was spent. Li Jun stood frozen, muttering under his breath in disbelief. Standing tall, Li Jun bowed deeply. "Thank you for saving my life." Shu Wu just smiled. "Go home soon," Shu Wu urged. Meanwhile, Juan returned to Do Yupchul's secret laboratory. But only smoking ruins remained. Juan growled, demanding to know where the hell Yupchul was. "He's likely dead, sir. Not even a speck left." Juan's eyes flared with cold, murderous fury. "Erased entirely. What about the research data?" Juan barked. The assistant looked down, trembling nervously. They'd scavenged what they could, but the core data was gone, completely unrecoverable, and lost forever. Their master plan for human weapons and monster hybrids was crumbling before their very eyes today. Years of Pandemonium's twisted experiments vanished in a single day. All that hard work, gone instantly. No sword marks anywhere. If it wasn't young Jay, then who caused this absolute carnage here? "Sir, the Bureau's guards are closing in," the secretary warned. "We need to bounce right now." Juan snarled a final order. "Find whoever did this. I don't care what it takes." Back at Shu Wu's place, he asked, "Wait, how much does Soa actually know about me?" "She's hip to everything, the hunter life, the YouTube channel, all of it," Mingjung revealed calmly. She kept the details light though. As a guard, Mingjung had to be extremely careful. She assured Soa that Shu Wu wasn't in trouble, she wasn't hunting him for anything illegal. "Your sister figured you just had your reasons for keeping her in the dark," she added. Shu Wu had only stayed silent to protect Soa's fragile health from unnecessary and dangerous stress. But she knew. She'd always been his silent anchor, supporting him from the shadows all along. He thought he was the sole protector, but Soa was actually holding him up too. "She's a wise one," Mingjung noted. Shu Wu chuckled. "Yeah, she really is the best." "You're a great brother," Mingjung added softly. "Way better than mine was anyway." "You have a brother, Captain," she nodded slowly. "In my heart, he's forever 14 years old. He'd never age another day." Shu Wu fell silent, feeling the heavy weight of her words. Yop Chul had a crossbreed trait, Mingjung explained. He could fuse literally anything together. He wasn't just mixing awakened traits, he was splicing in straight-up monster DNA into humans. "Is that even possible?" Shu Wu asked. Hercules said traits were tied to one's unique soul. You can't just rewrite a soul. Theoretically, yes, she countered. But practically, it's a total nightmare. No human could keep their sanity or identity after a horrific procedure like that. Pandemonium wanted an army of these freaks. The potential body count was honestly unimaginable. If they hadn't been stopped, thousands would have suffered. Professionalism aside, she felt truly relieved. Mingjung bowed low. Personally, thank you. Meanwhile, Pandemonium's twisted vision triggered a massive investigation. Their illegal army plot sparked a nationwide bureau crackdown and a total search for survivors. The truth was too gruesome for the public, so the media kept the incident completely hush-hush. Kim Ye-jun returned safely, closing the case for good, while Myung-soo went on a rampage, obliterating a mountain of monsters. As his divine traits leveled up, Myung-soo couldn't help but smirk at his phone, feeling that satisfying power creep. It looked like his previous combat skills had carried over perfectly into this fight, without losing an ounce of lethality. But one thing had Myung-soo's soul hurting: the sheer number of expensive cameras he had traced while clearing these dungeons. If this kept up, his equipment repair bill would totally eclipse his YouTube earnings, forcing a heavy sigh from our hero. He desperately wished for a personal cameraman as he poked through the shattered remains of his latest camera rig. Tears practically welled up when he saw the memory card was still intact. At least the footage wasn't a total loss. While looting the monster corpses, he wondered why snagging a reservation for a dungeon like this was such a nightmare. This was his first attempt, but he had finally scored the legendary dragon turtle shell required for his construction project. The material was insane, almost identical to high-grade dragon skin in both its texture and incredible durability. Walking toward the exit, he realized gathering materials might take a minute, but he would probably be an A-rank hunter then. The moment he stepped into the light, he was immediately swarmed with congratulations for his successful dungeon exit. But Myung-soo froze. Kim Ye-jun was standing right there, waiting for him with a serious look on his face. "How did you find me, and how are you already back on your feet?" Myung-soo asked, completely blindsided by his presence. Ye-jun's answer about getting the info from the management office only left Myung-soo more confused than he was before. Apparently, they did not give him a straight answer, just a list showing that a mysterious dungeon cleaner was active nearby. The bureau basically told him the place was already vacuumed clean and handed over a log of every cleared dungeon. A cold sweat hit Myung-soo as he asked if Ye-jun had actually visited every single one of those dungeons personally. Looking embarrassed, Ye-jun admitted he had nearly collapsed from pure exhaustion while hunting Myung-soo down across the city. Myung-soo was honestly at a loss for words. This guy was on a whole different level of crazy dedication. "Why did you not just call me Myung-soo?" asked, only for Ye-jun to remind him they never actually swapped numbers. When Myung-soo asked why he did not just hit up his sister, he realized the dude was low-key losing it. Ye-jun acted like that was a genius revelation, but Myung-soo just wanted to know why he was actually searching for him. Snapping back to reality, Ye-jun explained that his sister told him Myung-soo was out here farming rare monster loot. He came to pay back the debt Myung-soo saved his life, so helping with the grind was the least he could do. Myung-soo insisted he did not need a carry, and wondered why this B-rank hunter was being so suspiciously friendly. He pointed out that Ye-jun was a talented B-rank, and he did not feel right bossing around someone that high tier. But when Ye-jun mentioned he did not want a single cent of the profits, Myung-soo's eyes practically turned into dollar signs. He had to double-check. Was this guy really offering to do all the heavy lifting for absolutely zero pay? Ye-jun mentioned how much Myung-soo helped his sister, but Myung-soo countered that So-yeon had done her fair share too. Telling him not to sweat it, Myung-soo started to walk away, until Ye-jun shouted for him to wait a second. He proposed a trial raid, casually mentioning he had a reserved slot for the legendary dragon turtles. Myung-soo whipped around, drooling, since the competition for dragon turtle dungeons is straight-up murderous. With his fighting spirit ignited, Ye-jun suggested they head out immediately, so he could prove his worth in battle. He promised to showcase his skills while letting Myung-soo pocket every single bit of the loot they discovered. Myung-soo crunched the numbers. He had zero to lose, since this B rank was giving up his entire share. Then he looked down at the shattered camera lens in his hand, and a brilliant light bulb finally went off. Ye-jun was an awakened B rank, with a top-tier A rank trait, super regeneration, making him the ultimate meat shield. Even if he got wrecked, he would bounce back instantly, and Myung-soo could always bail him out with divine medicine. Grinning, Myung-soo slapped a hand on his shoulder and asked if he knew his way around a camera. He had a plan, and soon a massive explosion of energy rocked the very heart of the dungeon's boss room. With a single fluid Tai Chi strike, Myung-soo was absolutely folding groups of B-rank monsters like they were nothing. Turns out these dragon turtles were way softer than he expected once he actually started swinging his fists. Every hit did not just break them, it felt like he was deleting their strength, leaving no physical resistance behind. He had not noticed it with his sky-shattering strike before, but here, the true power of Tai Chi was undeniable. Could this be the power to delete existence? Gripping the dragon turtle shell, Myung-soo realized Tai Chi's true potential. It perfectly counters the dragon turtle's defense. Combined with his unique superpower, Hercules' advice to study it was absolute genius. Suddenly, the shell Shi-woo held disintegrated into dust. He had completely underestimated his own overwhelming raw strength again. control was still an issue. Switching gears, Meng Shu checked in on Li Jun's progress with the filming. Li Jun let out a shocked gasp before stuttering that everything was going great. The guy was clearly shaken. Li Jun struggled to process the insanity. Killing 20 dragon turtles in 60 seconds, it felt like a fever dream. Shiwu offered him a base salary of 10 million won, but there was one catch. View counts wouldn't grant extra cash. However, Shiwu promised that bonuses and performance incentives were definitely on the table. Everything finally clicked for Li Jun. He vowed to give his absolute best to support the boss's vision. Back at the apartment, Park Daku rewatched the new footage in total shock. One question kept spinning in her head. Where did the boss find this cameraman? Monstrous werewolves were closing in, yet Li Jun didn't even flinch. He told Shiwu to go ahead, insisting he'd hold the front line alone. Then, disaster struck. A werewolf's claws ripped through Li Jun's chest, leaving a brutal gash. Blood sprayed as he gasped for air, but instead of screaming, he smirked. He mocked the beast, asking if that pathetic scratch was all it had. Shiwu had trusted him with that camera. He stood tall with pure defiance. He roared that he'd protect the gear with his life. Even the werewolves were creeped out by his fanaticism. Park Doku watched the screen speechless and confused. Meng Shu rushed to help the bleeding cameraman, but he stopped her. With a shaking hand, he told her to focus on the mission. Shiwu could only stare in disbelief. Li Jun declared it a supreme honor to film for him. He was willing to die for the shot. Doku realized she finally had high-quality footage to edit. Later, at the forge, Meng Shu ran into Kim So-yeon. The greeting caught So-yeon off guard. She froze for a second, her words getting stuck in her throat. She mentioned hearing about the intense training sessions from Li Jun. Meng Shu was confused. What training was she talking about? In reality, Li Jun was just being helpful. His presence meant the camera wouldn't explode every time a fight started. He was loud, sure, but he handled the grunt work perfectly, from dungeon bookings to hauling massive monster corpses. A bit flustered, So-yeon finally found the courage to thank him for saving her younger brother. Meng Shu casually dismissed it as a family matter. That single phrase sent So-yeon's heart into a frenzy. Her face turned bright red as she stammered in confusion. Shiwu noticed her blush and grew concerned. She mentioned his comment about family. Clueless as always, Shiwu asked if Li Jun wasn't her brother. The misunderstanding deepened. He looked at her genuinely wondering if they weren't actually related. So-yeon's face was burning. She had totally misread his intentions. Meng Shu asked what was on her mind. She quickly denied everything. Apparently Li Jun had been spreading rumors about Shiwu being his brother-in-law. Shiwu pressed for details, but she shut him down immediately. Embarrassed, she told him to forget it. Then she bolted toward Mr. Palguan, using equipment repairs as a desperate excuse to escape.